Metro.
Metro!
Metro, much like Stalker, was a game series I was very aware of, yet never really got into, until now. Metro has been a long-time staple in the gaming industry since the original PC version of Metro 2033 released in 2010, made by Ukrainian studio 4A Games. And Metro 2033 is based off the Metro series of books of the same name, written by Russian author Dmitry Glukhovsky. In the books Metro 2033 and Metro 2034 can be found all over the game world as constant Easter eggs. Dmitry released the first entry in the series over 20 years ago, all the way back in 2002 on his own website, to which the series has expanded massively since. And he has written several more novels in the series, and has brought on other authors to write their own stories in the expanded Metro universe, with some stories expanding the world far beyond Moscow City to Poland, England, Ukraine, Italy, and beyond. In just one example, in the Warsaw novel, the poor city was hit with experimental biochemical bombs that melted living things down into literal goop piles. And in Metro 2033 Rubliovka 2, we even got this guy. Just look at that mug. Quit staring at me, man. And there's a ton of these third-party Metro books. It's actually pretty impressive how many stories have been made for this universe. And this list makes Metro look like Slavic One Piece. And of course, the Metro series had become truly world famous after the release of Metro 2033 and the later Last Light video games. Glukhovsky had even handpicked 4A Studios to bring his post-apocalyptic Moscow to digital life. But interestingly, and not too ironically, in 2022, Glukhovsky was sentenced to 8 years in the Gulag for speaking out on social media against Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But luckily, Glukhovsky, who's a longtime and outspoken Vlad Putin hater, had long since made like Hunter and vanished into the unknown, and was far out of the Kremlin's reach when he dropped his truth nukes on Instagram. And the Russian government was forced to sentence him in absentia, as his current whereabouts are currently unknown. And I hope our author here can continue dodging Putin's goons indefinitely. Just another day of Russian shenanigans, throwing ghosts in prison for posting too hard. But anyway, time for some background lore on the world of Metro. The world of Metro takes place after a devastating global nuclear war. The circumstances of how this war started are vague though, and the most we get is that it expanded from a smaller conflict in the Middle East, which checks out for modern geopolitics. But in 2013, the nations of the world hit their big red buttons, the nuclear ICBMs did their jobs, and turned Moscow into a blown-out, crumbling wasteland. And this is probably what Budanov sees in his dreams. Moscow is completely foobarred. The city lies in total ruins, and there appears to be an endless nuclear winter keeping the place completely encased in ice. And roided-up mutants infest the dead city in huge packs, tearing apart anyone who survives the initial elements of the dead city. And these aren't your typical rad roaches or rad scorpions. These are huge packs of hyper-violent bear-like creatures, both furry and naked types. Flying alligator-tiger hybrid monsters that look like some damn dragons, armored spider monsters, staring contest-loving brolic Sasquatch men, and several more critters we'll run into later. Hell, you can't even breathe in the air up here. As it's so irradiated, you'll quickly choke to death without a gas mask and a hearty supply of clean filters. After the bombing, 200,000 lucky Muscovites survived by retreating into the famously ornate and sprawling Moscow metro system for shelter. But after 20 years of conflict over the limited space and resources, extremely harsh conditions, factional conflict, and attacks by horrific mutant monsters and armed bandit thugs, cannibals, and other freaky factions, the metro population had been reduced to only around 40,000 people, who live huddled in the dark and cramped metro, farming nasty-ass fuming green mushrooms for food, using military-grade bullets as a universal currency, and have to constantly watch out for bandit raids, huge violent mutant raids, and most dangerously, the other major factions in the metro, as the end of the world hadn't been the end of factionalism and killing others over ideology. More like the opposite, actually, as war and conflict constantly breaks out amongst the four main factions that have emerged in the metro. Hansa, a trade-focused confederation of stations that takes up the central ring line in the heart of the metro, giving them a chokehold over the metro's logistics. The Red Line, a Soviet revival faction that wants to take over the entire metro and finally achieve that ever-so-elusive global communism, which will definitely work this time. Trust me, tovarish. The Fourth Reich, a group of Nazi LARPers who want to see Mustache Man's plans be restarted and finished in the metro, and will execute or detain anyone they deem to be a mutant or impure in their metrified concentration camps, literally busting out the skull measurer at times to see if someone should live or die. And finally, there's the Spartans in Polis, the largest station in the metro, with Polis being a sort of last bastion of order and technology, containing many former Russian Federation scientists, teachers, and officials, And the former Russian military Spartan soldiers act as a sort of police force slash vigilante army of the Metro, killing bandits and mutants and helping survivors when they can. But they also operate and execute their own missions independently of Polis Command, and they're pretty much our only real good guy faction. There are other independent stations and factions across the huge Metro system, but they're fairly small fry and out of the way compared to our big four here. One such independent station is VDNKH, also known as Exhibition, where our series protagonist Artyom Lasnimovich has lived most of his life. Also, side note before we get into the meat of the game, I'm taking a look at the Redux, or Redo? Redux? Redo? I'll go with Redo, versions of these games, as I'd guess most people likely own and buy the redos over the original releases. And I don't even think the original versions of 2033 and Last Light are even available to purchase anymore. Well, at least not on Steam. And I'm not going to go out of my way to play the original version. I already had plenty of PC problems with the redo that I assume will be even worse than the original versions. But I'll get to that later. Trust. But with that, let's dive right into the start of Metro 2033. We first take control of Artyom looking right up at a dude's ass as they head towards the surface. This is our tutorial mission, and it starts out very far into the story. Artyom is now a Spartan soldier, and in this level we follow his Spartan companion Ullman, and we learn the basic controls of the game, like movement, interactions, gas mask mechanics, getting you familiar with the gun shooting, and so on. The interactions here are very basic. Just press E to interact with anything that gives you the floating hand icon, which is anything from switches, doors, to most importantly, loot and gear. Like any self-respecting post-apocalyptic game, there's a large emphasis on scavenging for supplies and gear, and you can find regular bullets, money bullets, medkits, new weapons, gas masks and filters, and notes. And these things are all over the levels, and you get a nice satisfying crunch sound when you pick up some gear. And you're highly rewarded for really scouring these amazingly detailed and solemn environments for extra gear. And these items aren't the easiest thing in the world to find either. You'll need eyes of the Falcon to see the subtle shine the items have, and to know which containers can be opened, and which are just decoration. And you can get pretty loaded up if you take the time to fully explore, and it works really well at making you feel like a proper sewer-dwelling scaver. You can also loot corpses as rewards for scoring kills, and you can even loot the ammo out of dropped weapons, which is a nice immersion-boosting detail I feel more games should do. Anyway, we then get attacked by a horde of Watchmen mutants, and we have to let that stick bark for the first time. The shooting and combat mechanics are incredibly straightforward. Left mouse to shoot, right mouse to aim down sights, and press C to chuck grenades or silent throwing knives. And unlike another Ukrainian-made atmospheric FPS featuring some scary-ass mutants, the guns in Metro shoot more or less right where you're aiming, no matter what piece you're using, whether it be pistols, assault rifles, shotguns, pneumatic guns, crossbow guns, and so on. They all have a nice punch to them when you're letting it rip. Although I mostly stuck to pistols, shotguns, and assault rifles, as the pneumatic weapons were beyond cumbersome to pump up for max damage, and the crossbow's ammo scarcity made me only use it a handful of times. The shooting also isn't perfect. It definitely feels dated and unimpressive by today's standards. It lacks any real unique mechanics that make it stand out from any given FPS. Recoil feels jittery, there's a slow and plodding pace to all the gunplay, and the bullets really lack impact to make the shooting feel truly great, which I mostly felt when fighting mutants, as sometimes they'd react to bullet impacts, and sometimes they wouldn't. And their surprisingly dynamic animations make it hard to figure out if the thing you're shooting at is even alive or dead for a few moments. But for a game that's well over a decade old at this point, it still gets the job done well to keep the core experience buzzing, and it never really detracts from the overall experience. And most shootouts are still pretty enjoyable and exciting, especially ones versus other armed humans in the larger, more open areas. And I also appreciate the differently shaped hit markers for body shots versus headshots, and when you're shooting at an armored enemy, and hit markers are an elite visual data tool, and all shooting games should have them in my opinion. Also, at least in the redo, these gun models look great, and the animations of the guns swaying with Artyom's movements are incredibly smooth, albeit the reload animations and most of the sound effects are pretty dated. I also really dig the glowing iron sights on all the guns. They give the weapons a distinct Metro flair that you can recognize almost immediately. These glowing sights are in the same league as Artyom's blue light watch, which denotes how much time you have left until you have to swap a filter, and his large bullet lighter in terms of recognizability for the series, which you can pull out with M. And you use this thing mostly to light movement-slowing cobwebs on fire, or to make any dark Metro tunnel or abandoned maintenance halls look and feel extra creepy. It's a cool detail, but I find it's mostly for optional aesthetics, as the flashlight that you can turn on by pressing F is far superior as a light source, and Artyom can't use any other items until he puts his lighter away. He needs to flick it off and shove it back up in his nether regions before you can shoot your gun again. So we dispatch these freaks, and we head outside, heading toward the monolithic ruins of Ostankino Tower for a yet unknown reason. A ranger truck pulls up on us for some backup, but not long after, a huge mutant horde appears and surrounds us, and we open fire on them until we're incapacitated and attacked by a massive flying demon mutant, who flies right up close and gives Artyom a big ol' smooch before we cut back to black and go back in time. We catch up with Artyom living a tough but mostly stable life in the Metro system, a spry young man of 24. He was raised by his adoptive stepfather, Alex Sukhoi, who currently acts as a sort of mayor for Exhibition Station. Artyom is looking at some old photographs of the world before it got all shit-canned, showing us his wistful and curious side. And Sukhoi appears to tell him that a Spartan Ranger has arrived, so we excitedly go to meet him. From a note we pick up, we learn that Exhibition is under threat by invisible mutants who are only known as the Dark Ones. Mysterious, unseen mutants who can seemingly kill armed men with ease and can even drive them insane through some kind of psychic mind control, leaving the station in a constant state of paranoia of this new threat. So we reach the gate and meet Hunter, our Spartan in question, and we discuss the Dark Ones and the threat they pose. But as we're talking, we get an alert that mutants are coming in to attack, so we grab a revolver and start blasting. And this is our first real encounter that throws you right into the thick of this shit. We're in a fairly small room, and these Nasalis mutants move pretty damn fast, and they can easily get to you and start wailing on Artyom like an Alabama housewife with a flurry of speedy mutant punches, all the while you're fumbling around trying to figure out all the controls. But getting ganked by mutant hordes is a pretty common occurrence in Metro 2033, and this tutorial actually works really well at getting you used to getting swarmed and how to best manage these hordes. But luckily, we got Alex and Hunter backing us up here, and we gunned down these roided up mole rats. Alex is shaken up by the attack, blaming the attack on the Dark Ones, saying that they had compelled the Nasalises to attack Exhibition, and that they're not just mutants, but the next step in human evolution, a new life form that has evolved to live on the destroyed and irradiated surface of this brave new world. But while we're still reeling from this attack, another guard post is attacked. So we run in slow motion Chariots of Fire style over to find all the guards dead or mind broken, seemingly from an attack by the Dark Ones, who are gone without a trace. Hunter then tells us that he's going to go and try and recon ahead to try and chase after the Dark Ones. And if he's not back by tomorrow morning, Artyom must go to Polis and meet with the Spartan commander Miller and tell him about what happened to Hunter and the threat of the Dark Ones, giving us his dog tags as proof. And sure enough, Hunter vanishes into the tunnels and fails to make an appearance the next day. So Artyom decides to start his grand adventure to Polis Station and signs on as a guard for a caravan heading for Riga Station. So we gather our things and head through Exhibition, and this walkthrough sets a great standard for the game's atmosphere and level details. The metro halls are packed tight with people, supplies, and shabby shantytowns built into the large metro terminals, and the reduced version has some pretty great lighting and textures. And this game still looks visually spectacular in my opinion. We get a series staple bastard SMG from a gun trader, and we get a basic verbal overview on supplies that I mentioned earlier. We check in with our step pops, and he tells us that this caravan is being sent to forge an alliance with Riga Station to the south, and he tells us that this trip shouldn't be too hard, and warns Artyom against joining the Spartans in their violent and unstable lifestyle, and to come back home right away. This dude is god-awful at predictions. But regardless, we set off. On our cart ride, we learn that a caravan had gotten stuck in a tunnel collapse up ahead, so we have to take a spooky-ass alternative service tunnel route to reach Riga. And this tunnel is not only amazingly spooky, it's also literally haunted, as the trader riding with us starts hearing and seeing weeping ghosts, before the floating blue orb anomaly from Stalker Call of Pripyat appears, and everyone in the cart gets knocked out. We are sent into a vision of Hunter trying to attack a Dark One, this being the first time we see one. They appear as tall, all-black humanoids with extremely long arms, massive hands, and a frog-looking head, looking more like aliens from outer space than irradiated mutants. The Dark One knocks down Vision Hunter and envelops Artyom, before we see it being shot to death, which breaks Artyom out of his psychic vision coma right into a mutant attack on our cart, that we fight off with QTEs and a shotgun from the guy sitting next to us. And there's a ton of these things that swarm your cart, but luckily, they're pretty limp-wristed, so we tank their attacks and they eventually fall off the wagon, and we have to hustle to the barricade to escape. And we don't really know it yet, but Artyom breaking out of this vision reveals that he has a unique connection and resistance to the Dark One's psychic influence. Somehow. But no time to dwell on that now. We then cut to Artyom and his cartmates celebrating their survival the only way you can in Russia, knocking back cups of straight vodka. Here at Riga Station, we can also buy some supplies for the first time, which introduces us to the store and currency system. Currency in the Metro is military-grade bullets, a stronger version of regular bullets that you can trade for ammo for weapons, weapon upgrades, filters, medkits, the Benjamin, yada yada, anything you can think of. It's handy when you need to quickly re-up on ammo if you say, blasted off too many shotgun rounds in the level before. But doing some thorough scavenging will usually leave you with more than enough supplies, and I wasn't much of a big spender across both games. Mostly spending money on occasional weapon sight attachments, and of course ammo. These shops are also only available at certain times, as many levels don't have immediate or have very limited access to shops. So when shopping, you need to sort of anticipate what you'll need going forward, as there's no way to know when you'll find another shop. They're definitely helpful, but you probably won't be shopping as much as you think you will. And with your excess money bullets, you can hold R to load your money rounds into a weapon that uses assault rounds, and jizz on enemies with stronger bullets that even light them on fire, which can be incredibly useful in certain situations, especially those mutant attack hordes. You also have 3 weapon slots, and you can hold any 3 weapons of your choosing. And I found this 3 weapon limit to be pretty interesting, as you'll come across some cool weapons that you can pick up all throughout the game, like quad barrel shotguns, or rare weapons like the crossbow. And the limited space will force you to think on if you really want to swap out one of your current reliable weapons, or just keep rolling with your current kit. Ideally, you'll want to have your weapons all use different ammo types, as having 2 guns of the same ammo type will burn through your stocks insanely fast. So like any good investment, make sure your portfolio is diversified. So I throw a scope on my revolver, cause why the hell not? And we meet this kid.
Are you Artyom? Hey, there's a man at the Black Street waiting for you.
Or wait, maybe an adult posing as a child? The fuck is up with that voice? Yeah, the English voice acting is mostly dog ass, ranging from really solid with some of the characters like Khan.
This station's humidity is making me rheumatic. If you'd rather share your friend's fate, then by all means, stay.
To absolutely ridiculous, like this kid here.
Thanks, let's go.
But honestly, I didn't really care that the voice acting was bad in this game, and I give it a pass because English is in this game's mother tongue. And if anything, I find the subpar voice acting just gives the game more charm.
I'll be damned. Bourbon! Hey guys, we'd better search these two.
And the same goes for Stalker when they just go completely off script. So we tip the kid a bullet, and he guides us to a man that is apparently expecting us. We meet the man, a shifty trader named Bourbon, who needs to get to Dry Station, which is complicated by the fact that Riga is on lockdown. But Bourbon here knows a secret back way out of the station, and he heard about how we were able to break out of our Dark One mind control and save our cart. So he hopes our psychic immunity can help him safely reach Dry Station. So with no other options, and with Bourbon dangling his AK in front of us as a reward for our escort, we agree to help him, and we enter some abandoned tunnels. We then proceed through these amazingly creepy and dilapidated tunnels until we run into some bandits we have to unload a few bullets into, this being our first human enemy encounter, which I have to admit, are much more fun to fight than the mutants, as shooting humans always felt satisfying. And in the middle of combat, they have some pretty solid AI that'll flank you and take cover and fire from fortified positions, and they have some pretty robust death and damage animations when you shoot them in the head, chest, and penis. Their bodies are also great loot caches for extra ammo, medicine, filters, and guns. Although it seems not all killed human enemies will be lootable. Some of these guys just die broke. You also have the option to sneak past some human enemy encounters, as Metro does have stealth mechanics, but I honestly didn't even try to engage in the stealth and sneaking, as if I got spotted or wanted to restart, that means crashing my game and rebooting, and just shooting at any human enemies I ran into seemed much more exciting to me, rather than slowly duck walking through the shadows and praying that an enemy doesn't triangulate my position immediately. But regardless, once these bandits are dead and their bodies are looted, we cross this massive bridge into this gigantic tunnel with Bourbon, shooting off mutant hordes that drop in on us. We eventually reach this green glowing room full of bodies, and we start seeing visions of us and Bourbon in a ghostly hallway with a gate, and it seems like we're getting another Dark One mind invasion. Meanwhile, Bourbon is getting some psychic vision head.
My mistress, I hear you, yes, always.
We then flash back and forth between this vision and reality, and the vision is trying to push us into a big red door, and red means dead, so we have to sprint through the vision gate to proceed, and we barely escape our deadly geek session. We then make it to the gate of Market Station, and we fight off another Nasalis horde until they finally open the sealed door for us, after someone recognizes that it's Bourbon at the gate. We're now safe inside the market, but Bourbon owes some money to the Hansa here, so he's anxious to blow this train stand. But not to worry, as 130 IQ Bourbon is cooking up a plan to get us out of here free of charge. So we do some shopping and link back up with him. And after making a quick escape that I forgot to record, we escape through a sealed door and exit onto the surface of the dead city, formerly known as Moscow. Like I mentioned at the beginning, the Moscow air is irradiated out the ass, and humans can only survive with the help of a gas mask. The gas mask mechanics are a bit deeper than you think, and it's more than just taking the mask on and off when you run into some shit air. You'll know it's time to throw on the mask when Artyom starts choking and hoarsely breathing like he just got punched in the windpipe. And you gotta hold G to mask up. Now, gas masks are nothing without filters, which you can loot and buy all over the game. And the filters here are time sensitive. After a couple minutes, you'll have to press T to swap out a filter for a fresh one. And the maximum amount of filter time is 20 minutes. So anytime you're in a gas mask required area, you're on the clock, restricting how much exploration and looting you can do. Although unless you're really unprepared or really lost, you'll likely never run out of filter. And I only did it in one spot, but I'll talk about that later. Also, your gas mask can get damaged over time, building up cracks and damage until it breaks and chokes you out. But by exploring, you can find more intact gas masks to swap out for on bodies or in containers, making exploration highly incentivized in these toxic areas. Now, all these features are all solid on paper, and this is definitely the most immersive and true-to-life gas mask simulator I've ever played. But in execution, the gas mask damage and need for filters was mostly a slight annoyance in most cases, as 95% of the time, I had plenty of filter time and could find less damaged gas masks fairly often. And it's not ideal to see that press T to swap a filter pop up when you're barrel stuffing a horde of attacking Watchmen mutants, forcing you to disengage and train them like it's COD Zombies while Artyom screws in a new filter. They're thematically great, but mechanically mediocre. So we find a body of a stalker. Whoa, base reference? A loose faction of scavengers who are brave enough to venture out into the frozen, monster-infested, toxic hellscape of blown-out Moscow in hopes of finding that sweet, sweet loot. They're not really that important. The world design up here, much like below ground, is again excellent, and this place looks beyond fucked. Buildings stand in ruins, the roads are cracked and full of blown-out cars, junk and debris, and thick icicles hang off most edges, and I can almost feel the cold just emanating off my computer screen. We fuck up a jump onto a car and get split up from Bourbon, and we have to proceed alone through the cramped and ruined streets. We even get to scrap with a demon, those bear, crocodile, dragon, mutant hybrids that look like they were made by God himself to be the ultimate killing machines. The demons can even scoop you up and take you through a quick ride through the air before throwing you back down to earth, and it's crusty as shit. Artyom is kind of teleporting all over the place, and the hitboxes are laggy and disjointed. But I still really enjoyed getting taken for a ride. It was pretty funny to watch Artyom get flung around, even with the clunky ass animations and hitboxes. And I also got a bit lost here too, which the game struggles with at times, as despite the amazingly detailed levels, the clear path forward can get lost in the sauce a bit, and you can easily miss clues as to where to go next, which may leave you running in circles burning through filters. And I had to run to the YouTube GPS for directional help, otherwise I'd suffocate. But I eventually find the way, and we relink back up with Bourbon, and we have to fight off another mutant horde and some demons before escaping. Right into Crash the Desktop. Shit. Now I thought Shadow of Chernobyl had crashing problems, but at least that game had a bunch of mods available to make the game crash less often. But Metro 2033 Redo, for some reason, got along with my PC about as well as current day Russia and Ukraine, and I would crash the desktop without fail on a level load or restart, sometimes right in the middle of a level too. And I couldn't for the life of me figure out what was happening or why it was crashing. My best guess is that using Shadowplay or OBS to record footage somehow made the game want to off itself when loading levels. Or maybe it was just my computer with parts made a decade after the game came out didn't know what to do with the damn thing. I even switched from using Nvidia Shadowplay to recording with OBS, which seemed to limit the crashes to only restarts after dying. But I was just constantly crashing from here to pretty much the very end of the game. Now I have no idea if this issue will affect other people, and your mileage will probably vary based on your PC specs. But I was crashing like Rashee Rice on the Dallas freeway, and I also had zero crashing issues with Metro Last Light, which only made these issues extra confusing. So I just want to give you a heads up on these potential problems you may run into. But anyway, we sneak through a vent and watch Bourbon get immediately captured by bandit thugs, beat up, and dragged off. But luckily, he left his backpack in the vent, and we finally get our hands on his AK he promised us earlier. And I put it to good use trying to help save my shifty traveling companion. But after we kill the bandits and bust into their boss's room, Bourbon tries to disarm the boss, but they end up both killing each other in a crossfire. What you say? Bourbon, our shyster guide and first real companion, is dead, and we're now all alone in this shot-up bandit camp. But Bourbon isn't dead for more than 10 seconds when this mysterious fella drops out of a vent in the ceiling like he's Arkham Batman. And this is Khan, a Metro mystic, and probably the most interesting character in the game. And he definitely has the best voice acting in this game. It's actually leagues better than some of the goofier voices you hear throughout the Metro.
My name is Khan. Well, I suggest that we leave this place immediately.
Now, Khan seems like he's been talking to NLE Choppa a bit too much, and he just popped out of a random vent. But with us stranded without a guide, we decided to follow Khan through some more dark abandoned tunnels toward the foreboding as fuck sounding Cursed Station. Khan tells us that this isn't exactly a normal tunnel, and that he isn't exactly a normal guy himself either. He's seemingly talking to the very tunnel itself, communing with unseen entities in the tunnel, and maybe this guy's been sniffing too much green shroom gas. But Khan's schizoid warnings get vindicated pretty quickly, as we soon start running into actual ghosts, dark silhouettes of people trapped in the tunnels, who can still be heard weeping and crying out in agony. There's a fucking ghost train that still rolls down the derelict tracks, and the ghosts will even attack and kill you with ghostly arms if you get too close to them. What the fuck? The mutants weren't enough. These nukes somehow created actual vengeful spirits and poltergeists. It's actually insane, and I really like it. I don't know what it is, but I like how games like Metro and Stalker aren't afraid to go beyond just mutants and introduce straight up magical or paranormal shit like anomalies and ghosts. And it never ends up feeling corny or silly, rather adding a ton of mystery and uneasiness to the Metro, making it feel more malevolent, dark, and dangerous than expected. We even follow Khan through a crowd of ghostly soldiers, while Khan recites some sort of warding prayer to get them to stay away. Khan's explanation of these ghosts is that their souls have been captured by the Metro, trapped in the tunnels as humanity's punishment for ending itself in a nuclear war. We also run into another floating electric orb anomaly, although these anomalies are incredibly rare, and we only see maybe one or two of them in the game, making me wonder if it's just another reference in a way. And I looked it up, and the Stalkers and Anomalies seem to be references not to the Stalker games, but to the book Stalker is based on, Roadside Picnic by the Strugatsky brothers, which makes a lot of sense. It's an insanely influential piece of sci-fi, and Glukhovsky must have gotten a ton of inspiration from it while writing Metro. We eventually reach a Metro cart, and we start heading for Cursed Station, which got its name from how shitty living there is, and the place is constantly being attacked by mutants, and a mutie attack is already in full swing when we arrive. We can only stop the mutants by blowing up their 2 entry points, and they'll infinitely spawn in until you blow their asses up. And when you blow the tunnel, make sure to get the hell out of there unless you want to be completely barbecued. But once we fight off another gank squad of Nasalises, we link back up with Khan, who tells us that he's gonna chill out at the godforsaken Cursed Station for a while. I guess he just likes the vibes here. And he tells us that if we want to go to Polis, the tunnel has collapsed, and we need to go through the armory, and then make our way through both Nazi and communist-controlled stations. Great. Khan tells us that the armory is an independent station, but it's currently being occupied by communists. But not to worry, he's got a buddy, Andrew the Blacksmith, who we can get some help from. Khan then leads us into this awesome-looking circular room, which is full of trench candles and small monuments to the dead. And paired with the great music here, it's moments and places like this that really make Metro shine. You completely understand the mood and message the designers are going for here, showing that there's still hope and genuine humanity in the face of the overwhelming bleak brutality of the Metro universe. We arrive at the Armory Station, and it's not long before the communist goons here start manhandling us for walking into a room or something. There's another guy in here who was asking the guards to tickle his prostate.
While you're at it, I'm pissing kind of
And he socks one in the face, and we follow him to make our escape through the station, and the Reds are everywhere. But as long as you keep running and following the guy, these Reds will have complete stormtrooper aim. It looks like me playing Counter-Strike. Eventually, the poor guy gets smoked after sacrificing himself to point us to go left, and we almost get nabbed, but Andrew comes in clutch and pulls us into his little closet home in the nick of time. Andrew tells us that the only way to pull us is through an active war zone between the Reds and the Reich, but Andrew has a plan. We'll hide on a cart of new recruits on their way to a Soviet-styled meat wave assault, and hop out and make our way to Polis after getting past the roadblocks. So we climb into the cart and enjoy the ride. Maybe Artyom should read that book in front of him. He could get the script early. While we ride, we can overhear some interesting dialogue from the recruits, them discussing why they even joined up with the Reds, either for ideology, for money, or for misguided tradition, on top of other wholesome conversations like whether it'd be better to swallow a cyanide pill or to let yourself be captured by the Reich. But I soon hop out and make the choice for them, blasting through both Reds and Nazis like an enlightened centrist Terminator in some pretty large open shootouts. That is, until we open a door and get captured by Reich soldiers, thinking us a Red soldier, who wail on Artyom and tell him to pray to Marx for salvation. But as they gloat villainously, it seems Carl actually answers my prayers, and 2 Spartan soldiers appear from around a corner and gut these groypers like some freshly caught bass. Good thing Artyom is great at getting people to appear to help him in his hour of need. We show these Spartans hunters' tags, and they move to bring us to Miller. We then take control of a mounted turret cart, and we have to pass through a Reich checkpoint. Our Spartan escort tries to use some Jedi mind tricks on the guard, which doesn't work, so we start blasting. And this turret section is interesting to me because of the controls, as you can only aim the turret up or down, and you have to use the arrow keys to actually turn the thing, and it makes it feel clunky as shit, slowly jerking this thing around to turn Nazi goons into red mist clouds. But the clunkiness feels true to how manning a shitty apocalypse turret would feel, so I'll give it a pass. We then blast our way through this Reich checkpoint, and we dismount and find another cart to hitch a ride on. And Artyom's note for this mission is pretty hilarious. Dude is just flabbergasted that the Spartans' only plan was just to waltz through the checkpoint and hope for the best. The fuck it we bald doctrine of war is a favorite of the Spartan order, and this will only continue to prove true. So after pulling another drive-by on another Nazi checkpoint, we then have to fight off another Nasalis horde who attacks our cart, who overwhelm and drag our buddy Pavel off the damn thing. But he blows himself up to take the mutants down with him. True hater shit. I respect it. We then come to Hull Station, which is under another mutant attack, but as we defend it, we get hit with a psychic blast that kills some of the defenders with us, as ominous bells ring out in the tunnels. Before yet another Nasalis horde appears, and we gun them down. It seems we got caught up in another Dark One attack, on account of the psychic shockwaves and the ghostly bells, and we get a tape from the dying guard commander to put in a radio beacon on the surface, to relay what happened here to Polis. We then pass through the ruined station, and the environment designers are cooking here some more, until we come across yet another weird-voiced child trying to wake his dead uncle from his eternal slumber. And Artyom, being a classy guy, decides to help the kid and gives him a piggyback ride to escort him to safety. And Sasha here is a real yapper, and he will call out small mutants attacking you, as well as very slightly affecting your mouse sensitivity when he's on your back. The controls feel slightly floatier than normal, but it's really subtle, and you can barely tell it's there. It's a little weird. But luckily for me, Metro's directional dynamic dialogue volume keeps Sasha's voice pretty quiet. We climb up this huge vent, and we return this ankle biter back to his mom, and she offers me some bullets as payment. But since I am the very definition of class, I refuse this poor single mom's offer. She needs the bullets more to feed her weirdly voiced child. But we can for real head to Black Station now, and we finally get topside, and we obliterate all the Nazis on the surface here. And this level is probably the worst in the game in terms of figuring out where you need to go next. We can load the dead guard's tape into the radio at the top of the building, but I was surprised to learn that this was an optional thing and not a main objective to progress the level. And more on this later, as it ties into a pretty big but hidden mechanic in the game. And there's no clear indication as to where to go next from the radio, so I ran in circles backtracking to and fro until I eventually ran out of filters trying to find the way forward. This being the only real time I ran out of gas mask, and I had to restart to keep Artyom's throat from turning inside out. And it turns out, you have to go down this small hole in an inconspicuous corner of the building under some rubble ramps, with only a faint glow from a fire underneath it to guide you. Metro does struggle at times with clarity on where to go next, but this is probably the only time it becomes straight up bad, because if you go down there too early on accident, you can't get back up to activate the radio if you missed it. If the level designers just replaced this hole with a staircase or something, we'd probably be all good. But as it is, screw this hole. Pause. But regardless, once down the hole and past the Nazis, we make it into Black Station, and we get saved again by our Spartan buddy Ullman, who tells us that even more Nazis have taken over Black Station, and he hands us a sweet silenced VSV rifle as a little present. And we part ways again. We spank these Nazis one more time in some fun shootouts using our new tool, and we hop in a cart after linking back up with Ullman, and we head right for Polis. Finally. And along the way, we have another vision of us in a dark, rocky hallway, where a disembodied, whispery voice tells us that it wishes to understand and help us, and a dark one explodes through the barrier and approaches us, which sends Artyom into a vision of a clear sky with leaves growing on trees, leaving us totally confused, before we cut back to arriving at Polis. Artyom is quite impressed with Polis Station, seeing it as a last bastion of safety and security in the ever-crumbling Metro, although we don't see much of the place outside of the Spartan facilities. And we finally come face to face with Miller, and we give him a silent rundown on everything that's happened, and the looming threat of the Dark Ones. Miller is convinced by our story, and he assembles the Polis Council together to try and vote to approve giving aid to Exhibition, and to fight off the Dark Ones using the Spartan warriors. We deliberate with the council for a few hours, before the Polis Council gives us a resounding Thanks, but no thanks. Dark ones, schmark ones, you guys will be fine. And they refuse to help Exhibition. Shit. But Miller isn't having that shit, and he goes against the council and proposes a huge fuck it we ball operation instead. Miller tells us that there are still several intact missile bases still sleeping beneath the ruins of Moscow, which can still be launched to completely obliterate the Dark Ones. In order to launch them though, we need access to the command center, a bunker called D6. However, the location of D6 is unknown, but we may be able to find it if we can locate some military documents from the Moscow library on the surface. So we gotta head back up and find those docs. We do a quick surface level to reach the library, and we link up with Miller after killing more of these fish-faced fucks. And we enter the library, but our squad gets ambushed by a demon, who Miller and Danila have to hold back with only a flimsy door between them. But luckily they got thunder thighs, and they can hold it off for the time being. So we move to find a way to get that demon off our backs, running past these killer ceiling vines that will slap you hard on the ass if you get too close. And we open a side door, and Miller and Ullman catch back up with us, and we drop a chandelier to open the way forward. And we enter the central chamber of the library, where we spot a huge, muscular, meat monster Sasquatch-looking mutant called the Librarian. But before we can chase after it, a demon appears and whoops the shit out of Danila, forcing Miller to evac him in safety, leaving us to face the Librarians and to grab the D6 documents completely alone. This level really leans into the horror aspect of Metro more than any other level, and it's pretty much entirely focused on managing the Librarians and building up the tension around them. The Librarians will patrol all around the library, and if they spot you, you can't run or shoot them. Instead, you have to plant your feet, clench your jaw, start mewing, and engage your hunter eyes with the Librarians, and walk backwards while continuing to look at the mutant gorilla standing before you. You'll know you're locked into a staring contest when it cocks its head at you like a dog, and it'll get angrier over time, and eventually attack you if you don't start backing away from it, where it'll just charge you down and swing its hefty arms wildly at you, which can quickly melt your health to nothing. So keep backing up, and keep your eyes on him, and eventually the Sasquatch will disengage, and you can tell it's safe when he shrugs you off and literally saunters off, satisfied with our mewing contest. Now, I didn't even attempt to attack the Librarians, as there's just way too many of them in the level, and based on their builds, they seem to be massive wastes of ammo if I tried to shoot them. So to ramp up the difficulty of the level, the devs put several holes all over the floors that you can easily moonwalk into if you aren't careful, forcing you to backtrack around the Librarians again if you fall. It's a really interesting level and mechanic that works well about 80% of the time, as I did have some issues telling whether or not the Librarian was still aggroed on me or not, like when I get it to shrug off, and then it spins around and re-attacks me after a few seconds. But overall, this was a really tense and cool level that effectively turns these levels into a mini horror game, and it nullifies the weapons you've been using the entire game to get out of most situations in an interesting way. We eventually make it to the military repository after moonwalking past Bigfoot's entire extended family, and we finally find the D6 documents we need, and we get topside, where we watch a Spartan truck pull up and turn a Librarian into roadkill. Artyom's life getting saved in the clutch yet again. But apparently, our old pal Khan had told the Spartans where to find Artyom. He must have used his ghost force powers to soul trace us, or something. And we drive off to the church, the Spartan Order's sole surface base. And if you stick around and listen to this guy by the fire when you arrive, you can hear a really interesting story about how the nuclear war went down, as the guy talking was a military radio operator. And he recounts how Moscow Command went dark, and all the other officers were left helpless as what to do next. And it's pretty great world building, and I like it quite a bit.
But the others did transmit, including the strategic nuclear subs. Subs kept waiting for orders. Should we hit them? No one could believe Moscow was not there anymore. Naval captains wept like kids on the air. The crewmen were begging me to check if their families were among the survivors. But I couldn't do anything.
We relink with Miller, and we very quickly go over the D6 documents we collected, which apparently points us towards its hidden location. So we smash that LMB to ready up and move out. And on the way out, we run back into our goat Khan, who's just hanging around in front of this very striking Orthodox-styled Wall of Saints. And it's a really awesome backdrop for a guy like Khan, who has acted like a sort of guardian angel for us the entire journey, escorting us directly, or watching us from the shadows, or through some other more esoteric, ghostly means. You never really know with this guy, but Khan issues us a warning, saying that pain is cyclical, and that violence breeds violence. And in the end, maybe it doesn't have to be this way, which will make sense later. But shortly after he gives us his warning, a flash catches his attention, and he just stares at the wall of portraits, frozen in place. Alright, see you later, Khan, and thanks for all the help. You just keep doing that. Yeah. We head for D6, and the Spartans gossip about the fate of Kievskaya Station, but as they're chatting, Artyom gets a psychic blast out of nowhere and collapses, sending him into another vision in that rocky tunnel, where we see visions of a verdant world untouched by nuclear hellfire, a mysterious woman, and as we walk on like these voices want us to, we start seeing the Dark Ones in full view, who appear before Artyom in their salamander alien man glory. But before we can get any closer to the Dark Ones, the Spartans break us out of our psychic geeker coma as we arrive at the entrance to D6. We then have to fight off a Nasalis horde while stuck in this train cart as our buddies get the door to D6 open. But luckily, we pick up a sweet-ass flamethrower to barbecue these freaks with. Hell yes. Wait. Actually, this thing is fucking trash. I feel like flamethrowers are always underpowered in games, and that's the case here, as I seemingly burned myself to death using this thing, and I got swarmed by burning Nasalises instead of normal ones now. So I just fell back and used my assault rifle to mow down the horde, and this game loves its Nasalis gang squads. But we finally get the door open, and we barely escape from an incoming Tesla anomaly from Stalker, and now we're finally in D6. Cue a few switch flips, and another Nasalis gang squad, and one even jumps on us this time, but we're saved by Stepan. But he surely goes out the same way as Pavel, and blows himself up to kill another Nasalis that tries to drag him away. It seems that the Spartans got a real Al-Qaeda doctrine of getting captured. So we continue on, and wouldn't you know it, yet another Nasalis horde is here to greet us, but I'm beyond sick of these abominations at this point, so we end them quickly. And then we finally reach the door to D6 proper, but it only opens a little bit, so we roll under it to find a path forward, and we have to fight off these massive mutant spiders to proceed. And these spiders are definitely freaky, but they're pretty wimpy in a fight, especially in Metro 2033, as their ultimate weakness is light, which we have a pretty much endless supply of thanks to our flashlight. So I found that shining your flashlight on them, and then giving them a double pump of buckshot would obliterate any spider you came across. So we progress through these amazingly dank spider tunnels, and we relink with Miller and the Spartans again, and a pretty pristine Metro train pulls up to pick us up. Spooky. And we ride this baby right into the heart of D6. 20 years of decay has left D6 filled with toxic air, so we move to get the vents back on first, which we do by doing a Skyrim tier switch puzzle to get the system going, and Miller slams on the console to bring D6 to life like a Soviet movie cliche. His words, not mine. And we head into the depths of the place on these really cool looking spiral lifts. The Soviet style bunker tech here is really sweet. And we soon reach the control center, and Vlad here activates his military IT powers to bring the center online, but the backup battery soon craps itself, and we have to go into the deepest bowels of D6 to restart the reactor. And as we descend, we find that the lower levels here are covered in massive piles of biomass, where these actually living explosive boogers, called the amoebas, appear from and attack you. Even the snot has mutated into killer monsters here. The Metro vs. Nukes must have had HGH and experimental anabolic steroids loaded into their warheads or something. What the fuck? And we soon reach the reactor, but there's a slight nuance. The reactor is covered in a writhing biomass of flesh that can seemingly sense we're here, even shooting mutant mucus at us to attack. Absolutely disgusting. Who the fuck left this Lovecraftian flesh abomination in the basement? We then have to get into a crane and lift the reactor rods from above to reboot the thing. And we have to use this screen in front of us to know when to drop our claw. And we gotta do this 3 times to succeed. All the while, the biomass loitering on the reactor spews snot at us, which we can't really do much about, as the crane moves pretty slow and has no way to return fire. So just ignore the thing and its booger barrage and just focus on lifting the reactor rods. And return the crane when you're done, and this fleshy abomination will be no real sweat, making this part feel like an extended cutscene almost. We then relink with Miller, and we take a freshly powered elevator back up. And along the way, we spot a whole hangar full of military vehicles and tanks. And this fills Miller with hope for the future, telling Artyom that these vehicles could be used to reconquer the surface and give them the power to fight back against the ruined world. Maybe a little too optimistic there though, comrade. I don't think a couple rusty T-72s can reconquer the entire surface. Let's put that on hold for now. But anyway, with D6 back online and under Spartan control, all that's left to do is reach the top of Ostankino Tower, aim the missiles at the Dark One's home hive, and vaporize these alien lizard men with extreme prejudice, Exterminatus style. And that's where we catch up to where the game started, getting pulled up on by a ranger truck, and then getting swarmed by watchmen and demons. And it turns out, that time-altering kiss from that attacking demon wasn't as bad as you'd think, and Artyom just gets a little bonk on the head. But then Miller soon appears and gets the demons to fuck off with his Gauss rifle-styled weapon. And the Horde also fucks off along with the demons. So we get up and shoot our way to Ostankino, killing any watchmen stragglers that appear before us. And we enter the tower, and using the power of Sugan, we disengage the elevator counterweight and fly up to the top. And we get blasted off the elevator from the gravity blast. And Artyom is now on top of the ruins of the world, Oh, and Miller's here too. But he soon gets injured by an attacking demon, and we're forced to press on alone. And Artyom's palms must be absolutely soaked right now. Just look at the fall and the state of this damn tower. And as we get closer to the top, we hear the Dark Ones warning about our approach, and they begin a psychic assault on Artyom's noggin to try and stop him, as we attempt to set up the laser missile guidance system, and we're thrown into a crazy vision where you fall off the tower if you fall in the vision, which, by the way, is animated amazingly, yet horrifyingly well. In the vision, we get manhandled by the Dark One's telekinesis, and we have to run through this huge rock wall maze while avoiding the Dark Ones that appear to attack us and throw us off Ostankino Tower. So just do a 180 when you see a Dark One, and keep running. And you'll then be thrown into a materializing tunnel that you have to do some platforming on to proceed, as the Dark Ones repeat themselves over and over and over again. We then run into a vision of Hunter, who hands us a revolver like in the beginning of the game, and he tells us to kill. And we turn around and gun down the approaching Dark One, which breaks us out of our psychic tunnel nightmare. And when we come to, the targeting system is ready, and we see 3 ICBMs launch and completely decimate the Dark One hive. As Artyom watches, he takes a very fat and very well-deserved load off, and he reminds himself why he did all this. It was all for the safety of the Metro and its people from the threat of the Dark Ones. But in the end, he's unsure if this was truly the right choice, and wonders if we may have lost something along with the Dark Ones. As the credits roll and we zoom out of Ostankino Tower, completing the story of Metro 2033. Now this is the bad ending. Shit. And there exists a good ending, in which instead of Artyom just vaporizing the Dark Ones, he remembers Khan's words about the cyclical nature of violence and wakes up next to a Dark One. But instead of calling in the nukes, he destroys the targeting laser, finally realizing that this whole time, the Dark Ones were coming in peace, and all those psychic attacks were just them trying to make peaceful contact with humans of the Metro, albeit in a scary, magical mind-melting way. But by saving the Dark Ones, the hope for the Metro's future seems brighter than ever, which is a pretty optimistic ending for the Metro series. So obviously, this good ending is the non-canon one. But how do you even get one ending or the other? It's not like there's a pop-up to press RMB or LMB to launch the missiles or not. Metro 2033 is on a completely different wave than you think. It uses an invisible moral point system that will keep track of your in-game actions and will grant or deduct moral points depending on what you do. And these can be anything from simple actions like exploring stations, talking to NPCs, which is more like walking up and bug-eyeing them until they run out of shit to say, as Artyom is silent throughout the entire game, and interacting with objects like strumming Artyom's guitar, giving beggars money bullets, and avoiding combat when possible, to more explicit actions, like delivering the guard's tape to the radio transmitter, refusing the money from Sasha's mom, and approaching the Dark Ones while in visions instead of fleeing from them. And this goes both ways, as you can also lose moral points for making bad decisions, like killing optional enemies and mutants, fleeing the Dark Ones when in visions, and so on. On paper, it's a really cool idea that tries to naturally figure out what your version of Artyom would do at the end of the story, as his choices throughout the game shape him into a brand new man, and if you were a thoughtful, mostly peaceful, and curious Artyom, he'll realize that the Dark Ones don't mean him any harm, and that the psychic visions were their attempts at peaceful communication, and he will stop the missiles. And if you were an ignorant, trigger-happy, and greedy Artyom, he'll just follow his orders and turn the Dark Ones into dust with blind obedience. But in practice, I found this system to be pretty unintuitive, especially on a first playthrough. And anyone who got the good ending first try without knowing about this system has my respect, as the game does not explain the system to you at all. And some of the moral point triggers seem pretty tricky to actually obtain. Like when Bourbon or Khan tell you about the voices in the pipes, you have to physically crouch down and then listen to the pipes, as standing near them won't suffice. Or when in a vision that shows you a verdant playground, you can't move at all, only use the mouse to look around, or else you'll lose out on the points, as the game thinks Artyom is ungrateful for his summer day hallucination or something. And also, I played this game guns blazing, and rarely tried to use stealth, preferring to shoot my way through most humans and mutants I came across, like with most other games. Because as for me, unless a game is a stealth game by genre, I likely won't even try to use the stealth systems, and that's no different here. So I probably lost several moral points by just letting my shit rip and stacking up the corpses. But in the end, it just grants access to a nice and hopeful, but extremely non-canon ending. But I feel this system could have been implemented much more intuitively if there was a short blurb about the system from the game. It doesn't even have to go into detail, but just giving the player a heads up to its existence could have gone a long way, as it would force them to be more mindful about their actions as they play through the game. Or the game could have made the moral point gains or triggers more obvious when they happen with a distinct sound, or a moral point icon pop-up when you complete a task, like say Red Dead Redemption 2's honor system, which feels like a more fleshed out version of this game's moral point system. That way the player can know that they're on the right track, or they're on some sort of track, instead of being completely in the dark until the very end. Overall, Metro 2033's story is best described as a phenomenal setup and world, with some inconsistent execution. The main plot of the emergence of the Dark Ones and what to do about them is a great hook, and the revelation that they were a peaceful and intelligent species is a pretty great twist that plays around with the post-apocalyptic genre's common tropes like a new, world-threatening mutant race and turns it on its head, leaving the bad canon ending a truly unique chapter in the endless cycle of mass destruction and death wrought by humanity's fear and ignorance of others, as we wipe out an entire new species, driven by our fear and failure to understand and adapt to their existence, and the wheel of human violence turns once again. However, the actual in-game execution of the story is pretty shaky, as the Dark Ones remain incredibly mysterious throughout, and every time they appear they seem to summon mutant hordes from beyond, or throw Artyom into a deadly esoteric mind-obliterating vision that he has to escape from. And despite the Dark Ones being the main motivator for Artyom's journey from Exhibition to Polis and beyond, they quickly fall into the background of the game's story, showing up every once in a while to psychically flashbang Artyom's melon before vanishing. And the player has no real clue what's going on with these guys until the very last few minutes of the game. And even then, it's more than a bit obtuse trying to figure out how to get the good ending, and finally realizing the truth of the Dark One's intentions without a guide or prior metagame knowledge of the hidden moral point system, leaving the average player in the dark as to the tragic reality that we just genocided a peaceful psychic-powered species, thus taking a lot of impact out of the game's canon ending. Instead, the bulk of the Metro 2033 experience is not really worried about telling the deep story of the Dark One's conflict with humanity, but rather being a sort of grand tour of the Metro world, brought to life in incredible detail by 4A Studios, and immersing you in an atmosphere so thick you could cut it with your trench knife, and highlighting Artyom's journey from a curious young man to a hardened soldier and survivor through his trials and experiences. And the game truly succeeds at that aspect, as everything else here is secondary to the atmosphere and environment designs, as exploring the amazingly creepy, dilapidated and dark tunnels of the Metro, the packed-in shantytowns of the stations, and the frozen hellish ruins of Moscow are a visual feast to explore and shoot through. And I was pretty captivated by the world and lore here, and I was always interested to see where Artyom would go next, what faction he'd run into, what characters he'd meet, what abominations would be waiting for him, and what new info or world lore we could discover. And it kept me locked in and eager to see the game and all it had to offer. And it comes together amazingly in even the smallest moments, like Khan's candlelit memorial room that can instantly convey and make you feel the bleakness of the world, yet still feel the hope in humanity that remains beneath it all. Artyom's diary entries also shed some great light on his personal thoughts and perspectives through some pretty solid writing, and help make up for his stoic silence as he walks around the Metro like an Easter Island head armed with an AK-47. And he's a pretty wise and interesting fella, and I just wish he spoke a bit more throughout the game. But I understand the usage of a silent Artyom, as it's not just him, but you the player who chooses what kind of man Artyom will become. And I assume it would have been extremely difficult and cumbersome to introduce a fully voiced Artyom that speaks from the player's perspective. It definitely would have drastically bloated the development time of the game, so some sacrifices need to be made. Add all of that, plus some dated but still solid shooting that gets the job done, albeit this journey came with a bit too many Nasal's gang squats for my liking, I gotta admit. A satisfying yet simple, crunchy-ass loot system that inherently keeps you exploring and scouring every filthy corner and corridor, and some great-looking graphics and lighting effects. I was genuinely impressed with how well this game holds up, even to this day. Combine all of that, and I definitely recommend Metro 2033 to anyone who wants to be immersed in this oppressive but fascinating underground world. And as long as you don't crash out on PC like I did, as the crashing was so frequent, I was almost tempted to give up. But my computer has some quirks, thanks Intel. Fucking bastards. So hopefully these crashes won't happen to you. And if they don't, absolutely give this game a spin if you're a fan of the genre or have any interest at all in the series. And you might end up falling deep down the Metro tunnel in love with it. Metro 2! Metro Last Light, or Metro 2, or Metro 2035, or Metro 2033 2, is the direct follow-up to Metro 2033, the widely beloved atmospheric and thematic masterclass, and the greatest Moscow bombed-out sewer survival adventure ever put to software. And like any worthy sequel, Last Light aims to be bigger and better than its big brother in almost all aspects. A deeper, more intricate story, more characters with more depth to them than ever, more guns to shoot, and plenty of new and varied locations to explore both in and above the ever-degrading Metro. And this expanded scope is apparent right from the get-go, as we start the game with a cutscene, giving our guy Artyom Lasnimovich a proper backstory, as in 2033, Artyom is pretty much a blank slate for the player to self-insert into, and he will be shaped by the player's actions throughout the game, motivated by the general desire to protect his station from the Dark Ones, And he also has a mysterious connection to the Dark Ones that never really got explained. But now, Artyom is really coming into his own as an independent character, and now has firmly established origins, motivations, regrets, and hopes for the future. As in 2033, all we knew about Artie was that he lived in exhibition, was 24 years old, had a father who stepped up, and he wished to explore the world beyond his station, admiring guys like Hunter. But now, we get some real Artyom lore. In the cutscene, Artyom recounts a story where as a child, he convinced two of his friends to sneak into the Botanical Gardens station and open the sealed door to the surface, hoping to get a glimpse of the surface they've gone pretty much their whole lives without seeing. Artyom has a special bond with the Botanical Gardens, as it holds his last memories of the world before it all went to poo-poo. Artyom wasn't born in the Metro, you see. He was born on the surface, and on the day the Third World War started in obliterated Moscow, Artyom and his mother decided to take a little day trip via Metro to the Botanical Gardens, which allowed them to quickly retreat back into the Metro, sparing them the fate of becoming charred skeletons from nuclear hellfire. Artyom tells us that that day still torments him though, as he remembers all the minute details of the day, like the feel of the air on his skin, the smells of the natural, non-irradiated surface, and the taste of some ice cream that he got. But out of all the things he recalls, he can't remember the most important thing, that being his own mother's face, as Artyom can only remember her as a vague and blurry woman, and she died shortly after they fled into the Metro, leaving only this foggy visage where her face should be. And after getting past the new railcar-themed main menu and picking your difficulty, we get another cutscene, which reveals how the Dark Ones got into the Metro in the first place, as when Artyom and his pals open up the door to the Botanical Gardens, they kind of forgot to close it back up, which let the Dark Ones just stroll right on in, which eventually led to the series of events in the first game, which Artyom was responsible for, but he bucked up and he fixed his mess, so it's all good. And we take control of assumedly Artyom, sitting guard in a dank Metro tunnel, when an alarm goes up, and the guards down the tunnel get neutralized by the Dark Ones, who appear and conjure into solaces, who after being shot, turn into humans, and we even stab one right through the head, only to then realize that we just gave one of our guard buddies a spontaneous lobotomy with our trench knife, before a Dark One appears and big burrows Artyom by putting his massive bulbous alien hand on his shoulder, which flash bangs him back to reality, with Khan shaking us up from our Dark One PTSD nightmare. Khan tells us that he's made an incredible discovery at the ruins of the Dark One's hive, quickly revealing to us that the bad ending where we mass barbecue the Dark One population was the canon ending of Metro 2033. Khan tells us that he was snooping around their obliterated hive, and he spotted a living Dark One, and he urges us to go find it and speak to it, as Artyom still has the unique connection to the Dark Ones. And we go to speak with Miller, our Spartan boss, to go get permission, as Artyom is now a fully fledged Spartan soldier, now living in the restored D6 bunker. The Spartans seem to be doing pretty well in their new home. There's Spartans all over the place doing their daily tasks and training, and we get an overview on items from the Spartan Quartermaster here, where he explains gas masks, medkits, money bullets, guns, and enemy types, and all the items you'd ever fucking need. Now, Metro 2033 and Last Light Redos are extremely similar games. Pretty much the same game, in fact. As 2033 Redo uses the Last Light engine, so gas masks, medkits, visuals, items, shooting, looting, currency, and shops are all functionally identical to their 2033 counterparts, with the only differences being the new weapon types, and new armored enemy human types, and some new mutant types. Last Light has a pretty sizable arsenal, adding weapons like the new low-life pistol, shotgun pistol, new rifles like the little AK AKSU, the big AK RPK, Saiga shotgun, grenade-launching Medved, the Apocalypse minigun Gatling, and the new sniper rifle weapon type being the biggest new addition to the weapons, adding long-range, heavy-hitting sticks to Artyom's arsenal. And that's on top of all the weapons found in 2033 like the Gatling Asbat shotgun and more. And they're all great new additions to Artyom's potential loadouts, and I really got a kick out of the sniper rifles, especially while fighting mutants like the demons, as the high damage and my elite PC aim had me skeet shooting these guys out of the sky, and one-tapping distant goons with maximum efficiency. And these weapons reflect a more action-focused design of Last Light, as the game contains more firefights and encounters than in 2033, even having some honest-to-God boss fights that I'll discuss when we get to them. But the combat and gunplay still work pretty well, albeit still a bit dated feeling, and the new weapons just make it even more robust, with more ways to dish death than ever before. So we head to meet with Miller and Khan and Ullman, and while we ride up those sweet Soviet-styled spiral elevators, we hear some gossip about a Spartan named Lesnitsky, who apparently may have betrayed the Spartan Order, as after a guard shift at the D6 lab, the lab was found ransacked and Lesnitsky had vanished, potentially taking God knows what out of that lab. Khan then gives us a rundown on the ending of the last game and the destruction of the Dark Ones, spitting more sage wisdom than he realizes, as he theorizes that the Dark Ones may have not been so bad, and they may have only been trying to communicate with us, and that atomizing their freaky-ass nest may have been a horrible mistake. but with one confirmed to still be alive, and Artyom still retaining his unique connection to the Dark Ones, all hope may not yet be lost. And we then meet with Miller, where Khan tells Miller about his Dark One sighting. And Miller is the exact opposite of Khan on the Dark Ones. Whereas Khan desperately wants to rescue and commune with the last Dark One, Miller has a more Imperium of Man approach to the Dark Ones, and gets angry at just the mention of a living one, wanting to murder it expeditiously, still believing them to be humanity's greatest threat. Khan then says, "Please, can me and Artyom go find it?" And Miller agrees, but he says he'll send his smoking hot daughter Anna with us to act as our sniper, who will Chris Kyle that Dark One if we spot it. Khan argues with Miller about killing the Dark One, and tells Artyom that this may be his only chance of forgiveness after being escorted out. But Miller and Anna seem dead set on murking the last Dark One, but with no other options, we agree and head on out. We chat with our new partner Anna, who comes off pretty aggressive right out the gate towards poor Artyom, and talks about destroying the Dark Ones while seething with rage.
I wish I had been up in that tower myself to see
the missiles fall and watch them burn in their nests.
But Artyom just mews and ignores her jawing, and we take one of those pristine metro trains and hop out to walk through some awesome looking maintenance halls and overgrown sewers, burning through these thick ass cobwebs with our lighter. And we then make it to the surface after another classic Metro ladder mooning session, and the surface is looking a bit different from how we left it in Metro 2033. It seems that nuclear winter is finally over and nuclear spring has sprung, and we can even see the sun shining through the clouds, which has melted away the ice to give way to new plant growth and life, and flocks of mutant birds scatter in the distance, showing us that this beyond fucked world may have actually begun to heal a little. And I really like this new vibe to the surface levels, and how its spring vibes of life, warmth, and renewal juxtaposes with the Metro's worsening situation and the threat of a massive and disastrous conflict looming. Hope still remains, but we'll have to fight for it. We then progress through the ruins of the Dark One nest, fighting off attacking Watchmen gang squads just like old times. And I trek through the puddly and wet ground, and I find myself wiping my gas mask off way more than I ever did in 2033, as I kind of forgot there was a mechanic in that game, as the blood splatters and other gamer gunk you got on your mask usually wasn't too obstructive, and I'll usually just wait for it to clean itself. But Last Light seems to make your mask way dirtier and harder to see through when it's splattered, which you clean by pressing G, where Artie uses his magic cleaning hand to give you your sight back, which feels satisfying to do with some nice sound effects and animations. And we eventually find the Dark One, a small child one, and he's kind of cute. He kind of looks like a little alien monkey climbing around like that. Also, were these Dark Ones reproducing and banging like that? They seem to be like Ken dolling it down there in their pelvic region. So maybe they're doing some sort of whacked out Mass Effect style mind sex to have kids or something. I need to get my head out of the fucking gutter. So we pursue this little monkey child, and eventually we corner it and grab it. But seeing its alien bug face sends Artyom into a vision, which shows the destruction of the Dark Ones via the child's perspective, who managed to survive the missile strike by simply being away from the nest at the time of the attack. And when we wake up, the baby Dark One is caged up by Nazis, who took over the nest while we were sleeping, taking Artyom captive as well. And we wake up in a Nazi cell with another prisoner and 2 communists. The guards interrogate the first man, who was captured for being a suspected mutant, which is a big no-no for these groypers. So in order to test his mutie status, they bust out the skull measure to see if the guy should live or die. Looks like a modern-day Twitter argument. Well, his skull fails the test, and he's executed. And one of the Reds is executed too, but the second Red agrees to talk. But later, not right now. And the Nazi officer turns his attention to us, but then the communist attacks the other guard, and we help him murk this cartoon villain. And now the Spartans and communists aren't on the greatest of terms, but Artie and this other guy seem to make a good team. And this guy doesn't seem to be a total iconoclastic freak about communism, so we stick together to escape. And this is Pavel, and by all means, he seems to be a pretty cool dude. He's got this natural charisma to him. And I really like how he intersperses his Russian phrases into his speech, like his tak-tak-tak ticks and his various suka bliats. It gives him some pretty strong characterization in a pretty short amount of time.
But I say fuck that. No, fuck that. The grunts stick together, huh? Давай.
Okay, так. Looks like we cleared it. Yeah, блядь. Tough luck, didn't even budge, huh? Так. Now listen. Pretend you're a little fucking mouse.
What?
Get down, don't make any sudden moves.
Pavel gives us a sort of overview of the stealth mechanics in the game, like sticking to the shadows, avoiding enemy line of sight, and using throwing knives for silent rage takedowns.
What kind of joke is this? Get in there, look.
And showing you that your blue light on your watch indicates whether you're visible or not, and using lethal or non-lethal takedowns as we avoid the Nazi guards and searchlights. And it's a much better tutorial for stealth mechanics than in 2033. But like Metro 2033, I saw the stealth as nothing more than a suggestion, and I continued to just let that shit rip through Nazis, Reds, and mutants nonstop. Centrist Terminator Artyom is back, baby. But it seems foregoing stealth completely will pretty much lock you out of the good ending from all the bad karma hits you take from killing scores of people. So maybe don't do what I did, and take a more silent, methodical approach. So we sneak and shoo our way through the Nazi guards, and escape this huge Metro concentration camp. And while we slink through a pipe, we can overhear two Reich guards talking about selling a creature to a Hansa trader, that being our little Dark One in question, who the guards sold to the trader for a modest 200 bullets. So the child Dark One could be really anywhere in the Metro by now. So we continue following Pavel, and we even end up right in the middle of a Reich rally led by the Führer himself, who talks about the discovery of the D6 bunker, and he claims that there's enough food, medicine, and weapons in the bunker to supply the whole Reich for 100 years. And the packed room and great lighting effects on the Führer at the end of the tunnel was a really great set piece and world building moment, and it really flexes this game's graphical capabilities. It's pretty crowded in here. And as we reach the front of the crowd, right before we're able to make our escape, an officer interrupts the speech to tell the crowd that there was a jailbreak at the camp, and that 2 prisoners have escaped. So Pavel lets his thing go off in the crowded room, and we rush to make our escape, much like the escape from the Reds in 2033, except we mostly just run forward. And this dude Pavel is one tough bastard too, absolutely sauced on these guys. Damn. And we escape on a rail car together, heading towards Theater Station. We soon dismount and proceed on foot, and Pavel gets captured by Reich goons after trying to use a large pipe like Mario.
Wait here while I look around.
Hey! A spy! Grab him!
And then I shoot my way through the base in the game's first large and proper gunfight. And Last Light is showing us more emphasized human combat here, as the room we're fighting in is pretty large and complex with multiple floors, and there's a pretty large amount of enemies in here to take out. And I found it pretty fun to just blast through this entire zone. Also, this game will throw more explicit moral choices at you, notably these surrendering enemies, like when you catch this guy off guard reading in bed. I guess he didn't hear all the loud bangs and men hollering bloody murder one room over. But you have the option to spare this unarmed goon, or just murk him for no reason. And I gave him a little knuckle sandwich, moved on. Moments like these are much better implementations of the moral system, as the choice is very apparent and clear, on top of just being a fun little detail to catch this guy completely unprepared. Now Artyom could just leave Pavel to his fate. His only true goal is to capture the baby Dark One, but Artyom feels indebted to Pavel for saving him, and it feels only right to return the favor. And we soon find Pavel in a prison cell after venting Batman Arkham style. Lucky us. But he soon gets escorted away to be executed. And I start another firefight after getting spotted early on accident. And it's another pretty big and fun fight, and we start running into armored enemies for the first time. A tankier version of the regular human enemies, who wear massive clunky looking suits of scrap metal welded together, making them extra resistant to bullets. And the best way to take them out is to land a few headshots to knock off their helmets, and one tap their exposed melon for the kill, which was no problem for my god tier PC aim. And I also really enjoyed the armor's destruction effects when you miss those headshots and hit the chest or arms, which coupled with the dynamic animations where armored enemies will stumble and react to getting shot, we get a pretty robust enemy that you gotta invest a few bullets into to fully take down. And I really enjoyed fighting these guys. It makes the human firefights even more dangerous. But once we wipe out this Nazi garrison, we find Pavel about to get lynched in this dark tunnel, and he almost croaks, but we cut him free and we escape into the catacombs. And as we progress, the lights are cut in the tunnel, so we have to make our way through these awesomely spooky spider-infested tunnels with our best buddy Pavel. And these spiders have gotten a buff since Metro 2033, and they're no longer the light-allergic two-pump chumps that they were in that game. The spiders are now more heavily armored, and shooting them outright won't do much. Instead, you have to shine your flashlight on them until they flip over, and then blast their soft underbelly to score the kill. It makes the spiders much more of a genuine threat with some solid strategy behind them, rather than the afterthought that they were in 2033. And Artyom and Pavel need to do some parkour climbing and elite teamwork just to escape from these freaks. But once past their disgusting ballsack nests, we have to take a quick detour on the surface to finally reach Theater Station, which is accessible via a crashed plane that fell on the theater when the war broke out. And we soon reach the plane, and after a little reunion with our classic double-barreled shotgun, we explore the wreckage. But while on the plane, we start experiencing some ghostly chicanery, as flashes of the plane's passengers while they were still alive appear before us. And when we reach the cockpit, we get flashed back in time, and we see the Great War kick off from the plane's perspective, the pilots screaming and pleading for their lives as the plane crashes down into the fiery hell of Moscow, in this awesome yet insanely horrifying scene. God damn, I did not expect to experience a violent plane crash in this game, especially a ghostly time-warped one. But it works, due to just how harrowing it is. Jesus. Even Pavel gets completely zooted by this magical ghost plane, as he thinks he's also on the plane as it crashes. And he takes off his gas mask because he thinks he's huffing in smoke from the plane. And we put his mask back on him and bring him back to reality before he suffocates in the Moscow shit air. And then we immediately leave this cursed ghost plane. But we get set upon by demons and a horde of watchmen, and we flee to the theater entrance, much like when we reach Market Station with Bourbon, and we are saved by some armored flame troopers.
Like a stroll through the park, huh?
Haha, classic Pavel, you scoundrel. But we shake off this hellish, ghostly geek session, and we head to the theater with Pavel, who tells us that we'll head for the Red Square station, and then Pavel will vouch for us to help us get us back to Polis, communist honor. The theater station is pretty sweet as far as metro stations go, having great details like this bar, criers advertising the shows here, and a guy doing shadow puppet shows, and some really great lighting effects all throughout the place. And we relink with Pavel and enter the theater itself, where we even get to watch a show, a stripper version of the Rockettes, I guess. They all kick and sync to the can-can on piano, jiggle physics and all. It's another great little world-building moment that expands the world of Metro. But Artyom isn't moved by these bouncing boobs, and we proceed on, as Pavel teases Artyom about getting no bitches.
Artyom, looks like you're a bit woman-hungry, huh? Well, yes.
But before we leave, Pavel decides to sit down for a toast with Artyom, where he starts talking about his life as a communist and his ideology, saying that men turn into child-slaving cannibals if left to their own devices, and order is required no matter what, and only the communists can provide that order. An out-of-the-blue rant about ideology. I don't like where this is going. Pavel then completely screws Artyom over, and has him arrested by some red thugs. What the hell, man? After all that? After all we've been through? You choose politics over the guy who saved you when you saved a few times over? Bruh. Artyom collapses from a spiked drink before being detained, and we wake up with Pavel escorting us through the heart of the Red Line, which is filled with red soldiers who are training and standing at attendance. And even the red bigwigs are here. Their general secretary, a man named Moskvin, and his second-in-command is here as well, and it seems the Reds are gearing up for something big. Pavel walks us through this large hall, and it's another really awesome world-building moment, much like the Nazi rally hall, showing us the Red soldiers training and posing, with communist slogans and posters all over the walls and ceiling. And Pavel tells us that much like the Nazis, they're after D6, and want to take control of it from the Spartan Order, also believing it to house endless supplies and weapons for them. We then meet the second-in-command, Comrade General Corbett, this sinister as fuck looking guy in a black leather jacket and sporting some grisly scars on his face and a bloodshot evil eye. And I can tell this dude is evil as shit just from the look of him. To his right is that traitor from D6, Lesnitsky, who we see is actually a communist bot. We then get knocked out and taken to the interrogation room, where we get grilled on the baby Dark One. But Secretary General Moskvin and his son interrupt Corbett, and Moskvin starts wailing on us to get us to talk. And that brother should not be sporting a mustache like that if he's a true communist. That's the cut of the ultimate enemy. But Moskvin's brutality freaks out his son Lenya, who runs off after telling his dad to stop being such an asshole. Corbett then injects Artyom with some truth serum, and we get another flashback to when Artyom and his friends went to the surface. After they opened the door, they went outside, and were almost immediately set upon by watchmen, who are moments from devouring Artyom for lunch, until we're saved by a Dark One, who fends off the watchmen for us, before we snap back to reality, where Corbett tells Pavel to head to a place called Venice, and then to collect the baby Dark One. We then see Lenya, who vents about his dad to us, saying he doesn't want to be anything like his shitty dad, and mentions that he even killed his own brother, the former Secretary General, which will be important later. Lenya, being a class act, then frees us, and shows us where to vent out to escape. Incredibly beast, Lenya. Thanks, man. So we vent, and we can listen in on Moskvin and Corbett, which reveals to us that that sinister bastard Corbett has full control over Moskvin, and is dead set on a war for D6. Corbett also reveals that he had killed Moskvin's brother to secure his spot as leader of the Red Line, and Corbett is controlling Moskvin through that blackmail. But we continue on heading towards Venice, chasing after Pavel. We then have to shoot our way through a few rooms full of Reds, including this big room with a large train that they're working on. And after Pavel's betrayal and learning the truth of the situation with Corbett, I found it was my moral imperative to kill these fools in some fun firefights. I also executed these poor surrendering workers for no real reason, and this probably nuked my moral score into the dirt. Also, when I reached the end, I got stuck again looking for the way forward, running into another depot, hole-in-the-ground-esque instance of bad direction. Now in Metro 2033, I didn't mention the use of the compass, because I never actually used it myself, as instead, I wanted to find the path forward just through the level design clues alone, and using the compass probably could have saved me some time, so that was my bad in that instance. But here, we have to crawl through this massive fan here, and when I first approached it, the animation to progress through it didn't trigger, so I milled in circles for a while until I tried the fan again, and that time it worked, and Artyom squeezed through it. The fan also has a wall behind its rotor, which looks impassable, so that confused me too, but Artyom moves it out of the way when he passes through it. But confusion aside, we do a bit more shooting against some armored enemy squads, we have to do a vent maze to proceed. And when we complete it and drop down, this armored goon appears, ready to turn us into red glue with his Gatling gun, until he recognizes Artyom, and we recognize him as Andrew the Blacksmith. My man. So we break bread with Andrew, and he brainstorms us another plan to help us relink with the Spartans. Andrew tells us that there's no direct route to Polis, so our best bet is to go above ground and head to their old outpost, the church, and see if we can meet them there. But we still have to head to Venice, and Andrew gives us a sweet-ass gift, a custom railcar that we can actually drive, and it comes with some custom lighting to keep the spiders away. Thanks, Andrew. He and Connor are the true goats of these games for Artyom. Love this guy. This kicks off a pretty large level where we can drive down the tracks and dismount at will to explore for extra gear. And I enjoy these less constricted, more open-ended levels that Last Light is geared towards. It makes the Metro feel much larger, and you can fully control the pace of your exploration. So we make it through Spider City here, and even run into another haunted room full of shadow ghosts. That is, until we turn this railcar ride into a roller coaster, and we crash out of the bottom of this hill. But luckily, the cart still drives, so we press on. We then come across a group of twitchy survivors who had fled the Red Line, but half their group was ambushed and captured by tunnel bandits, who we can swoop in and save for some moral point boosts, as we stop and go throughout the tunnels smoking these bandits like a blunt. That is, until we run into this spiked metal turnstile, which destroys our cart for good as we try to pass through it, and we have to proceed on foot. And we reach a shitty makeshift dock and pull a bell rope to get someone to come pick us up, as we fend off a Nassau's gang squad just like old times. I almost miss these guys. And we get picked up by a boatman who can take us to Venice, and along the way, we run into some new water-based mutants, called the Shrimp, who apparently taste great with some beer, but they attack us pretty quickly, and we gotta shoot and QTE them off in a pretty intense fight, and the boatman is absolutely tweaking during all of this. We fend off the Shrimp for good by blowing up a crate full of pipe bombs, and the boatman getting the most out of his cigarette before he has to light the fuse. 3 extra posts before I go! But with the Shrimp blown up, we finally make it to Venice. And the boatman tells us that the Shrimp usually aren't like this, and it seems that they were so pissy because they got riled up by red goons who came in earlier, so Pavel must be close. Venice is another really cool station, getting its name from being flooded due to the ice melt from the nuclear spring on the surface, making Venice a seedy fishing station. And we then proceed into the brothel and spot Pavel in one of the booths. It's almost time to get our lick back. But first, we listen in on his conversation, where he mentions a virus container of some sort that was delivered to Oktyabrskaya station. Oktyabrskaya.
Oktyabrskaya, okay?
They aren't making it fucking easy. But suddenly, woman jump scare, and we gotta muzzle her and hide from Pavel, which she seems to kinda like, but I ignore her immediately and follow Pavel. No time to get freaky. I then shoot past some red soldiers in this warehouse, and we even get to see a glowing mushroom farm back here, and it just looks scrumptious. Don't you just want to eat this every day for the rest of your life? Another great world-building moment, though. And we enter a room and get stuck up by Pavel, who reveals that Corbett wants to use the baby Dark One as a weapon by taming it. Somehow. But while Pavel thinks about it, we disarm him and hold him up with our knife instead. And Pavel tells us that the Dark One is close by, in that Oktyabrskaya station he mentioned earlier. But then Venice's one and only guard barges in and gives Pavel a chance to escape. Well, shit. We caused a real mess here. But not to worry. The guard knows a way to the surface, which will take us through a swamp. So we suit up and ship out, heading for the church. The swamp is another pretty open-ended level here, as we gotta comb this swamp for gas cans to power a ferry raft, having to search the various structures in the area. But while we search, we get attacked by the Mirelurk Queen from Fallout 4. Along with some demons and shrimp for good measure. And I was putting the sniper rifle to good use in this large area, and we even scrap with these stronger versions of the shrimps, who can walk on land and use their claws as shields against your bullets, and you have to flank them, or shoot them after one of their wide swing attacks to actually damage them. And these guys are some real bastards too. Their claw shields can eat most of your bullets insanely easily, and their blocking hitbox is bigger than you'd think. And we even have to fight off this massive green shrimp that's been harassing us the whole level. But luckily, a demon shows up to distract it, and we can take the ferry after we give it some more gas. Night then soon falls as we continue to the church, and we hear Anna's voice calling out to us as we get closer, and we finally relink with our Spartan compatriots, until that damn Mirelurk Queen returns and attacks us, kicking off an honest-to-God boss battle with the damn thing, which is just alright, and more crusty than anything else, as the shrimp attacks by performing huge sweeping claw attacks, and my strategy was to whip out my 4-barrel shotgun and run in a circle around the thing, and then run up and barrel stuff 4 rounds of buckshot into it before circling back to reload and attack again, and hope I didn't get whacked by its claw arms, and I usually did. You just rinse and repeat until it falls over dead. It almost feels like a turn-based combat game. And this thing is a real juggernaut too, taking dozens of bullets, a few grenades, and backup from Anna and the Spartans. But after doing donuts around this thing for a little while, we gun this thing down for good, and we can enter the church. We finally relink with Anna, who was seemingly warmed up to us, even apologizing for the gardens and us getting captured. She saw my shrimp slaying skills and it got her gushing like a lake. So we take a quick nap, and when we wake up, Anna tells us that we're all going to head out to Oktyabretskaya soon, and we can reach it via the church's catacombs. And we hear a knock on the door, which then promptly blows up, as the Red attacks our church base, Lesnitsky taking Anna captive as Artyom watches from beneath some rubble, completely helpless. And we get up some unknown time later, and we have to proceed through the dark and spooky catacombs, which disables our flashlight, forcing us to use our lighter as our only light source. And it's a great stretch of atmospheric gameplay, as we hear ghostly wails and bells, along with inhuman groaning, and we even see more shadow ghosts. Just don't touch them. And we have a Nasalas basket battle, and we proceed into these deep, cavernous ruins, which hold some crumbling ancient ruins of some kind, along with being infested with mutants. And this level is super sweet. It almost feels like an Elder Scrolls dungeon or something with the ancient ruins and old mechanisms that you use. Artyom in his notes has always wondered about the nature of the Moscow underground, as he believes that there's much more than just the metro down there, such as passageways and vaults belonging to the long-gone czars, to even older and more mysterious tunnels lying beneath it all. Maybe Ivan the Terrible's Goon Cave is down here or something. We also run into another new mutant, these wall-grabbing Nasalas-like creatures that blast you with hypersonic screams, ringing out in your ears and damaging you. And they're pretty freaky, and can be pretty hard to spot and gun down. But goddamn, that high-pitched ringing is so goddamn grating. Please die. We even have to take on the most jacked Nasalas I've ever seen in my entire life in another mutant boss battle. But this fight is much less crustier than the shrimp, although I did get scooted around awkwardly by its attacks at times. But now, it's just you and the beast, and you can bait the thing into charging into these stone pillars, on top of just shooting it directly to rack up some damage. And its only real moves are charge and arm swing, so shoot, bait, and let the thing give itself CTE charging into the rock pillars. And once you've damaged it enough, it'll speed charge out of the arena, opening up a new path forward for us, where we can start round 2 with it. Where instead of charging, it'll rush you while trying to belly flop you to death. So I loaded my money bullets and pissed fire on it from my AK like it's got gonorrhea, and the thing goes down dead. But the room then cracks and floods shortly after, and Artyom gets sucked through the water right into a tunnel connecting to Fuck it. How convenient. As we crawl through the station, we see communist troops detaining and executing people for being infected with a mysterious illness. And it seems that virus container Pavel mentioned has finally come into play. This virus being what Lesnitsky stole from the D6 lab, seemingly deploying it into this unsuspecting station, and then wiping the whole place out under the guise of controlling the epidemic. And we need to know more, and we progress through the amazingly crafted condemned station, offing these red thugs with a vengeance. I even shot this guy so hard he started throwing it back. It seems that Lesnitsky himself is leading this attack, from overhearing some Red chatter. And it seems that the Reds are kicking off the war for D6 early by directly attacking this Hansa-affiliated station. We then run into the Turncloak himself, who is holding Anna at knife point, and we find ourselves in an old-fashioned standoff. Lesnitsky tries to justify his actions, saying that he still has honor because he was never actually loyal to Miller in the first place. Typical excuse. But before he can finish his diatribe, I blast him in the head to get him to shut up. But his helmet takes all the damage and it shatters. And he shoves Anna into me, her head shattering my gas mask. This lady has a skull made of lead, goddamn. And this guy Lesnitsky flees stage left. Artyom and Anna then stumble up the stairs behind them, and they collapse right in front of the nearby Hansa station. We then wake up with Anna recovering in a quarantine cell, because as far as we know, we could still be infected with Lesnitsky's mysterious illness, and could die at any time. And Anna worries about the upcoming war for D6 and how it could potentially destroy the entire Metro. But Artyom's stone-faced Riz overpowers her fears, and she pops out a singular boob, and they start getting freaky. My guy Artyom is probably mad nervous right now. But thankfully, this disgusting display of premarital sex is over quickly. And good news, it seems that we're virus-free, and we're free to go. But Anna has to stay longer to get her wounds treated. And we pass through this cramped quarantine station. And by listening to this doctor here, we can learn that this virus was actually a form of weaponized Ebola that was designed to kill fast, but become harmless after a short time. So we're good to go, I guess. We eventually run into our favorite magic man, Khan, who tells us to get up off our buns and go after the baby Dark One right away. And we stock up and head out into the unknown. And the baby Dark One is still lost to us, but Khan has a magical pond that he thinks could help us. And he tells us about something called the River of Fate, a mysterious body of water in the Metro that can seemingly grant wishes. As if a man has a desperate enough wish and enters the river, he may be transported directly to where the wish can be made through his own actions. Alright, Khan. I can accept malevolent shadow ghosts, psychic alien salamander men, and time-warping traumatic vision plane crashes, but a magical river that can teleport you to another location seems a little too ludicrous, even for you. But after fighting off some mutants, we come to the entrance of the river, where we see a phone ringing on the wall, and when we pick it up, Artyom hears his mom on the other end, which freaks him out.
I'm over here stroking my dick. I got lotion on my dick right now.
And we soon enter the central cistern of the River of Fate. And we enter it, and we fall into this watery green realm, and we swim to the top of Ostankino Tower at the moment Artyom launched the missiles against the Dark Ones, before being teleported to the Dark One nest to chase the little monkey boy around some more. And then we finally get teleported to the freak show train that the Dark One was sold to, diving headfirst towards a crashing train, before resurfacing out in a different body of water, close to the train that the Dark One is on. Now, I have no idea what just happened, but Khan has vindicated himself yet again, and his magical time-traveling river was no joke. It even showed us where to go to find the Dark One, and spits us out right near the train he's held captive on. Maybe Khan just pours acid and ayahuasca into the river and swims in it to geek out, or something? And he already knew where the baby Dark One was using his soul trace powers that he used to save Artyom at the library, but this is the first and last time the River of Fate is mentioned or used, so for all intents and purposes, it's a teleporter. We then hop on a cart with Khan and do some fun cart skeet shooting and catch up with the train holding the child Dark One, and we jump on, mowing down the communist troops on board in a pretty high intensity battle. A lot of these fights have some awesome spectacle and settings for them, and I'm feeling super motivated to kill these Reds and rescue my stupid alien chud son, and we soon find the Dark One, and we shake hands. And we then cut back to child Artyom with the Dark One who saved him, who shows him a vision of his mother, and we finally get to see her face, and she and Artyom embrace. It's a very sweet and tender moment, but goddamn the mom's voice acting is incredibly trash. Ass even. She just sounds so disengaged and bored, and it kind of ruins this tender moment.
Artyom, darling, you're so big now.
Mom, I'm scared.
Don't be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of now.
We then cut back, and Artyom tells the Dark One that he's all alone now, and the Dark One replies that he's not alone, but the first, finally revealing how he obtained his Dark One connection, as Dark Ones have the ability to form a bond with those they touch. But it seems by the time Metro 2033 rolled around, the Dark Ones decided to mindfuck the humans instead of creating bonds with them. And we then cut back to Artyom and the child Dark One, the roles reversed from the vision, and the child Dark One then passes out from all the psychic stress, and Artyom scoops him up and carries him away, unable to kill the child, due to his compassion for the kid's situation and his regret for nuking his entire species. And we bring him topside, as Dark Ones struggle to breathe when not in irradiated shit air, and the kid sticks by us as we progress, giving us a little bit of bullet time and x-ray vision to help us fight off some attacking mutants. He also talks to us throughout, as the kid learns more about Artyom, even throwing on some rags to be more like him. And he's pretty cute, and the child voice acting is a step up from the weird-ass adult voices they had in 2033. Although it's still not super great.
You and the other people are strong. You can kill anyone.
We then have to cross this massive bridge, taking out a platoon of Nasalises and wall-crawler bastards who just love to jerk back and forth around the pillars they attach themselves to, making killing these guys a real pain in the ass coupled with their annoying high-pitched ring attacks. They're by far the most irritating mutants in the entire game, no question. We even get to ride on this huge zipline until a demon trolls Artyom and breaks it, causing us to crash back down. But the Dark One kid distracts it, and we move on to the next level. and we shoot through some communist surface squads, and the Child Dark One will highlight enemies for us, giving us some nice wall hacks that we could use to sneak by these guys more efficiently. But too bad I love violence. It's just too fun to shoot these guys up. And we eventually corner Lesnitsky, who was leading the squads up here. And Artyom and the Dark One grab onto him, and we see Lesnitsky's POV as he steals the virus, gets his orders from Corbett, captures Anna, and at the end, we learn that Corbett had commanded Pavel to handle Red Square, giving us vital intel on the communist movements. And we then have the option to kill or spare Lesnitsky, who by all means deserves to die a horrific death, as he massacred an entire neutral station just to test a bioweapon. But, thirsty for those moral points, and not wanting to set a bad example for the kid, I decided to spare him as we head for Red Square. And the Reds' plan is thus: attend the Polish Peace Conference as a front, but Pavel will mobilize at the Red Square and will attack D6 while the big shots are at the conference. And we progress through Moscow, seeing plenty of ghosts and flashback visions that teach the kid about humanity's devastation. And pay close attention to the kid and what he says in this level, as you can lose plenty of moral points by attacking the mutants he points out, like this mother demon and her baby, and other Watchmen mutants he says are scared or hungry, as he can read the emotions of most living things. But look, I didn't really want to kill the demon, but it attacked me first, and that kid will suffer without its mother, and it may come looking for revenge if it does live. So I had to do this. I had to blast automatic shotgun bullets into his face. You gotta understand. And it's a really cool level that shows the development of the Child Dark One learning about the world from the ghosts and Artyom's own actions. But the aggressive mutant AI docked me a few moral points when I was forced to fire back, and killing mutants should never be a moral negative, in my opinion. Especially the beastly ones. I think having one or two less flying alligator tiger dragons in this world would be a net positive. But regardless, we arrive at the Red Square, and the ruins of the place look really sweet too. I'm a sucker for blown out ruins of famous landmarks in these post-apocalyptic games. But a massive, powerful storm soon descends, and we have to hide from the massive killer wind gusts. And we then enter a tunnel full of dark, shadowy hands, and we get restrained. But we get saved by the Dark One, who leads us through seemingly hell itself, a huge tunnel of inky black corpses reaching out from the wall, complete with a stream of blood on the ground. What the fuck? But we pass through, and the hands vanish behind us, back to whatever layer of hell they came from. Now this would be shocking in, say, Metro 2033, running through a tunnel of the trapped and damned souls of those who died from the war, but we've already experienced so much paranormal shit so far in this game, Artyom isn't even fazed by it anymore, and he takes it on the chin. And we then catch up to Pavel shacked up in some ruins, and now is truly the time to get our lick back from this bald bastard. And we light up the red goons who attack us, getting some wall hacks from the kid to help us manage the firefight. But we wipe them out and move to take out Pavel. But be careful when firing at him. He can jiggle peek these corners better than any CS pro, and he can melt your health if you don't hit him quick enough, which I made sure of by mag dumping my Gatling shotgun at him, which incapacitates Pavel. And we give him a little Dark One mind invasion as a punishment for his betrayal. From his vision, we get the full details of Corbett's plan. He wants to take control of D6 as their headquarters, and they will use the virus to wipe out any stations that try to oppose them, which would hopefully, finally, achieve that coveted global communism. For real this time. We also learned that Pavel was to use a secret entrance to D6 via the Kremlin to assault and capture D6 while the conference was going on, and bada bing, bada boom, Lenin's goals will finally be achieved. We then wake up with Pavel in the damn soul hell dimension, with Pavel being pulled in by the arms, and I decided to free him to try and shore up any moral points I could get, as despite everything, we still want to show the kid forgiveness above all, and deep down, we know Pavel is still our friend at the end of the day, and he's just doing what he does because of his ideology, despite how misguided it is. As when we fight him, the Dark One reveals to us that he's only sad and nervous about fighting us, and holds no real malice towards Artyom. So we mask him up, and we leave him to his fate. And we then take a stroll through the dark and spooky botanical gardens, until we run into a pair of mutant bear cubs, who get pressed by some watchmen. But then their massive mutant bear mother appears to scare off the watchers. Oh yeah, we're definitely gonna have a mutant bear boss battle, which starts very soon after. The bear will chase you and whack you for some huge damage, and you have no real choice besides to pretty much run away until the beast gets swarmed by a gang squad of watchmen, which will reveal its vulnerable back to you that you can shoot up for big damage. And just keep repeating that loop until the bear decides it's had enough, and it charges away like the chunky Nasalis boss. And that's that. Cool mutant, but another pretty mediocre fight overall. And we see the bear wounded and vulnerable, and some watchmen move in for the kill. But I take these kill stealers down, and let the bear go free with its cubs. Pure class from Artyom. And we then reach a tunnel, where Miller and Connor are waiting for us. Hey, what's up, fellas? Good to see you again. And we enter with the Dark One, who disguises himself as a human child. I guess they can transmogrify on top of being able to turn invisible. and this spooks Miller a little bit.
What the fuck?
And Khan convinces Miller not to shoot the poor kid dead, and we enter a vision with Khan, and we get a full explanation on Artyom's resistance to the Dark Ones. Apparently, it was given to him to act as a medium between the humans and the Dark Ones, which in hindsight, wasn't exactly a great plan. And we also see this huge door in the vision, which is a sealed door that's still locked up in D6. And inside are a group of snoozing Dark Ones, still alive and trapped in the bunker, waiting to be freed. Well, that's convenient. Good thing Artyom is no longer a confirmed mass genocider. And it also opens up the question to if the Dark Ones were a creation of the war and its subsequent fallout, or if they were created somehow before the war and later escaped. But we'll never truly know the answer. All we know is that they got a squad of Dark Ones locked up in the D6 basement, and we gotta go free them. We then head to Polis in the conference with Miller, Khan, and the kid, and Miller is still huffing the copium that this conference will work and prevent a war for D6, not realizing that Moskvin is Corbett's bottom bitch. We then head through Polis where the Reds and Nazis are waiting outside the conference chamber, and I'm surprised they haven't tried beating each other to death yet. And we crash the conference and let the Dark One approach Moskvin. And this sends us into his mind labyrinth, a hallway full of communist posters and openable doors. And by opening the doors, we can learn all of Moskvin's dirty little secrets. And we learn that Corbett had been playing him like a fiddle from the jump, being the one to convince him that his brother was planning on eliminating him, which wasn't true, which led Moskvin to poison his vodka. And Corbett used this knowledge to control Moskvin, lest his dishonorable kinslaying comes to light. And the red doors and endless communist hallway was a super cool way to convey this backstory to us. I actually really liked it. And it stands out in my memory just how unique it is. But Moskvin was hollering all these inconvenient truths out loud during his geek session, and cat's out of the bag now. So Moskvin tells everyone that Corbett is assaulting D6 as we speak, where he will obtain the means of production for the virus. And if he does, the Metro is cooked, and he then walks off in shame. And I have no idea why he would trust such a clearly evil-looking guy. But no matter. We need to haul ass on over to D6 and stop the Reds before it's all over. And Artyom gets geared up in some heavy armor of his own, and the baby Dark One leaves to bust his family out of bunker prison. And we arrive and Miller gives a very brief speech. And we see a communist train car blow up the barricaded door, and they all charge in. And this is one awesome ass scene. And it feels like the entire Metro is on the line here. Even Khan is ripping that AK like a Spartan troop. Once the first wave is gunned down, rail tanks flank us from the side. We have to disable the tank by shooting the parts that glow red on it, while avoiding the train's gunner that will make you jitter more than the bullets actually hurt you. It's kind of crazy. And once the tank is scrapped, the Reds mount another assault, and we can pick up a Gatling gun to turn these Reds into red mist. And they even deploy a shield wall of troops guarding a heavy flame-throwing soldier, who fall one by one as they get closer. But killing the flamer will blow them all up, and it's one hell of a battle. And the spectacle here is pretty awesome with all the friendly and Foley guns going off and the massive explosions that are going on everywhere. There's a real sense of desperation and death here. But once we mow down this wave, we realize that we're simply outnumbered, and the Reds crash their huge armored train right through our defenses. And Miller's leg is half blown off, and Corbett arrives to lord and evilly gloat over us. And Miller gives us the command to blow the place up, and I activate the bomb as Artyom obliterates all the Reds, D6, Miller and himself to stop the war in one big fiery sacrifice. And after the explosion, we cut to Anna talking to her and Artyom's quarantine sex baby, where she tells him about Artyom's heroic sacrifice and that the Dark Ones have made it out, hopefully to return one day. And the credits roll as the Dark One child walks off with the rest of his family. And this again is the bad ending. Shit! In the good ending, the baby Dark One appears right before Artyom Hezbollahs himself, and the other Dark Ones appear to disarm the Reds and fry their minds with 3,000 hours of talk to us psychically blasted into their minds. And we get an epilogue for all the main characters. Miller was wounded, but he became head of the Polis Guards. Khan disappeared, probably using his magical river to teleport somewhere a little bit nicer than this place. And Ullman died in the fighting. Damn, poor guy. And the child says goodbye to Artyom, but Artyom says they will meet again. And the child walks off into the sunset, as Artyom finally obtains the forgiveness he's worked for this entire journey. This being the true canon ending to Last Light. Now I do feel like Last Light does improve the moral system a little bit, as the moral point gains and losses are seemingly more explicit and apparent, and the game gives you more options to make choices, like sparing or killing Pavel, Lesnitsky, and surrendering enemies, releasing the Nazi prisoners, saving people from the bandits, and listening to the baby Dark One, and avoiding mutants when possible, and saving the bear after defeating it, and so on. But it's still far from perfect, and it still suffers from the same issues 2033 had, because doing a combat-focused playthrough will seemingly condemn you to the bad ending, unless you really know what to do and where to scrounge for all those extra points, by listening to all NPC conversations, donating money anytime you can, and just going down the wiki list of everything you can do to get your score up. And you still have no way of telling what your current moral point score is, which I feel will go a long way in motivating the player to change their ways before it's too late. And in the first video, I failed to mention that there are indeed subtle visual triggers when you gain or lose a point, which looks like a slight white flash accompanied by some ghostly noises when gaining points.
I'll handle the Politburo.
And a dark bluish gray flash for losing points. But these are incredibly subtle. And if you aren't familiar with the mechanic, you'd think it was just some extra ghostly phenomena or Artyom having a moment or something. And a lot of times, I didn't even recall noticing the flashes. They're that easily missable. And an icon pop-up would probably serve much better without any hits to immersion whatsoever. Also, for some moral choices, like killing Lesnitsky, it seemed like the way more moral choice to just kill him there and now, instead of letting this traitorous mass murderer live to fight another day. But that's a whole 9-hour discussion on moral relativism we don't need to get into. And what the devs say goes, and I can't argue that here. But besides these hiccups I still have with the morality system, I found the story in Last Light to be much more interesting and compelling than 2033, and getting to see more of the metro like Venice, the theater, and exploring the ruins of the Red Square and the mysterious ancient buried ruins below are some really awesome locations for me. And being able to get up close and personal with the major factions, like seeing the Nazi rally in the prison and the communist training hall and all their facilities, and attending the Polis Council are great moments of world building that expand the world of Metro to a pretty great deal. And the main story of Artyom pursuing the baby Dark One, getting to learn more about their abilities and thoughts, forging a strong bond with the kid, and discovering the origin of Artyom's unique connection to the Dark Ones through his backstory, and ultimately redeeming himself for air frying them at the end of 2033 by saving the kid and the D6 Dark Ones, and letting them go free to forge their own future was a great arc for our protagonist. And characters like Pavel are great additions to the cast. And Pavel's betrayal felt like a genuine gut punch, as he chooses ideology over your friendship, which is bolstered by his fun dialogue and mannerisms that make you like him even more. And even in the bad ending, if you get it, it still doesn't feel like a waste or a disappointment. And Artyom sacrificing himself to defeat Corbett and his goons tracks with Metro's tone and themes pretty well. Although it does have its story hiccups. I thought the magical teleporting river was a bit too Deus Ex Machina-y, even for me. And it kind of felt like the devs were taking a paranormal shortcut to finally get Artyom to rescue the baby Dark One after some extended waffling with the communists, as the river doesn't require a price from Artyom at all, and he gets to use it free of charge outside of a spooky phone call. And it appears only when it's wholly convenient, and it immediately disappears from the story completely after using it. And Artyom and Anna's relationship wasn't very compelling to me. But besides those issues, the story here is interlocking, expansive, and pretty interesting to learn more about the factions, as well as the Dark Ones themselves. And most importantly, Artyom really comes into his own here, feeling more like an individual character with his choices, rather than a meat vehicle for the player to take command of with little background to learn about. And throw in some more guns to play around with, larger, more open-ended levels to explore and shoot through, more mutants to fight, making it so the game can actually mix it up with its mutants and not have to resort to throwing Nasal's gang squads at you over and over again. Bigger, more dynamic human gunfights have some impressive spectacle at them at times, especially at the end, and even a few boss battles for good measure. And Last Light is pretty much an improvement all across the board from 2033, outside of some atmospheric moments like the Cursed Station or the ghostly tunnels of 2033, which 2033 excelled at incredibly well. And Last Light is just bigger, stronger, and more intricate than 2033 ever was, and it completes this Metro package in the first leg of Artyom's story incredibly well, and I'd probably recommend this game over 2033, if you were to only play one for some odd reason. It's just a great game overall. A couple years back, I played Half-Life Alyx on my newly acquired Valve Index VR headset, and Half-Life Alyx was probably the coolest game I've ever played in my entire life. The graphics were phenomenal, I was never immersed in a game more in my entire life than in this one, and personally, I think Half-Life Alyx was proof that VR had a legitimate place in the gaming industry. It wasn't just a niche hobby for some wealthier than average gamers who are resistant to vertigo. And it was able to deliver a truly unique and incredible experience that you could only get in VR. But after Half-Life Alyx came out, there hadn't really been a major VR release that could even sniff the success and acclaim that Alyx did. But with the recent release of Metro Awakening VR, I think I found a game that comes incredibly close to that bar Half-Life Alyx set, and it managed to really recapture that incredible experience within the Metro universe. Well, mostly. Metro Awakening is a prequel to the entire Metro series, taking place about 5 years before the events of Metro 2033, mostly taking place in the year 2028. And in a series first, we don't play as our favorite silent, stone-faced protagonist Artyom. Instead, we play as my personal favorite Metro character, the strange, yet incredibly helpful Metro mystic, none other than our guy Khan.
My name is Khan.
The ghost-seeing, pipe-whispering, soul-tracing, magical teleporting Metro Riverman, whose help and spiritual knowledge saved Artyom's skin more than a couple times, and Artyom himself would be nowhere without this magic man's help. But the Khan we know him as in 2033 is yet to awaken, you see. And for now, we only know him as a man named Serdar, a humble Metro doctor and a very different man from the Khan we know and love. In fact, he's so grounded and logically minded, his buddy Max jokingly calls him Mr. Rational, and he scoffs at the idea of ghosts, ghasts, geists, ghouls, poltergeists, and other such revenants even existing. And as a VR game, the name of the game here is to strike that careful balance between realism through your repeated manual actions and ease of use video game mechanics. You want your VR game to be immersive, yet not tedious. And if you have to perform the same repetitive manual actions over and over and over again, the players get fed up pretty quickly, and the game starts becoming more of a chore and an annoyance than anything. And Metro Awakening, for the most part, is pretty intuitive with its interactions and mechanics, and I think it strikes a great balance between immersive realism and simplification through the gameplay. Serdar has 2 floating hands, and it feels very similar to Half-Life Alyx, especially with his left watch hand. It reminds me a lot of the health hand in Alyx. Serdar ends up with 5 weapons throughout the game: the pistol, Kalashnikov, Helsing crossbow, Shambler shotgun, and a bone-covered cultist blowgun that's way stronger than you think it would be. 2 modest blow dart attacks to the stomach can obliterate even the chunkiest Nasalas. And the AK and pistol are pretty basic for VR guns. Reload by inserting a fresh magazine into the gun and pulling the slide to chamber it, and ha-ta-ta, you're golden. The Helsing and Shambler are much more interesting to reload and use, however, as the Helsing uses a rotating chamber that you have to pop out, insert your bolts into, and use a little side wrist flick to load it back into place, and then pull back on the lever like you're trying to shred a cartoonishly long piece of paper. And it was always a satisfying feeling to retrieve an arrow out of a corpse or a wall, and then slide those arrows back into place. And the chamber itself is weighted, so inserting an arrow will cause it to spin down towards the ground. And it's a small little detail overall, but it's really awesome for immersion. And the Shambler is probably my favorite shotgun in any VR game I've played, and this thing was my stick of choice in the game once I got it. Being able to barrel stuff into Solace who got too freaky on my railcar was an amazing feeling. And the Shambler itself has a rotating chamber, like a shotgun revolver if you will, and you have to insert the shells in a radial manner, and then give the chamber a nice crank to load it up. And the blowgun is the simplest of them all. Just load a dart, hold the pipe up to your face like a real blow darter would, and then pull the trigger to let her rip. And all the guns work and shoot great, and those classic glowing Metro sights letting you know exactly where to aim. Although, disappointingly, besides being able to equip a silenced pistol, there are no attachments available for any of the guns, which is a shame, because even a scope or maybe a laser would go a long way in making your guns feel more effective and unique, especially since attachments for weapons were a pretty big feature of the gunplay of previous games, and were integral to making your guns stronger and more useful. But you're condemned to the iron sights dimension for this journey, unfortunately. And to whip out your pieces, you need to either grab at your right waist for your pistol, or grab over your right shoulder to pull out your non-pistol guns. And to put the items away, just let go. And your currently held item will vanish like that rare Battlefield magic trick reload animation. So there's no need to worry about trying to holster your weapon in an intense firefight, only for you to completely whiff the holster hitbox and drop your weapon to the ground like a moron, and make the fight even more of a complete clusterfuck. But it's a bit weird how the weapon choosing system is integrated, and the game doesn't explain it all too well. To change your long weapon, you have to grab over your right shoulder with your left hand only. Doing this will summon your gun sack, where you can then pick the weapon you want, which will then be equipped to your right shoulder. And you can't use your right hand for this process, as that's your gun summoning hand. It's a bit confusing to start, but it works just fine once you know what to do. But ideally, it would just be best to put the guns on the back of your inventory backpack, so everything is in one convenient spot. Also, you can come across cleaner / different looking versions of the weapons you currently have. And if you want to ditch your current rusty pistol for a nice silvery one that's got some sick engravings, you have to pull out your equipped pistol, grab the gun you actually want, then put it in the right side holster, and then you can drop your old pistol. And don't forget to take the ammo out when you go. And this took me way too long to figure out. It's not exactly the most intuitive thing in the world.
Baby. Anyway, what about the meds?
I want the engraved one.
Nothing. No haloperidol or anything else for that matter.
Shit.
Also, just like in the original games, you can scavenge ammo out of enemy guns, but the VR layer of interaction makes these simple Metro tasks so much more interesting and fun. After killing an enemy, you can just force pull his weapon to you, take out the clip, feed it to your stomach, and then clear the chamber for fun. And then maybe keep the weapon if you like how it looks. And I've never felt more like a sewer scavenger until now. and cycling out shells of an enemy shambler, and then taking the shells for yourself is so damn cool to do. And being able to now manually do all the actions Artyom did at a button's press was one of my favorite parts of the entire game as a Metro appreciator. Physically cranking the hand generator to activate switch boxes in your flashlight had me soy facing a little bit. Same with manually putting on a gas mask and manually inserting the filters. And having your watch always at a physical glance on your left hand was very helpful. Also, these radiation burn effects are pretty sweet and scary when you're in an irradiated area. Serdar's eyes start getting burned out by the radiation. And the game uses the big glowing fart gas mushrooms to visually communicate when you'll be needing your mask, along with a Geiger counter that assaults your eardrums in case you miss the shrooms. Although I found the gas mask sections were far shorter than I expected, and I never really had to worry about running out of filters, as I'd move in and out of hot zones pretty fast, and I always had a decent stock of filters in my inventory pack. Also, I was beaming with joy when I saw my gas mask was starting to fog up, and I instinctually tried to wipe it just like Artyom does, and it worked perfectly. And I thought that was a great little moment for me. You can also flick your head-mounted flashlight on and off by holding your hand up to your face and hitting the trigger, which took me a little while to figure out just the right spot to flick it, as I thought you had to put your hand near your forehead or above your headset to be able to flick your headlamp. But it seems you need to click about right where your headset is located, which led to me slapping myself on the headset a few times. The flashlight also needs to be re-cranked to keep its light strong, and I was pulling that sucker out often to make sure my flashlight was topped off with some beam shots, because this game is dark. And not that video game darkness where it's just dim, or it looks like it has a filter on it. No, this is ink black pitch darkness, the type of darkness that stares back into you, and you can't see shit without a light, which I'll talk more about later. But this game's darkness level was giving me some serious heebie-jeebies, so I made sure I was as bright as possible at all times. But besides that, the inventory system has been transformed into Khan's inventory backpack, which you grab by grabbing over your left shoulder. This pack holds everything you need that isn't a lead spitter: your filters, grenades, gas mask, how much ammo of each type you have, and of course, the classic bullet lighter, which is so sweet to grab a hold of and then burn webs in VR with. But if Khan has the exact same lighter that Artyom has, it makes Artyom's feel a little less unique. It's a bit of a double-edged sword with this one. And finally, when you need to heal, just grab with your left hand and you'll summon this injector gun doohickey that takes vials of a mysterious medicine you have to load and then inject into your hand or body. And it seems that Khan doesn't fuck with those Soviet needles in a stylish plastic case medkits, which I think would have been a cool VR item. Like, you flick open the container, grab one of the needles, and then jab yourself quickly to heal. But the medicine gun works just fine too. And all of these interactions, outside of the strange way that you swap weapons, all feels very intuitive, and once you're comfortable with the controls, you'll be real efficient in no time. And the heat of the moment actions like grabbing a new magazine are just done by grabbing at your stomachular region, and you'll summon a new mag to your hand right away. Just be sure that you're in the chest region, too close to your left side, and you'll summon the medicine gun. And it's not breaking any new ground in VR interactions and mechanics, but I still found it to be well implemented with only a few stumbles, and doing all the classic Metro actions was a big part of the game's enjoyment for me. And on top of that, shooting mutants and humans is just a pretty fun time overall. But now, let's talk about the story. Metro 4, Serdar's Conquest. We start in the year 2018, where we take control of Serdar, a Metro doctor and extremely talented musician. Well... We wake up in our apartment, and we follow our station guard friend Evgeny here, trying and failing to give him the middle finger. Metro Awakening doesn't support Valve Index Flip the Bird technology. Literally unplayable garbage. But from Evgeny, we learn that recent mutant attacks have the whole station on edge, and we sit down to discuss these threats while sharing some drinks around the fire with our other chum Sergey.
Yes.
Yes!
Listen to me, huh? You're not a bad guy, but you keep to your smokes. Even talking to me to get me a drink and stuff. Tighten up a bit, man.
But while we chat, those previously mentioned mutants start attacking the station, and we have to man this mounted machine gun and shoot off a familiar gang squad of attacking Nosalis. And then we have to run through the station, grab an explosive, and then plant it at the entrance to stop the bleed of mutants from entering the station. But it's not enough, and we have to flee as the station is overrun with the damn things, and we seal the door on our doomed station, leaving Evgeny and Sergey to their fates. And we then cut to 10 years later, and hear Khan monologuing while in a tunnel full of sacrificial murders. Unlike Artyom, Khan is not a silent protagonist, and we speak from his point of view throughout the entire game.
We avoid the darkness because it hides things that may be too horrible for us even to imagine. It's the unspeakable that scares us.
And Khan is voiced by actor Graham McTavish, who is here reprising his role, who, fun fact, was also in House of the Dragon, and he was kind of just there to stand around and look cool. And he gives another great performance as Serdar, and the dialogue in this game is surprisingly solid, especially with Khan and Max's lines, and Max quickly became one of my favorite new Metro characters. His stressed out demeanor and exasperation at Serdar and his wife's nonsense was always so funny, which is helped by a pretty animated performance and his funny little gestures.
Yana, has something happened?
Has something happened? He asks. If by something, do you mean did your wife destroy our mushroom farm because she heard the voice of her dead son again? Because if so, then yes, something happened.
Is she alright?
She's a lot better than her mushroom farm.
Khan then gets devoured by a massive ghostly mass that comes barreling down the metro tunnel, but we then wake up in our rail car and go through a credit scene on our way back to our new home station. And when we get back, we learn that Max, our friend and the station's chief, is furious with us. So we go through the station, and it's so awesome to be this up close to a metro station and exploring it in VR. And we soon run into Max, who is at his wit's end with us, because Serdar's wife Yana smashed up the station's mushroom farm in a frenzy, after claiming to have heard the voice of her dead son Petya calling out to her from the beyond. And everyone, including Serdar, believes she's just got some strong-ass schizophrenia, and maybe some PTSD. So we close up some steam valves, and we find Yana, who tells us that she stopped taking her antipsychotic medication, and she claims that she could even speak to Petya now. But there's one problem. Petya has been dead for 15 years, so she's either hallucinating or has run into an honest-to-God ghost, and Serdar don't believe in no ghosts. So this causes significant strain on his relationship with Yana, who wants nothing more than to see her son again. So we close the valves and return to our boyfriend Max in his office, and we tell Max about how Yana ran out of meds and is now seeing spirits of her dead son. And Max tells us that a stalker he knows, Nata, trades with the medicine, but she's a week late on her shipment, and Serdar, worried about his wife's condition, offers to go find the meds and Nata's caravan, despite the dangers that may be lurking. So Max gives us a radio, a pistol for protection, and we head on out. And we arrive at our spooky destination and get an overview of classic interactions and mechanics. You can scour the area for loose rounds of ammo and other gear, but Serdar can't do a cool wrist flick to grab items from a distance like Alex can. Instead, he has a standard VR force pull to grab small items at a distance that you feed to your sternum to put away in your inventory pack. And we also run into our first enemy, the Lurker Ratboy mutants. And these mutants, although being fairly weak, are a pretty damn tough first enemy for a VR game. They're small, making them not the easiest things to land a shot on, and they're also incredibly fast, and their attacks revolve around quickly skittering around and then quickly jumping at the player, before quickly skittering away under furniture and through small holes to escape and reposition. And you have to listen for their movements, turn quickly, and then plant a bullet in the squeaker's face before he pounces on you, and then you shoot him down from there. And it's a solid wake-up call to lock in and get your aim right, because these guys are no slouches. And hitting them while they're skittering around and flinging themselves through the air at you ain't easy. But when you manage to land a shot and blast one out of the air, it just feels so good. But once past these rats, we enter a broken building on the surface and get a gas mask tutorial. We also have a chat with Max about Serdar and Yana's past, and we learn that when they started dating in college, Yana became convinced that Serdar was the reincarnation of Genghis Khan for some reason. And she even convinced him to do regression therapy to tap into his past life as the greatest conqueror in the history of the world. Yeah, this and the whole chasing after her dead son. Yana's a bit of an interesting critter. We also spot a Nasalis strung up in a pretty intricate way, and he has a snake-like symbol drawn on his chest. And once we get under the Nasalis, the ground collapses, and we see an out-of-body vision of Yana praying at a large and sweet-looking altar, trying to call out to her dead son, who we actually hear speak, and Yana responds to him, saying that she will find him, and Serdar then wakes up after casually getting his skull crushed by falling debris and rebar, and we continue looking for the Stalker caravan and the medicine. And we even find a Kalashnikov stuck in a lever, and picking up a rifle in a VR game is always a sick moment. But for VR, I always prefer just using a pistol over a rifle, as using a rifle in VR requires you to hold a sort of invisible stick with two hands that can be awkward to aim at times, compared to the simple elegance of sticking out your one hand, closing one eye, and letting it rip with the pistol. But luckily, Serdar has titanium wrists, and he can shoot rifles and shotguns with one hand for accurate shots. Just don't try spraying with one hand unless you're trying to take shots at the moon. And also, side note, you have a limit to how much ammo you carry, and if you run out of space, Serdar will let you know.
I can't carry any more clips.
That's a magazine? And once past another rat attack, we find the caravan, but they're not looking too good. The stalkers had all been brutally murdered, tied up, and have had metal bars driven through their bodies, and odd snake-like symbols are painted all over the walls and bodies. And the whole gruesome scene looks awesome cast in the red glow of the flares in here. The Unreal Engine lighting effects look really great in this game, and they really help to mask the game's visual shortcomings, as I ran into a good amount of model and texture pop-in, jagged polygonal objects, and some absolutely fried textures, like Skyrim on low tier textures. But I'll give most of the graphics issues a pass, as this is a VR game we're talking about, and we want it to run smoothly over looking pretty. And the deep darkness of the game, contrasted by its epic lighting effects, really mask most of these issues, and sometimes it even creates some really awesome looking set pieces, like this altar, or some spots in the dark metro tunnels. We soon find Nata, and relay to Max that we found her dead from a gunshot wound to the head, and her caravan totally ransacked, with no medicine to be found. And we hear Yana on the other end, mad that Serdar had run off without telling her, so we decide to head right back to the station, our quest coming up with a big fat L. But on the way out, some armed scavs wander in, and we have to either shoot past or sneak past these guys. The classic Metro choice. Engaging humans in combat is pretty fun, being a very solid VR shooting gallery where enemies will take cover, try to flank you, and will constantly talk trash and make callouts for their enemies. And they can take a few shots to the body, so always try to aim for the dome, and being able to pull off that slick headshot was always a fantastic feeling to do. Especially if you land a headshot on an armored enemy, as you can get a quick kill on them if you manage to land a shot through the visor of their helmets, which felt even more bonerific to hit. And these gunfights were some really enjoyable segments for me. Being in VR gives these Metro shootouts a whole new layer of intensity and excitement, and I felt pretty huge after dispatching my ops by pretend shooting them. However, like the past games, peace is always an option, and you can simply choose to sneak past most any potential gunfights by staying low, crouching with the right joystick on the index, and turning off your headlamp, as enemies can easily spot that light in this oppressive darkness. And you can silently knock out enemies by sneaking up right behind them, and then clocking them on the back of the head with a punch to knock them out cold, as if you're doing a silent takedown. But it's less brutally choking out a dude until he passes out, and more of a Tom and Jerry clonk on the head. But it's so much fun to do, and the innate goofiness of it just makes it so much better for me. As for ranged stealth options, the crossbow, blowgun, and later a silenced pistol will give you some stealth range options. And being a silent assassin always feels great when you quietly drop an enemy from a distance and land that headshot, the last thing they'd never heard. Although I usually missed more than I hit. And you can also find and throw loose cans and bottles to distract and draw away enemies, which is a pretty ingenious stealth mechanic that lends itself to VR perfectly. And the idea here is still the same. Stick to the darkness to stay unseen, and your blue light watch will let you know if you're visible or not. I, however, ran into a bit of a conundrum with stealth. With how dark my game's settings were, in some of these stealth sections, I could barely see anything at all within the darkness, which forced me to turn on my headlamp just to see, which usually got me easily spotted by the armed goons, forcing me to crack a couple eggs. And if you want to do a stealth-focused playthrough, I'd recommend jacking up the brightness a little bit, as it's hard to quietly shoot enemies when you can't even make out the basic shape of their body. But I didn't exactly want to change the darkness level of my playthrough, and I enjoyed it quite a bit, as it always kept me unsettled and on edge with how little I could see, and it forced me to play more cautiously, immersing me even deeper into the game's world. And I feel that immersion would be a bit ruined for me if I could see everything without the need for a flashlight. Also, it's really no big deal to fuck up a stealth section and have to go loud, as you won't need to worry about them moral points, as it seems the system has been completely removed from this game, and the devs didn't even bother to implement it. So kill if you feel like it, and the game won't punish you with a bad ending for it. Sweet. But once these goons are dispatched, we power up our trusty railcar and head home, and I ran into this crusty ass spot where I kept getting killed from behind while standing on the railcar, as if you missed just one enemy with the mounted machine gun, which is very easy to do, I'll add. He'll just shoot you as you drive away, killing you. But luckily, the game bailed me out here, as I missed an enemy and he shot me in the back and killed me, but it loaded me at the end of the railcar ride anyway, loading me forward ahead in time. Maybe it was the ghost or something. But anyway, back at the station, we catch back up with Max, but Yana is gone, and she had escaped through a barrier in the station heading towards the station where Petya died, and now is currently alone in a dark and dangerous metro tunnel infested with mutants and other various thugs and smugglers. And we tell Max that we're going after her right away, and Max gives us Yana's bandana after some complaining, and we head after our schizo wife right away. So we proceed through the decrepit tunnels and train cars, bombing rats from the sky with a fun grenade tutorial. But a lot like the non-VR Metro games, I barely use the grenades, and usually just stuck to my guns in any given fight. We then come across a large hatch door with strange markings all over it, and Max tells us that the door's name is Eugenia, and it leads to a nearby access substation, and we do a quick little switch puzzle to get her open, and we sneak past and then kill some human enemies in this train car area, and then we kill some more humans in a dark service room, and then we proceed on to find Eugenia again. The fuck? Did we go in a loop? Who knows? I've got no idea. I mean, I'm completely lost myself. I'm not from Moscow. So we disregard this apparent space-time anomaly and open her back up with some lever Riz, and we proceed on again, traveling through a destroyed station, and eventually coming across the altar we saw in the vision. And when we step up to investigate the altar, we get knocked out from behind, taken captive by some sewer slavers who are using this altar as a trap to capture people who come here to pray. And we then see a spooky-ass vision of a man kneeling before a red-lit altar with assumedly Yana on it, with a man saying a deranged prayer about killing her to summon the spirits of past warriors to bring about eternal peace to the world, or something. And he calls out to the mighty Khan as he stabs the woman, and the vision ends. And we then wake up in a cell, and Yana is in the cell next to us, and there's also this insane, gremlin-esque man locked up here too, speaking to himself about some random nonsense. Yana refuses to return with us, and it seems she's convinced that Petya is real and is indeed out there, which pisses Serdar off, and he sternly tells Yana that Petya is dead.
None of this would have happened. Fuck! None of this is real!
I don't know about the other kids, but your son is dead. He is dead!
Yes! The kids have gone to see the worm!
All the while, the crazy dude is hollering that the kids have gone to see the worm. But then the slavers show up and escort Yana and Slavic Smeagol away. So we rattle the door and break the flimsy lock and escape. And we gotta sneak to a control room to get our pack and gear back. And we pick up our radio and try to get in contact with Max. But we don't reach Max. And instead, we hear a woman's voice. And she introduces herself as Oksana, who tells us that she's here in the slaver station, but she's been separated from her husband, Alex. And she gives us some pretty great help with directions. And she tells us the movements of the slavers, as if she's spying on them.
Yes, where's Max?
I don't know, Max. My name's Oksana, but I think my husband Alex and I may have been attacked by the same people near the memorial.
And we soon escape the camp, and on the way out, we try to ask Oksana where she is, as it seems that she should still be in the station. But when asked, Oksana seems to get confused, not really knowing where she seems to be, and she brushes it off and tells us to go find Alex and Yana instead of her. Well, okay, lady, your choice. So we kill some more slavers, then we run into Russian Golem from the cells behind a destroyed doorway, who can't stop repeating, the worm. And he mentions a place called Hell's Mouth, where the worm seems to reside. And Serdar is getting real tired of all the superstition, ghosts, weird shit, and magical worms. And we then catch up to the slavers' transport train, but the slaves aren't very happy to see me. But once we make our way around the slave train to free them, we find that the slaves are completely missing, and the cages are empty. What the hell? But no time to wonder where they went, so we continue on, and find bodies all over, seemingly having been killed by these strange blow darts lodged in their bodies, that we can pick up for later. And we also find a large painting of the snake symbol, which Serdar deduces is actually a worm, so this must be our great worm in question. We then soon get attacked by what appears to be a crazed tribal with a blowgun. Whoa! No, I'm gonna get fucking poisoned. Who hits us with a dart before disappearing into the darkness. Oh man, I hope that dart ain't poison. Just look at all these other bodies. But luckily, Serdar just shrugs off this scary ass ambush. And this tribal must belong to the group responsible for painting all these weird worm pictures everywhere. And they must have been the same people who brutally murdered Nada's caravan. We chat with Oksana, and she says that she heard tales of dead corpses attacking people with poison darts. But Serdar just groans at the idea, and assumes our attacker was just some insane Metro jabroni. But Oksana then oddly calls him Mr. Rational, the exact same thing Max calls him. Weird. What does she know?
Oh, God almighty, how tired I am of this bullshit. Why would the dead use the blowpipes? And how? The dead can't breathe, can they?
They might think they do.
They can't think either.
All right, Mr. Rational.
What? Why would you call me that? My friend Max calls me that.
Because you are too rational, that's why.
We then come across a crashed metro train, and we hear voices coming from inside the train, and it seems that people are trapped inside and are calling out to us, asking Serdar to free them, seeming so happy that we arrived when we did. So we oblige, get the power back on, and access the train full of trapped people, only to find that the train is full of long rotted corpses and skeletons, and these people have probably been dead for at least a decade. So unless we're currently in the throes of a schizophrenic meltdown, we're definitely seeing and hearing some ghosts. And this part reminds me a lot of Artyom and Pavel's Ghost Plane Crash Geek session. Oh man, we got the same schizophrenia as Yana. We might be cooked. Serdar himself is now just completely baffled at what he's experiencing, but we still have to press on. The wife is still missing.
You're not saying I was hallucinating, are you?
Did you have any of those pills to ease your wife's condition? Because you might use a couple.
Oh, fuck off!
And Oksana then tells us that the slavers are gathering reinforcements, so they may still have Yana close by. And we reach their depot, and we have to move a large suspended bridge, which sets off a loud-ass alarm and kicks off a huge firefight with the slavers. And this fight was tough, but a lot of fun. There are enemies above and below you, giving the fight layers of verticality to it. And enemies will try to push up and flank you from the side to keep the pressure constantly up. And there are a damn lot of these bastards. I killed like 2 waves of them, and I'm pretty sure I saw them spawning into existence near the stairs. And I killed damn near a platoon of these guys before I just cut and ran, which I probably should have done earlier to save the ammo. But I just love murder. I couldn't resist. But once past this depot, we find Yana again, caged up, who is the opposite of happy to see me, even though I've been busting my ass just to get to her. And she wants us to leave, cause she sure as shit isn't. And she's determined to travel to the Hell's Mouth and to find her son, even if that means she'll be brutally murdered via a knife through the heart in a sacrificial ritual. And she even pushes us off the train to get us to stop following her. But a shove off a moving train won't stop a wife guy, and we're set into another sacrificial vision. But before the Skella priest stabs Yana, a man dressed as Genghis Khan appears and takes a knife from the priest and stabs her herself, as voices call out for Khan to help them. And we wake up in a tunnel, and Khan tells Oksana that he's freaking out, and that his Genghis Khan visions and all the crazy shit that's happening to him are shaking his beliefs to the very core, and he's desperately trying to rationalize it all. But no matter, we must continue. We must help wife.
Oksana, I fear something is very wrong with me. I'm seeing things, hearing things.
We then soon run into some Nosalis, the second mutant type in this game, and in previous games, the Nosalis were less scary mutant and more like vermin to me, and these roided up naked mole rats could be effective only in gang squads, and you could gun enough down throughout the original games to have Artyom feed off nothing but Nosalis flank for a decade. But now, I have to apologize to these freaks, as I wasn't familiar with their aura in game. This is a whole new world in VR, and those pesky haymaker throwing pink mutants are now imposing, human-sized mole rats that look like they could crush you with just one arm swing, and they're now properly intimidating, and are resistant everywhere but their soft pink underbelly, which will force you to wait for them to expose that tummy before you take the shot, and it's hard to stay completely calm when this fucking thing is squaring up to you. And I think it's great, and I thought it was super fun and satisfying to blast these guys to pieces. The massive size of these damn mutants really lets you unload into them. Next, we then gotta get on our rail car to do a little something I like to call Nosalis cart, where we have to mount the turret and shoot down the pursuing tunnel Nosalises, who strike a pretty scary figure, as you can only see their orange glowing eyes in the darkness of the tunnel rushing after you, and you can only see them once they're real close. And if they get too close, they'll hop on the cart and start swinging at you, and these guys get uncomfortably close to you. Please die. And it's a pretty sweet segment. The action is extremely tense because you don't want these moles anywhere near you, and it feels almost like some kind of amusement park ride. It's pretty sweet. And we hop off and chat with Oksana, who's been acting extra weird, because when we asked her to give us a tarot reading, as she's something of a psychic, you see, she suddenly became distressed and says that she couldn't find the cards, or anything, and that she's feeling trapped.
My tarot cards. How come? I cannot touch them. They are... Where are they?
You can't touch them?
No! I can't find anything, Cedar. I feel like I'm not going to ever find anything. I feel trapped.
She also tells Serdar a story about how she got lost on the way to Exhibition Station, but woke up safe near another station, where she then met a man who said that voices in the Metro's pipes had led her there safely, which just makes Serdar groan again, as we're still resisting the crazy phenomena that's occurring, as Serdar gets more and more desperate trying to explain what he's experiencing. But we then get past another squad of slaver thugs, and we hop on a rail car for another Nosalis cart section, which is the same as before, but this time a Nosalis almost gets our goat, but the rail car crashes, and when we come to, the Nosalis who was all up in our grill fell on a metal spike and died. Sweet. And we then gotta make our way through a spider-infested maintenance hall, and the Spiders of Awakening are the third and final mutant, and the most different from their earlier game counterparts. They're no longer armored and are much smaller, and light doesn't do much to them. And I thought I could fend off these spiders by constantly cranking my portable generator like I'm cranking my hog, while staring at the spiders to give them beam shots to ward them off. But no dice. You have to shoot them dead to proceed. Now, when the game started, the only content warning given was for arachnophobia, which seemed odd to me, as the Metro spiders are certainly freaky, but nothing worth a content warning. That was, until I actually encountered them. And then I understood. These devs get downright diabolical with these spiders. When you're in a spider-infested area, when you go to grab your pack or weapons, you may just come back with a small mutant spider on your hand that you have to smash off. And when the bigger spiders attack, they lunge right at your face and actually attach and crawl around your head and face, attacking you right in the mug and turning off your flashlight. And you have to grab and physically rip the spider off your head and then blast it with a gun. And now, I don't fear spiders, but if you do, these parts may be literally unplayable for you, and I love it. But these guys are so easy to miss, it could be a tad frustrating when you whiff a shot on them. We then stumble into this room that looks so cozy, it almost seems completely out of place. We then proceed into the hallways beyond, only to soon end right back up in the cozy room. The fuck? Try again, end up back in the room. What in the Alan Wake bullshit? This is the Labyrinth, and as the name suggests, it's a total maze, looping back to the start if you get lost. To proceed, we have to listen to the pipes, and follow the pipes giving off ghostly sounds, and taking down any spiders that we come across. And as we follow the pipe voices, we start hearing distant screams of anguish and loud mutant noises, and our flashlight starts flickering and barely giving off enough light as we go deeper. And me realizing that the flashlight couldn't be powered back up had me looking like this under that damn Valve Index while traversing this all-surrounding darkness. And I was cursing the devs in this moment, as I was only hearing horrific screams and Serdar's panicked breathing, while being barely able to see anything at all, even running into those shadowy ghosts from the tunnels in 2033. And my ass is clenched with the force of an alligator bite. Goddamn.
Ah, ghosts! Ghosts! Ah! There's ghosts, it's scary.
Focus on your...
But we have no choice but to proceed on and to brave the darkness, and to continue following the pipes, hoping a ghost doesn't drag me into the shadow hell limb dimension from Last Light. But if we keep following the pipes, and we stay brave, we eventually exit into a metro tunnel, finally free from the ghost maze. And I really like this part of the game. The mind-bending loops of the maze really disorient you, and the oppressive darkness and ghostly wails have me pretty freaked out. And those bastard devs crippling your flashlight's power just made it even more freakier and more intense. And the need to follow the ghostly voice of the pipes to find our way out is a pretty cool idea, and it naturally shows us how Khan got his ability to listen and guide himself with the pipes, that he then shows Artyom in 2033. And it also mirrors Serdar coming around on the idea of accepting the Metro ghosts as being real, in his awakening, if you will, on how to commune with, help, and in turn, be helped by the Metro spirits. And we then continue on and run into Sergei and Evgeny, the two guys we were chopping it up with in our old station before it was overrun by Nosalis 10 years ago. I'm pretty sure these guys should be dead, murdered by Nosalis gang squad and all. But nope, here they are, alive and well, and acting pretty nonchalant about running into Serdar after 10 years of no show. And these guys seem to be some sort of ghostly manifestation. They wear the same clothes that they did on the day of the attack, and they seem to not care about anything around them, just casually bantering about philosophy, and Sergei even says that, quote, life is overrated. But we help these guys make a delicious pot of fart shroom stew, and Serdar rants to his potentially dead friends that he's losing his damn mind, and that nothing makes sense anymore, and we're seeing and speaking to ghosts, and Serdar keeps teleporting all around the metro with no explanation.
I've experienced things. The only explanation that doesn't sound completely irrational is that I've gone literally insane.
But then we hear loud Nosalis noises nearby, and the fellows ask Serdar to go kill them for him. And they say that the Nosalis weren't fully destroyed when we blew up and sealed the station. So we head out and get our hands on a Shambler, my favorite weapon in the game, and we reopen the door to the doomed station that we sealed up at the beginning of the game. But something's off. The station isn't as collapsed as it should be, and we gotta scrap with a gang squad of Nasalis, who don't feel as scary anymore with the Shambler in hand. We then see the ghosts of fallen station defenders appear, and the whole screen turns gray and shakes with ghostly screams, wails, and bangs before calming down. And after it stops, we're then met by a ghost.
Come on, man. Let's go.
Hold on, let me see if I can find any more loot. Ah, perfect.
Haven't you made me wait long enough already?
And we then find a book for the ghost who appears before us, the book holding a special meaning for the ghost, as his father was the one who wrote it, and the ghost must have died without the book in his possession. And the ghost, happy at his afterlife reading material being returned to him, seems to be finally put to rest, and he vanishes. And then Sergei appears from behind a door, and Serdar reveals to him that he's had a sort of premonition of the station being destroyed by mutants, only 3 days before the attack happened. But he didn't believe in it, and he didn't warn anyone, as he was worried that they would think he's an insane person, which wasn't helped by the Metro residents teasing him for his past life as Genghis Khan. So this whole station we're in may be a sort of manifestation of Serdar's guilt, and not trusting his instinct and warning of the mutant attack that ultimately doomed the station. So we talk again to Evgeny, where we tell him about our disturbing visions of Genghis Khan sacrificing a woman, and Sergei quotes a passage claiming that Genghis Khan was shaped most by the abduction of his wife, as the Khan had won his first of many battles getting his wife Borda back, heavily mirroring Serdar's current wife quest. So the two guys decide maybe Serdar should do another round of Genghis Khan hypnosis to see if it can reveal anything, and they pass him a cup of mystery liquid. And hell, why not? We're casually talking with some ghosts and the physical manifestation of our past guilt, so let's see if we can learn anything new. Gorka. After drinking the mystery liquid, we enter a floating orb, and we wake up in a strange, warped dream tunnel that's full of floating furniture and Jesus teddy bears. We then enter a door which loads us into what appears to be the yurt of Genghis Khan, which is full of bones and bodies, and a disembodied voice tells us that our wife is doomed to die, and she will be sacrificed so that old warriors may return, somehow. And we see Petya's ghost fleeing the yurt, and we follow Yana's disembodied voice, and it seems we can finally meet and speak to our lost dead son like Yana could. And we follow him through this spooky ass station into the ritual room, where that damn bone priest shows up again and taunts us, and then Yana walks up and we see her ghost form, and then that huge mass of spirits flies into us again, ending the vision. But we now know where to find Yana, by finding Petya's ghost, who can lead us to her, using his ghost soul tracing or something. I assume it's the same ability Khan used to pinpoint and save RTO from the staring contest Sasquatches back in the library. And when we wake up, we're in a completely different location, and we reestablish contact with Oksana, and Serdar now knows what's happening. He reveals that he knows that Oksana and Alex have been dead this whole time, Oksana remaining a ghost, looking for Alex, and she has been following Serdar from the shadows this whole time, and that's why she couldn't tell us where she was when we asked her, despite the fact that she should be very close by, as she relayed to us what the slavers were doing and saying not too far away from us. But Serdar, now finally wisening up to the existence of the ghosts, and knowing better how to interact with them, is now more accepting of his radio-based, otherworldly, shadowy spirit friend Oksana.
Because you can't touch anything, right?
I'm real, Serdar. I still don't understand where I am. There's darkness, and it's my talking mind. And there's you.
You're trapped. And if this is what it's like for him, I must find Petya.
We then come up on a station and see scattered dead worm cultists, and have to dodge that massive ghostly mass that comes barreling down the tunnel. And we then gotta dodge ghosts and get through this damn station. Also, don't look at or touch the ghosts like in previous games. They'll send you screaming to hell with their soul aura or something. We then make it to a tunnel and see a ghost of Max yelling out at and fighting invisible enemies. Bro, no, not Max! And this one hurts, man. It seems our station got attacked by those crazed worm cultists while we were gone, and Max himself got devoured by the ghostly mass. This spirit mass seemingly being the worm itself, and if it gets you, it'll devour and destroy your soul, and not even your ghost will remain. When we speak again to Oksana, and she reveals that she can't hear the other spirits, but Serdar seemingly can hear all the ghosts of the Metro, and he has the unique ability to help them pass on. Like when we freed the people on the train, or when we gave that ghost his book back. Serdar has pretty much wholly awakened his Metro mystic ghost powers, and now that we understand these ghosts more, both Serdar and the player no longer fear them as much. But those ghostly sections where your flashlight nearly cuts out still got my booty clutched in a death grip. The sound design is still insanely unsettling, but luckily, the booty clenching has been reduced by a few pounds of force, as we now know that these ghosts aren't malevolent, but more sorrowful and lost, rather than anything nefarious. And you and Serdar both begin to really feel bad for these ghosts, more than anything else. But cue another Nasalis cart ride, the Shambler being a huge help in getting these jumping Nasalis to fuck off. Eat this, buddy. We then gotta dodge more spooky ghosts, and I play a piano song to try and soothe them, but I don't think it worked. And we then make it back to the shrine area, and we find Alex's spirit, and Oksana's ghost and his finally reunite, as we led her back to him, and they embrace. And Oksana says that a train is coming for them. The great metro in the sky awaits, and they need to catch their eternal ride, finally being able to pass on from this world. And it's a very sweet and genuinely heartwarming moment, and it shows us how to best deal with these ghosts of the metro, by helping them settle their business, and letting them pass on peacefully into that eternal metro ride, which Serdar is now uniquely empowered to do.
What now?
Our train is coming.
A train?
The train that takes us further.
A train? How is it possible? A train to where?
And we then end up in the labyrinth again, and we again follow the ghostly pipes to find Petya, and after another scary vision, we find Petya's shade, holding Yana's bandana that he swiped from us, and we introduce ourselves. Despite being Serdar's wife's child, Serdar never actually knew Petya, as Yana and him got separated when the war broke out, and only reunited many years later, long after Petya had died. And Petya tells us that he went looking for his mother after they had gotten separated, but was attacked by what he calls dogs, which were actually Nasalis lying in wait to ambush him, and that's how he ended up in his shadow form here, still looking for his mother. So we follow Petya and bond with the boy by talking with him, and we then have to lead him through the Nasalis-infested halls, lighting torches for him so he can see and follow us, and I avenged Petya by making Swiss cheese out of these Nasalis thugs. That's for my spooky ghost son, bitch. Cue yet another round of Nasalis cart. The Des must be really proud of their Nasalis jump attack animations or something. This is like the 4th railcar fight so far, and it's the same as the ones before. Getting a little rote here, guys. But once that's done, we dismount and do some sneaking through this pitch black corridor and kill some straggler humans, and we lead Petya through corpse and spider infested hallways, dodging more killer ghosts, and we have to kill about 25 lurkers in a room to proceed. We then continue on this slightly too dragged out area. This Petya escort section probably could have been trimmed a little bit, and Petya gets freaked out by the ghostly mass barreling down the tunnels, but Petya overcomes his fear of the mass and senses Yana nearby. So we head out together and do one last round in a Nasalis cart for shits and giggles, which is not as exciting on the 5th go around. And we finally arrive at this sweet looking ornate station, which is filled with snowdrift from the frozen hell surface. And we speak with Petya again, who still has Yana's bandana, which she used on Petya as a baby. And we learn that the bandana was a gift so Serdar could find Petya, as the bandana was what led Petya to reveal himself to us. And although Petya never met Serdar, he knew about him from his stories from Yana, but she never referred to him as Serdar, but referred to him as Genghis Khan. So Serdar goes along with the bit.
Are you going to stay with us?
I might. If you don't mind, of course.
I don't. It's kinda cool to live with Genghis Khan. So I will call you by your real name.
Okay, you won. Khan it is.
And lets Petya call him Khan, finally accepting his new name. And then Petya tells us that Yana is right behind this door. So we open it and take a Silent Hill-esque descent down a long and scary staircase, and we end up in the Worm Cultist Station, which is completely cast in a spooky red glow from all the flares, which again looks nice and hellish thanks to these lighting effects. And we get to take down those freak-ass cultists. Turning their blowguns against them is a great time. And once past all these freaks and geeks, we get clocked out from behind, and wake up in a cage where we see Yana about to get sacrificed by the Skull Priest we saw in all those visions. The priest reveals that the Great Worm had chosen Yana, but the real purpose of her sacrifice was to facilitate the return of Khan, Genghis Khan, and the priest guts Yana. But then, the room shakes with ghostly wails, which causes us to fall out of our cage.
I heard what you seek. And what great devil would that be?
And when we wake up, Yana is dead on the table, but all the cultists are gone, and the spirit worm seemingly devoured them all and freed Khan from his suspended cage. Perhaps the worm was all those masses of damned souls that go barreling down the tunnels, and they had influenced the cult? Or perhaps the cult had misinterpreted what the worm wanted, to steal away Yana and attack Khan's station, in order to awaken Serdar to his Metro medium powers, as he could then use his unique abilities to help put the lost souls of the Metro to rest, like with Oksana and Alex. But I'm not entirely sure, and this is just my personal theory. I mean, Priest Rattleshirt here and all his goons in the room completely vanished after the ghostly attack, so I think he got soul devoured by the worm, as their roles in this whole affair are now complete, now that Khan is woke like liberal. We then see Yana's ghost get off the table, and we tell her that we found Petya, and we have his ghost in tow, waiting in the station above, and we then have to escape this station by running like the wind. Well, as fast as we can go in VR, dodging the attacking cultists and following Yana's ghost. Although I died a few times because it was so dark, I couldn't see Yana's ghost or the clear path forward, and got blow darted to death. You also have no items in this segment, so all you can do is just run and trial and error it until you escape. The game also autosaved me at low health at the escape railcar, and this took me a few tries to gun down the attacking enemies and then shoot these explosive barrels that fall, which triggers an explosion so hard it triggers a loading screen. It's a little crusty. Actually, more than a little crusty. But I eventually do it, and Yana's ghost wakes me up, and we return to the station, where we see Yana and Petya's ghosts finally reunited in ghost form like Oksana and Alex, except they're now in color, and they give each other their apologies for up and dying on each other.
I'm here. Mama's finally here. If you want to get lost, just don't do it alone. I know.
And we hear the Metro train to the great beyond coming. Yana and Petya go to board this soul train, and Yana says that they'll wait for Khan, and that they'll be reunited after Khan's work is done, as he still has a pretty big role to play in the future of the Metro. He needs to help a guy with a psychic alien salamander problem in about 5 years, and then he needs to show him a magical river. It's all very important stuff, you gotta understand. And the train leaves, and we finally set our wife and estranged son's souls to rest, and I give him a wave goodbye, and we see Khan, all alone in the station, who then dons Yana's bandana around his head, finally becoming the Khan we know and love. His awakening complete, and he walks off to go prepare to pop out of a vent and rescue one Artyom Middlenamovich Chornage in his time of need, and chat with some pipes for a while, I'm sure. And with that, we completed Metro Awakening. And overall, this was a really enjoyable experience for me, and Awakening is more than a worthy addition to the Metro series. Metro's gameplay and mechanics all lend themselves really well to VR, and I got lots of enjoyment out of manually doing the things Artyom does the entire series. And the combat here is intense and fun to shoot or sneak through, although maybe turn the brightness up a tad on a stealth playthrough. It's a bit hard to navigate stealthily through pitch blackness, and the story here is pretty great too. I was always a fan of Khan's character, and learning about his past and how he obtained his odd Metro ghost powers was a really interesting experience, and helps make his later actions make a lot more sense, as you now know how the man himself does it. And it's helped by some great voice work and a surprisingly touching story about humanity, family, the nature of the human soul, and how love can still prevail even in such a shitty and brutal existence like this in the Metro. And that despite all the deep darkness, the light is still there, just hiding. It's all very sweet, despite the horrors we went through to get here, and it's definitely not a perfect experience throughout. Some fried textures and some late detail pop-ins can pull you out of the experience a bit, but the lighting effects really do a great job at keeping the overall game looking pretty good, all things considered. And some of the locations like the shrine and some destroyed Metro terminals really look great. And the game also does start to drag its feet towards the end, throwing you into extra human and mutant encounters, without introducing much in the way of new weapons or items to use and play around with. And you're constantly backtracking and going through the same areas you've been. And I think we could have done just fine without 5 rounds of Nasalis cart while barreling down the tracks to God knows where. And I gave up on trying to figure out exactly where I was in the Metro real quick. And that exciting segment loses its spectacle around the 3rd or 4th time around. But besides these pacing issues, and some bugs like my ass getting lit up by one enemy I missed with my turret, and having to get loaded in the future to escape, this was still a really great game, and it really recaptured the awesome experience I got when playing Half-Life Alyx. And this game not may reach the same heights as that game did, but I find it still comes pretty damn close, and it stands on its own 2 legs not only as a great VR game, but just as a great Metro game period. And it gives you plenty to see and do for a modest price of $40, minus the $1,000 overhead to get a VR headset. Well done, Vertigo Studios. 8 out of 10. After 2014, the Metro series more or less went dark after dropping its double 2033 Last Light Redux combo. And fast forward half a decade later, and the Metro series rose again like a junkie hit with Narcan. giving us the biblically titled Metro Exodus in 2019. And Metro Exodus was not just another Metro story, as the game set its sights far beyond the Moscow Metro system that we've explored through and got our butts eviscerated by Nossal's gang cords in for hours. Because as the name suggests, just as Moses led his people out of Egypt, Artyom and Miller led their ragtag band of dudes and women out of the Moscow Metro into the wider world of post-apocalyptic Russia. And in fact, only around 30% of this game actually takes place in a metro of some kind, which is a pretty bold move for the Metro series. I mean, it's literally in the name. Which up until this point, was mostly focused on exploring the amazingly detailed Metro and experiencing the thick and immersive atmosphere, meeting its wide array of factions, and experiencing the dark and violent, yet hopeful stories through the eyes of Artyom. But now we're going far away from the only blown-out Metro we've ever known and loved to the vast unknown. And that's a change I feel is so large, it's almost on par with setting a Fallout game in Canada or something. So it could be incredibly easy to mess this up. But did the 4A devs do it again? Let's take a look. Metro Exodus only takes place about a year after Last Light's story, and seeing that Artyom is currently not a charred skeleton, him getting saved by the Dark Ones in D6 and then proceeding to air fry the brains of the communist soldiers with their psychic Pokemon powers was the canon ending to Last Light. And we get a sweet new intro cutscene, where we get a classic Artyom narrated sequence from the inside perspective of a Metro car, and Artyom going over a brief overview of the world and story, where he doesn't reveal much new stuff, and surprisingly, doesn't really mention the plots of the last games. Not even a Dark One gets mentioned. But no worries, as Artyom has a new goal now that he has liberated these nude salamander men. Artyom is now trying to make contact with anyone or anything outside of the Moscow area, taking unnecessary risks like taking frequent trips to the now refrozen surface to try to pick up any radio signals, but to no avail so far. And we catch up with Artyom pulling open a frozen manhole after another failed radio excursion, and we get control of him and get to take a look around. Metro Exodus plays very similar to its predecessors, with it still being a fairly straightforward FPS with a whole suite of stealth mechanics, and you still got 3 gun slots, gas mask mechanics, flashlight, lighter, and loot items you can come across, and the game picks up right where Last Light left us off, and 5 years between those two games has given Exodus some time to change up. Exodus feels a bit weightier than 2033 and Last Light, and Artyom feels slightly slower in most of his actions, whether that's aiming down sights, reloading, or simply walking around. Arty is a bit more careful this time around, giving the game a bit more of a methodical feel in its combat. And for most combat scenarios, you'll want to be able to observe your enemies and then plan out your route of attack ahead of time, as getting ambushed or getting shot at when you're unprepared is a one-way ticket to black sludge arm hell. And Artyom is a bit softer than he was in previous games, and he seems to go down faster from less hits now. Now, I have no problem with a squishier Artyom, but the way your health is conveyed was made way worse in Exodus, as Artyom has no real health bar or anything. Rather, his health is denoted by this red aura that appears on your screen, which envelops the screen the more damage you take, and if it forms a blood circle, you're cooked. And I don't really like this red aura, because when you get hit, it takes a few seconds for it to appear and fully bleed into your FOV. And in that time, you can take even more hits, just taking on more damage than you realize, which can lead to a few unintentional deaths. And also, I don't like having this red aura hang on the screen outside of combat. Even if it's just a hit of damage or two, it just muddies up the FOV, blocking the beautiful in-game views, and it makes me want to burn a medkit just to get rid of it, which is a great waste of resources all for some visual cleanliness, which I'll talk more about later, when Artyom gets his backpack. But anyway, we hop back into the sewer, and we pull out a shambler and head back, and off the bat, yet again, the lighting and graphical presentation is again excellent. 5 years later, Metro Exodus can still hang with some of the best looking games coming out, even today. And the lighting effects are again spectacular, making this game a complete visual feast. And seeing that cold light pouring in through the cracked tunnels, the warm glow of lanterns and light fixtures, and the green glow of the shrooms all look awesome. And the lighting from the sun and moon when outside all look fantastic at pretty much all times. This game is so sexy, I give it the pipe. And the same goes for the weapon models and animations, all of which are incredibly smooth and detailed. All the weapons in this game look great, from the AKs to the T-car ball rifle, crossbow, shotgun, pistols, and more. They all look and feel great to use, and the reload and weapon sway animations look and feel extremely realistic and satisfying to do, with some pretty nice sound design for these guns, which have been upgraded from the classic sound effects in Last Light in 2033. The human head models also look pretty great, and they no longer have that glossy mannequin look from Last Light in 2033 redos. Instead, they're looking real fleshy and alive, and characters like Miller and Anna look especially good, although the lip syncing doesn't even try at times, and the English voice acting is still pretty...
My thoughts exactly. Thus, first I'll check her condition to the best of my knowledge. Also, we're approaching the valley with its forest air. That alone could heal her.
But it's still an overall improvement from previous games at least. So after we walk through the amazingly detailed metro tunnel, just like old times, Artyom gets ambushed by a Watchman gang squad while trying to go through a door. And even the mutants got some facelifts here. And these Watchmen are less fishy looking and more goblin-esque, with their pointed ears and their chameleonic looking eyes. Artyom is getting dogpiled by these freaks, until we're rescued in the clutch by Duke, Demir, and Idiot, 3 new Spartan allies, and they rush Artyom to the closest doctor to patch him up. And when we come to, we see Anna, our beautiful wife, doting on us. And it's good to see Artyom and Anna still doing well together. And also, I noticed that there's no kid here, like there is in the Last Light bad ending. So, this creates a bit of a paradox, and it seems that Artyom's nut effectiveness is ending dependent. If he dies at the end of Last Light and blows up, he has a kid with Anna during their quarantine sex. And if Artyom lives and gets saved by the Dark One, he's only shooting blanks. So it's Schrodinger's jizz, if you will. Need to get my head out of the fucking gutter. Anyway, Anna gently scolds Artyom for getting himself hurt and poisoning his blood, taking trips to the surface to look for loose radio signals. Because as far as anyone in the metro knows, the people living down in the Moscow metro are the only people left alive on Earth, as Moscow has been unable to make contact with another place on Earth since the bombs dropped. So Anna wants Artie to abandon his surface excursions, because who knows when he'll run into his last Nasalis gang squad. And Miller, our now father-in-law and commander, also shows up to chew out Artyom for almost making Anna a widow, and for pretty much abandoning the Spartan Order after the battle for D6 to hunt for signals of life above ground. As after the battle, Artyom and Anna left Polis to settle back in his home station exhibition. And speaking of the battle for D6, we unfortunately don't learn much about the aftermath of the battle in this game, nor do we know the current state of the factions involved. We know that Hansa and the Spartan Order are still around, but it's unclear what the current state of the Red Line and the Reich are. At least for the Red Line, considering that we were gunning down those Reds by the truckload all throughout Last Light. We exposed their leader Moskvin as a vile kinslayer, and he incel walked away in shame after revealing he killed his brother, and he was Corbett's bottom bitch. And we then killed Corbett and handed the Red Army a massive embarrassing L, thanks to the Spartan Dark One alliance. So it's probably safe to say that the Red Line has been mostly destroyed, or at the very minimum, has been neutralized as an effective fighting force. As for the Nazis, at least game-wise, I have no idea. They sort of vanished from the story since their rally in Last Light, and theoretically, the Nazis should still have a capable army, as they didn't participate in the D6 attack, and the Red's defeat there could have allowed them to finally overpower their eternal rival and take over their stations. But the Nazis are nowhere to be found in Exodus, only getting a few mentions by some Hansa goons and some extra dialogue. And it seems that they're still around, but haven't made any major moves after D6, and they're probably just stuck in conflict with Hansa or something. But anyway, Miller tells us to stop all this service exploration nonsense and transfer back to Polis, and we're finally able to get back up. And on a table, we find a note about Artyom, who we learn actually does have a last name, his full name being Artyom Milnemovich Chornich. And we head out and meet our Spartan buddies, and this is our squad of dudes that we'll be making our exodus with. The young and adventurous Duke, the ironically named Idiot, the powerfully goateed Stepan, the chrome-domed Demir, head-tatted Aloysia, Sam, he's an American, but he's chill, the gun-nut Tokarev, Colonel Miller, of course, and Anna, the woman. And they all go to celebrate Artyom not dying. We then cut to Artyom, out on the surface looking for radio signals again. God damn it, Artie, what do we say? But this time, he convinced Anna to tag along. And that's impressive, my boy. But again, we can't find any signals, and Anna gets fed up with freezing her ass off looking for ghosts. So she shuts off the transmitter, and we move to leave together. And in Last Light, I wasn't a big fan of Artyom and Anna's relationship, as they didn't spend too much actual time together, and Anna just kinda decides off screen that she likes our guy Artyom, after our little alien monkey boy hunt, and then they have some quarantine sex to make it official. But thankfully, I feel the opposite about their relationship in Exodus, and Anna is still stern, but way kinder, and much more understanding of Artyom's dreams and goals, and she has much more varied and interesting dialogue than in the past, and you can instantly tell there's a great mutual respect between the two, and they also have a lot of cute moments that show their relationship in some great ways, and you can tell Artyom cares deeply for her, even though he walks around like an Easter Island head that can't speak, and the game effectively conveys this through Artyom's actions, even though it's all in first person, and it gives Exodus a pretty solid emotional core that powers the story through the entire journey, which you'll see what I mean later. So we progress with Anna over the frozen streets of Moscow, shooting away some Nasalis gang squads for old time's sake. That is, until we come across a fully intact, working train leaving the metro heading towards somewhere. So someone in the metro must have contact with someone outside Moscow if they're running trains in and out of the metro. And it seems Artyom's hunch was well placed. A car of troops then pulls up, and, assuming it's some Spartans, Anna and Artyom hop inside, only to be beaten up, as these weren't Spartans, but Hansa guys, and we just busted them taking a train to who knows where. But I'm not sure how we didn't realize that these were Hansa guys and not Spartans. Do the Spartans even have cars like this? And it seems like an oddly unusual brain fart by Artyom and Anna to just walk in and get captured in this car here. But whatever. But while in the car, we meet these two odd people who claim to not be from Moscow, but from a village 200 kilometers away, proving that there is indeed life beyond the confines of Muscovy. And Anna gets real excited by this revelation, as we can finally strike out and explore Russia proper, now that we have proof of life outside of Moscow. But then, the truck stops, and shockingly, the Hansa goons move to execute the two travelers for the crime of not being from Moscow, which Artyom tries to stop, even throwing hands with a vicious dog to try and save these people. But it's no use, and Artyom is shot alongside them, and he falls into a pit, with the travelers' bodies flopping on top of him as he passes out. But we shake off this execution, grab a med kit, and head towards the Hansa train depot nearby, where we get our stealth tutorial in here, which is also pretty much unchanged from the previous games, having you hide in dark areas to remain unseen, and your watch's blue light telling you if you're currently exposed or not. There's only a handful of new features, like a little gray orb that appears in the direction of an enemy that is currently trying to find you, for a little bit of extra spatial awareness, and you can now pick up a maximum of 5 cans that you can throw to bait away enemies. But besides that, it's pretty much the exact same. It works well enough to get the job done, despite being pretty mechanically plain. And this Hansa depot has this awesome looking train rotating in the center of the room, showing us that Hansa has definitely been messing around on the surface in secret for a long time. We also see Hansa bullying a mechanic, this box-headed dude named Yermak, and they throw him into some timeout. And we then introduce ourselves to Yermak, who quickly recognizes us as the guy a captive Anna was yelling about. And Yermak decides he will help us stealth our way through the facility by distracting the guards. And we then find Anna and knock out some Hansa generals, and we learn Hunter's dog tag had stopped the bullet that would have killed Artyom, which is some Rooseveltian tier luck. The Hansa general then gets back up and whacks Anna with a chair. But her and Artyom overpower him, which damages this control center in the room, which then turns on, and we then learn the dark truth of the entire metro. There are people outside of Moscow, lots in fact. The whole world lights up with contact points, all over the world from England to America, Poland, Australia, New Zealand, and more, showing that humanity is nowhere near extinct, and they've been here the whole time. Moscow's airwaves were just being jammed, and this machine was just one of the jammers. But why hide Moscow from the world? The Hansa general says that they're still at war, but Anna knocks him out before we learn more, and Yermak gives us our gear back, and we gotta stealth through this yard to proceed. And I use my silent pistol to knock out lights to stick to the darkness. And it only took me 3 Metro games, but I finally tried my hand at the stealth mechanics, which ended up working out pretty well for me. But I'll talk about that more later. So we enter the train depot again and prep the train to move out, and shoot out with some Hansa goons before we make our escape. And the shooting has also gotten a few slight changes. Like everything else, there's a bit more of a slower pace to the gunfights, and the bullets have a really nice punch to them when firing with some great and powerful sounding gunshots to give them that extra oomph. And bullets have a bit more of a spread to them now, and bullets won't always land dead on where you're aiming, as they can be slightly off via spread, causing you to miss seemingly dead on gunshots at times, which can be unsatisfying when it really seems like those bullets should hit your target, only to barely miss or hit some puny geometry instead of the head. But overall, the Metro series shooting is at its best in Exodus, and its presentation, punch, and pop are all pretty great, although it's still pretty basic overall, and doesn't evolve much beyond its predecessors. But it's the strongest shooting in the series yet. But once we shoot through the Hansa depot, we free the train and hop on. But then a flash grenade comes through the window and incapacitates us before we can get away. And when we come to, we see that it's our Spartan guys who flashed us, and even Miller is here. But the Hansa dudes that they're with want to execute Artyom and Anna for exposing their train scheme. But that's a no-go. These are our dogs, man. So the Spartans turn the tables and detain the Hansa goons. But Miller is acting odd. He's totally gobsmacked at the situation, and he then reveals that he knows about the jammers. Damn, even Miller isn't on this jamming scheme? The fuck is going on? So Anna grills him for info, but another Hansa train is coming to obliterate us as we speak, so we can't talk about the jammers now. But Miller decides to defend his daughter and her chud husband over taking orders, and Miller makes the call to escape for now, as Anna and Artyom would be killed for their knowledge back in the Metro, and for discovering and then destroying a Hansa train depot and killing 24 of its men. So with no other options, the gang leave the Metro for the first time on the train, finally beginning our exodus. But the other Hansa train then pulls up and attacks us, so Artyom hops onto it and gets to work, shooting through the crammed train and sabotaging its engine, before hopping back onto our own train, blowing the other to bits, and finally making our escape. We then stop the train 100 kilometers away to take stock and get some answers out of Miller. And Miller reveals that the Great Nuclear War of 2013 had never actually ended. Well, at least the Russian government never thought it did. And with most of Russia's large cities destroyed and lying in frozen over ruins, the government decided its only course of action was to go radio silent, hunker down in the metros, and hide from the NATO forces that are surely on their way to give Moscow a second round of bomb shots. But now the jig is up, and Anna and Artyom had discovered undeniable proof of life outside of Moscow. Miller then tells Anna that he'd only recently learned about the jammers, probably after last light when he got promoted to chief security officer of Polis. But that begs the question, who's pulling the strings in the metro? Well, you see, in the previous games, while sneaking around near enemies, you can listen in on their conversations, and sometimes they'd bring up a mysterious faction called the Invisible Watchers, a group of high-ranking Russian government officials who the Metro dwellers speculated were secretly pulling the strings of the entire Metro from the shadows, influencing its factions and people to control their populations, and to keep the air of war paranoia and complete isolation going strong. Now, that always just seemed like a wild conspiracy theory, and most Metro dwellers assumed they were just an urban legend or a myth, but Miller reveals that it's all true, and he himself was under their control, saying that he'd be killed if he talked about the truth. Damn, it would have been nice to know before Artyom nearly got himself killed on the surface looking for radio signals. So, Miller, trying to get the heat off himself, then tells Artyom to fire up that damn radio he loves so much and try to contact something called the Ark, and we find his signal calling on troops to meet at a rally point, somewhere near Mount Yamantau. Miller then reveals that the Ark was a special command bunker made for the Russian government bigwigs, so hopefully we can reach the Ark, let the government know that Moscow is not completely cooked, and try to get started on restoration efforts. And all we gotta do is dodge those pesky NATO soldiers that are assuredly all over the place. So, with our new destination chosen, Miller leads a toast to our grand adventure, and we christen the train as the Aurora. Simple, not too original, but effective. And we head out. And luckily for us, it seems most of the railroads are still mostly intact after a nuclear war and 20 plus years of decay. Can't knock that Soviet civil engineering. But we then get ambushed and get stuck in a makeshift roadblock on the banks of the Volga River, stopping us dead in our literal tracks. Maybe these are the occupying NATO forces. But if so, their setup seems pretty bushwhack, and NATO looks pretty damn broke these days. Worse yet, the massive rail bridge up ahead is raised, so we gotta explore the area with Anna to see what's going on around here. And there's a church and a few scattered houses, so we take a look. And once we get past the dialogue and get cut loose, we can pull up the map to get a lay of the land. And we can see that this place is pretty much half flooded. And we also get a backpack from Tokarev, this being one of the biggest new features to Metro Exodus. Unlike previous games, Metro Exodus is now a semi-open world game, with some stretches of more traditional Metro-style linear levels at the beginning and end of the game. But now at the Volga, the game opens up into a series of open world spaces for you to explore and complete missions in at your own pace. And these are usually your main story objectives, mutant lairs, bandit camps, and other ruins and POIs to explore and pilfer through, which get marked on your map as you progress. And there's not much in terms of side quests though, and you only get a small few explicit tasks outside of the main quest, like retrieving Nastia's teddy bear from the clutches of a demon, or snagging a guitar for Stepan from a bandit camp. Otherwise, most side quests are just simple POIs, like a bandit camp or a ruin, that you can pull up to, kill all the enemies there, access a workbench maybe, and loot the place for scrap, chemicals, or new weapon attachments, and maybe free a few locals if they're locked up nearby. But a majority of the content in each open area is usually pretty deeply tied to the main quest, which can make areas feel kind of sparse in terms of actual content. But the main objectives will keep you plenty busy, and initially exploring these areas is really awesome, and going from a cold, flooded Volga River to the arid wastes of the Caspian Sea to the pretty idyllic Taiga Valley, all these maps look incredible and gorgeous, and present some interesting scenarios and cool story missions for each location. And getting to explore some choice locations of post-apocalyptic Russia was something I really enjoyed, and they're a visual feast. Damn, I love world building. Also, the backpack. I mean, this is a semi-open world game, and gamer law decrees that any game that could even be considered open world to any degree must have a lootable resource-based crafting system. Them's just the rules. And I just mentioned scrap and chemicals, which will be your main loot targets from here on out, as ammo, medkits, and filters are all pretty infrequent to come across by themselves, and you'll mostly be picking up loose junk and chemicals, which are your two main crafting components. Artyom can pop open containers and lockers to gather up metal balls, yarn, gears, and other loose trash that he can put towards crafting his essential gear, like ammo, medkits, filters, as well as weapon and gas mask maintenance, as you still have your gas mask mechanics. Throw on the mask if Artyom starts gagging and choking like Squidward swallowing a fork, and you still have to swap filters after about 3 minutes in a pocket of shit air. and Artie has ditched his classic analog watch for a much more easily readable digital watch. And you can no longer just swap the gas mask off a mutilated corpse if your mask gets too damaged. Instead, you have to manually repair it with scrap. And there's even a cool detail with your starter mask, as it'll break open if you sustain too much damage, forcing you to put some tape on the hole to stay alive. Although you can find a mask that doesn't break as a unique item later in the game. And it again works just fine. But since Exodus takes place in the less nuked up parts of Russia, the gas mask is definitely used the least in Exodus, and I never had to worry about filters or managing your time, even once. You can also find new bracer and armor upgrades, which you can use to specialize Artyom's loadout even further, like having the options of a directional arrow, a motion scanner, or a metal detector on your arm near your watch, or armor that can hold more ammo, or armor that can hold more consumables, like more throwing knives. Although I just used the ammo armor and the objective arrow bracer for 90% of the game, as they were simply the best options I had. Also, I tried using the metal detector bracer to find more scrap, but the endless beeping it gives off was just way too goddamn annoying, and so I had to take it off. It was absolutely brutal. Weapons now also have to be maintained, as they can get covered with dirt and poop, which will cause your weapon to jam. And the dirtier it gets, the more often it jams, which forces Artyom to hit reload to fix his gun. And these jams are incredibly annoying. It can easily spell death if your gun jams when you're trying to zero some nearby goon who's shooting at you. So I was always keeping my guns dirt-free, which you use chemicals to clean off when you're at a workbench only, as Artyom's backpack is a sort of portable and more limited workbench. And from his backpack, Artyom can craft medkits, filters, throwing knives, and ammo for his pneumatic T-car rifle, and later his crossbow. Whereas weapon gear and maintenance, crafting all other ammo types, can only be done at stationary workbenches. And you can usually find one workbench where the Aurora is parked. It's a pretty simple and unremarkable system, but I actually really like its execution in game, as gathering up scrap and chemicals is a great innate motivator for you to explore the side locations and ruins to get your stacks up, and it allows the player to choose exactly what items they can obtain and when, letting you craft at will to best complement your playstyle. Also, the backpack and workbench can provide some interesting challenges when out in the field, as you can easily get your weapon too dirty or run out of ammo for your best rifle pretty quickly, which will force you to improvise and have to use different weapons, like falling back on your T-car, as it's the only weapon that you can craft ammo on the fly for, or pick up a new weapon, or just try to sneak past without fighting, or something, until you can reach another workbench, restock all your shit, spit shine your guns, and get back to peak condition. And I never really felt like the devs were trying to screw me over with bad workbench placements, or they were trying to jip me on supplies, and it always felt pretty fair and interesting to make it through these levels. And finally, the last major change here is how weapon attachments are handled. Since we're out of the metro, the money bullets are now useless to trade with any bushwhack faction we may run into out here in the Russian boonies. So we can't just roll up to a shop, 250 money bullets in hand, and customize our Kalashnikov like it's Black Ops 2. Instead, we gotta scrounge for the attachments ourselves, which we can find amongst loot occasionally, but you'll find most attachments off the weapons of the enemies you've killed or KO'd. And in the previous games, you could loot the enemies' guns themselves for extra ammo, and this has been expanded on pretty nicely in Exodus. You can still loot ammo off the guns, but you can now deconstruct the guns themselves. You can snag all new attachments for the guns, as well as gathering up some extra units of scrap. And these could be anything from stocks, barrels, sights, magazine upgrades, and gadgets like laser sights, which are all pretty sweet. And I really like how these attachments look, especially the red dot sights. This might be the slickest red dot sight I've ever seen in a video game. The model is just immaculate. But the most interesting upgrades are for the unique weapons like the T-car and crossbow, as you can get some pretty nice ball chamber upgrades, automatic pressure upgrades, and explosive ammo types for the T-car, and large, auto-loading magazines for the crossbow that can essentially quadruple its fire rate. And this is by far, again, the best implementation of weapon customization in the series, which sort of felt like a minor, do it if you want type feature in the previous games, and weren't really necessary for success. But now attachments are the best way to make your guns stronger and faster, and they can provide huge firepower to Artyom's kit if you build out your weapons with all the best attachments. It's simple, but effective, and messing around with these gun models looks so awesome too. But for now, back to the plot. So we explore the nearby area, and we even get access to some small paddle boats across the flooded areas of the map, which move slightly too slow for my liking. We can also use this boat to paddle right up to that conspicuous church, where we might find a NATO base or something. When we pull up, though, we find that it's not NATO troops here, but a cult of some kind. The church doorman here is dressed like a post-apocalyptic fisherman. He says that Father Silantis has begun his sermon, so we paddle inside and listen in. And Silantis here is already yapping, proclaiming to his flock about the evils of electricity, which they fanatically fear, as technology was what destroyed the Earth after all, and the villagers will even cower in fear if you shine your flashlight on them, and they worship a massive mutant fish called the Czarfish that swims around in the waters of the nearby Volga. And these cultists are also plagued by the nearby bandits, who kidnap and kill them on the regular, and they seem to think that we're some kind of super bandit with our train technology. But while he preaches, he's interrupted by a little girl, Nastia, who calls him a fake and a fraud, saying that he killed her dad, but she soon gets hauled away. And once we've had enough of this sermon, we can proceed and get stuck in the back of the church, and we hop out to investigate the place. And we soon find Nastia and her mother Katya in an apartment in the church's tower, who have been held here for a year by Silantis for nothing good, I assume. But we gotta scram, because the bridge guards are pulling up on us, who are also a part of this church, and they guard the raised bridge. But unfortunately, unlike the fisher folk, they make an exception for shoot technology. So we have to either sneak past or shoot these guys in the church, which I sneak through as much as possible, until I'm forced to light up the rest of the goons after getting spotted, which I take down in this sweet church area. And once you eliminate most of the enemies, the last few enemies alive will usually surrender to you, raising their guns over their heads, to which you can either kill, ignore, or incapacitate them. And it's a nice immersive feature that makes me feel like a real scary motherfucker to have these guys quaking in their boots just in my presence. But you always just want to knock these guys out, because killing surrendering enemies is a great way to tank your moral points for no fucking reason. It's actually less than pointless just to kill them. And we then have an encounter with the Czarfish itself, who eats our boat and nearly devours Artyom as well. But we get a clutch rescue from Duke, and we return to the Aurora, and we find Katya and Nastia have been recovered and brought back to the Aurora, and Miller grills them about seeing any foreign-occupying NATO armies nearby, which they seem confused by, and Katya tells them that she hasn't seen any Western armies lying around, and we've yet to see a single shred of evidence that NATO troops are occupying the land. There's not even a loose javelin to be found. So we speak to Miller, who tells us that Katya and Nastia said that there's a lone mechanic named Crest living in a ruined port nearby, who was ran off by the cultists, and he could possibly help Yermak get the Aurora moving again. So we go to meet him, shooting past some chunky zombie-like mutants called the Humanimals to find him. And we meet Crest, who has the funny Pavel voice from Last Light.
Those dumb bastards. I've been here long enough to know the drill. Best of terms, huh? But I say fuck that. No, fuck that. The grunts stick together, huh? Давай.
And Crest is a pretty chill and low-key dude, and he hands us a pair of binoculars and lets us look over the map, pointing out some POIs that we can check out later. And we extend Crest an invitation to join our train crew, and we head back for now. And on radio, we learn from Miller that Anna had gone missing near a bunker, so we move to find her, which we do after phasing through a hole in the ground here, where we find Anna unconscious and coughing on the ground, so we mask her up. But who knows how long she was huffing in this stale bunker air. So we might want to do something about that cough. And we then have to progress through this bunker and get it back open, feeling more in our element in this shitty, dank bunker than on the surface. So we get the power on and open the door, and we free ourselves and Anna, who thankfully seems to be doing better for now. So we return to the Aurora again, and find Stepan is already making moves on Katya here. Will he be the father who steps up? Stay tuned. And we return to Miller, who just got done accepting Crest into the club, and they tell us our plan to get past this raised bridge. Crest tells us that traders come by semi-frequently to do business with the church, so we can disguise ourselves as said traders, infiltrate the place, lower the bridge, and bang, we're home free. But then Stepan walks in, asking Miller for permission to take his newfound MILF and her daughter with us. But Miller seems pretty dead set on leaving this mother and her child in the dust due to lack of space on the Aurora.
A woman with a 6-year-old daughter, no less. This is unacceptable.
But no worries, there's an abandoned passenger railcar in the depot nearby. And Crest says that he has a manual railcar that we could use to grab the passenger car that was confiscated by the cult. Convenient. So with the plan formed, Miller puts his best goon Artyom on the job, and I do a little bit of the side content, clearing bandit camps for extra gear, rescuing a few cultists for some moral point boosts, and I get the railcar after paddling and shooting through this huge warehouse that has some excellent lighting and design to it, killing an extended family of Humanimals along the way. And we grab the railcar and drive it down to snag the passenger car and return to the Aurora with our new house. And with the crib secured, we can finally make a move on that damn bridge. So we will commandeer the trader tugboat for ourselves, and Artyom and Duke will infiltrate the bridge, reach the control center, and then lower the bridge, while all the other guys distract. Okay, solid plan. But before we go, Miller advises us to keep our attack quiet, making sure that we get that good ending. So I infiltrate the traders' boats in a cool moonlit stealth sequence, and we commandeer their tug and climb up onto the bridge. And it's another cool location to sneak through, and there's a lot of sweet verticality to the place. And I recommend that you sneak the entire way through to get the best possible outcome, and only knock out the thugs you come across, which took a few reloads to get just right. But once past the guards, we can sneak right up on Silantis, who is giving a real rager of a sermon. We tell Silantis that we aren't here to rob and kill everyone like the other bandits, and we just want to lower the bridge and get our asses out of here. And Silantis finally realizes that Artyom is a classy guy who isn't just here to murder him for no reason, and he finally capitulates to us, and tells his goons to let us pass, and Artyom and Duke take a pretty huge jump, and ride off with the Aurora, finally leaving this watery shithole in the dust. And the Volga is a pretty great level that sets the bar and pace for the rest of the game's areas very efficiently, giving you plenty of space to explore, find new gear, and get your bearings in this new game structure. And the actual story locations like the church, the bunker, and the bridge are all pretty sweet combat encounters to sneak or shoot through, and it does well at showing you what to expect going forward. And the concept of this place is pretty cool. A technophobic cult of local yokels led by a megalomaniacal priest who worship a massive mutated catfish. But unfortunately, these new faction and local conflicts aren't all that deep, and are usually disappointingly basic in their plots beyond the initial scenario setup. We show up, do our business, kill a few bandits and mutants, get a new train car, scrap with or avoid the cult, sneak up on their bridge sermon, get Silantis to fold at gunpoint, and dip out, leaving them pretty much how we found them. And there isn't much in terms of player choice to determine the cult's fate beyond killing or sparing their soldiers and freeing some captive cultists. And this basic plot is unfortunately a trend for most of these open areas. But the great visuals, freedom to go wherever you please in search of weapons and gear, and some fun and interesting missions do keep the overall experience buzzing very well. We then wake up on the Aurora as it travels the countryside, and we can explore the Aurora and see our Spartan guys just hanging out. And the vibes are truly immaculate in these in-between levels. It's great. And we then meet up with Miller, who tells us that he was able to make contact with the Ark, and he plays us a tape of the conversation he had with them. And Miller sounds like he just met his favorite celebrity or something. Dude is beyond excited to be chatting with Russian army officials.
I had a talk with the Ark, all thanks to Tokarev. He got the decoder working.
And the guy on the other end seems real enough, although he doesn't reveal much, and he seems a bit shifty, to say the least.
Spot. I see. Well, this is great. Great!
But the Ark accepts us anyway, saying that the Minister of Defense himself will meet with us, which has Miller extra excited, acting like he's about to meet LeBron James or something. And he calls Artyom a
Doubting Thomas
for being skeptical about the Ark. These old heads got the most ridiculous insults, man. But regardless, we stare at the map and head for Yamantau, into the Ark, to hopefully get some answers. So we arrive at the again fantastic looking Yamantau region, but the vibes of this place are definitely off. And there isn't another soul in sight. And it appears that the mountain itself seems to be covered in some yucky radiation. So a squad of Miller, Artyom, Anna, Idiot, and Sam all head to the bunker to make sure everything's all good before the train can move in. And we reach the bunker facility, which is surrounded by abandoned train cars. And amazingly, a voice talks to us from a camera and lets us in. But the entrance is also empty, and the Russian government seems to have cheaped out on bunker maintenance costs. This place is a fucking dump. We then head down to meet the Russian MOD officials. Miller is still barely able to contain his excitement, acting like he's about to give his third-grade book report that he worked extra hard on.
Get off my case. I pulled an all-nighter.
And we seem to meet the Russian leadership in this dark curtained room. But when they step into the light, it's revealed that they're actually filthy-ass cannibals, and a horde of them swarm into the room and restrain Miller, Anna, and Artyom. And we have walked right into a death trap. Shit. We are then dragged to meet the leader of these ugly-ass thugs, the medic from Team Fortress 2. And Miller demands to talk to the real government, but it seems like the medic and his Slavic cannibal ogre army here are all that remains of the Russian government. And now they're gonna have us for dinner. But the doctor here mentions that Anna has a concerning cough, so they need to run some tests on her before they cut her up into chunks and fry her in a wok. Anna then gets knocked out and dragged away, and Miller gets restrained and is about to get turned into a tender ham sandwich. When we spot Sam and Idiot take down some cannibal guards while this Slavic Urukai taunts us. Sam and Idiot then jump down and gear us back up, and we shoot down the cannibals. And we move to find Anna, shooting through this massive D6-esque area, complete with those sweet spiraled elevators. And this bunker is absolutely infested with these cannibals. It's like an actual zombie horde in here. And it's pretty fun to go nuts and light these guys up in some fun shooting sections. And it's always a treat when Metro just lets you go ape with your weapons and gives you plenty of fodder to blast through. And we soon find and rescue Anna, but we then get attacked by the medic again. And while we struggle, Anna gets behind him and slices his neck open. But his words about Anna's condition seem alarming. But she's mostly okay for now. She's not coughing up blood while keeled over on the ground or anything. Well, not yet at least. So we press on for now, and we catch up with Miller executing the remaining officials in the bunker, and he then apologizes to Anna for getting too overly excited about finding the Ark and nearly getting them all killed, as his excitement at potentially meeting Prigozhin had him blind to all the obvious red flags that this place was giving off. Meanwhile, our guy Idiot, who is actually pretty intelligent, is Miller's second in command, is scouring the computer systems to try and find a comm center that may have been operational after the war, as it would have the most accurate data as to where in Russia is safe and where in the country it's a uranium sauna. Idiot finds a potential comm center near the Caspian Sea, and we leave the Ark, shooting goons on these sweet spiraling elevators before escaping a massive horde of cannibals on the way out. And it seems that these cannibals should just eat each other instead of trying to Zerg rush our heavily armed squad of stone-cold killers. I just picked the ugliest bastard and eat him. But anyway, we make our escape and then cut to the Aurora crew at night, all having a collective brooding session. And the lighting effects look fantastic yet again. Miller then rages about the big lie that we just exposed. Moscow wasn't ever in contact with the Ark, and the war is indeed over, and no NATO troops are anywhere to be found. And the jamming was just a farce to keep the general public in the dark and under control of the Watchers. The Russian officials never even made it to the Ark, with the cannibals there being the remnants of construction workers and laborers who were stranded there when the bombs fell, who had then turned to deranged cannibalism after rations in the Ark ran out, where they now lure people in to get eaten, or probably run around like maniacs eating each other when there are no survivors to trap. We then try to discuss what to do next. Should we go back to the Metro? Nah, we'd be killed on sight. Maybe we should go back to the Volga then? Nah, the locals there are fucking weird, and that place is a total dump. But then Anna suggests, how about we just go to somewhere not shit? And the best way to find a not shit place will be to explore the comm center near the Caspian Sea Idiot learned about in the Ark, and to get the most accurate radiation hazard maps of the area. So that is where we will go. And when we arrive, we find it's a bit drier than expected, and the place is a complete desert, which I always thought was a really cool new setting for Metro, as it's so far away from the frozen hell and the sewers of the previous games. It feels real fresh. We spot a truck driving off, the thugs driving it mentioning a Baron of some kind, and we soon find out that this place is hot. So hot that some of the Spartan guys are incapacitated from the heat. And not only that, the Aurora is dangerously low on coal and water, so we have to find the bunker and the weather maps, and coal and water for the train on top of it all. So we move out, exploring this amazing looking desert area, and these ruins with the faded Soviet mosaics are just so awesome. And we soon get to explore the nearby ruined town that car drove into, and after clearing it of mutant zombies, we get ambushed by Saul here, who is unaware of Artyom's QTE powers, and we dispatch him by hugging his face real hard. And off his body, we can get a key for a shitbox on wheels, which opens up the car for us to use as a vehicle to quickly traverse the Caspian map, as it's the largest map in terms of raw available area. And the car works fine enough. This ain't no GTA, but it'll move you from point A to point B, and it's fun to flatten the occasional humanimal. But there is a massive issue with the car, that being this weird height glitch. It seems that whenever I check the map in the car, or simply when just driving over bumps, Artyom's head position gets all fucked up, and your view gets moved up high, like Artyom is now sitting in a booster seat, and his head is now touching the roof of the car, and you can only see 5 feet in front of you by looking down out the window. Pulling the map back out and putting it away seemed to fix the issue, but it was very annoying to constantly adjust Artyom's height as he gets randomly attacked by phantom booster seats, and it made me really not want to drive and just walk instead. But when your head isn't going through the roof, the car is fine. Beats walking, I suppose. But now in the car, we can pick up radio chatter from the Baron. You learn that this place has a real Mad Max vibe to it. The Baron runs a group of raiders called the Munai Bailer, or the Oil People, who appear to be former Caspian Sea oil workers who had turned into a desert raider group who control the oil and gas supplies in their region from their massive scrap metal fortress, and they go out on raiding parties for supplies. And they also enslave the local Kazakh population through violence and fear, claiming themselves to be fire gods to their slaves. And luckily for us, most of them are currently away on a raid, letting us operate easier in the region. and it's very Fury Road-esque, if you know what I mean. And we get a call to help out a local woman named Gil at the lighthouse, where she's currently being attacked by some oil raiders. So we pull up and drill these oily bastards, and link up with Gil after taking a lift. Gil is one of the few remaining Kazakh locals, and seemingly the last holdout against the Baron. We ask Gil about the nearby comm center, and she says that her mother used to be a technical officer there, but the place is currently abandoned. And since we helped her, she'll lead us to get inside the bunker, and we get inside and head down the elevator to find our charts. And this facility is much more of a traditional Metro-styled area. We're back crawling through half-buried corridors filled with mutants. It's almost comforting, in a way. And the mutant of the day here are those light-allergic armored spiders, who are pretty much still the same as they were in Last Light, where you hit them with beam shots from your flashlight and keep it on them until they flip over, and then pump their soft underbelly with some buckshot. The only difference being is that these spiders are a lot quicker than they were in previous games, and they'll back away incredibly fast or hide underground when you put the light on them, making actually flipping them over a pretty decent challenge, and you'll be managing them more than killing them. And we then find Gil's mother's corpse, and you can tell it's her because it's the only corpse that still has hair. And we can also pry a family portrait from her cold dead hands for Gil, and it's a pretty nice yet somber moment. And we then find our radiation charts, and we gotta escape from the spider zone. Just keep that flashlight beaming, and we return via lift to Gil and Damir, and hand back the portrait to Gil. And we then leave and relink with Anna to get a lay of the nearby POIs, and we take out a nearby sniper for fun. And then I free a boat full of slaves as a fun side activity. I then return to the Aurora as a sandstorm whips up, and we return the charts to Miller. Now all we need is some water and fuel to power our train house out of this scorched dump. We can get the water from a nearby well Damir is scoping out. And we link up with him, and Damir leads us through some sweet desert caves and cliffs. It's all got some sweet looking ruins in here, showing the slaves' original settlements before they got all Munai Bailared and enslaved. And we then got to sneak past some slaves and thugs, and be mindful not to kill the slaves, as killing them will lock you out of this level's good ending, which I'll talk about more once the story is nearly complete here. For now, just avoid or knock out any thugs, just to be safe, as I had a bit of a hard time distinguishing between a Munai Bailared thug and a slave. So better safe than sorry. And once through the cave, we gotta sneak some more through the well camp. And this is a cool area to sneak past, avoiding the slaves and thugs as we climb up high over the gate to open it, so Damir and Artyom can drive off with our liquid loot. Artyom taking another huge leap onto this truck here. God damn. So we climb into the truck, and Artyom decides to have a quick nappy as they drive back. I mean, we'll be there in like 60 seconds, but whatever. And when we come to, we find the Auroras under fire. So we jump into action and fight off these oil bastards until they all die. And it's a pretty tough firefight. You might get killed a few times. But once they're all dead and all their corpses have been looted, Miller decides that it's probably time to get the fuck out of here. And Gil tells him that we can steal a fuel car from the Munai Bailair. And she offers to guide us there. And she leads us to a sewer, and we crawl in and make our way past the slave pits to the Munai Bailair base, which has a huge metallic fire-spewing face built into it. Damn, I didn't know that they were into Art Deco like that. But anyway, we reach the fuel car, but the tracks are raised, and we have to infiltrate their base and lower it manually. But while we're planning, the Baron spots us, and now we have to face him, and we enter his compound under his invitation. And we go through this compound, seeing how these oil raiders live, and we meet the Baron in his throne room, where he tells us a little spiel about his philosophy of the world, saying that him being a mass-murdering bandit lord and slaver is okay, because at least he introduces a bit of order to the place. It's a very standard ends justify the means shtick. Not very interesting. And the Baron then tries to cut a deal with us. He'll give us the fuel we need, if only we hand over Gil to him. But Gil overhears this conversation and says hell no to that deal, and opens fire on the Baron and his men, handing us our backpack as we jump into battle. And we can even try to use his Gatling machine gun, but it kinda sucks. It's wildly inaccurate, and you have to stand out in the open and rev it up while you're completely exposed, making you a real meaty target for your enemies. So I quickly ditched the Gatling gun. But be careful with these heavily armored enemies in here too, as they use the Gatling gun, but they have god tier aim when they use it, and they can absolutely melt Artyom with a quick and deadly bullet spray if you're at all exposed. So hide deep in cover and out-angle the big guy and take his ass down without dying in under a few seconds. Once the enemies are down, Damir then appears, and we confront the Baron, who is dangling Gil off the ledge, but a distant explosion causes him to slip, and we have to fight the Baron while Damir helps Gil. But luckily for us, Wifey is watching, and we split the Baron's melon with some sweet teamwork. But with the Baron dead and the fuel secure, we can finally get the fuck out of here, and Gil thanks us for the help, and Damir decides to stay behind to help Gil and her people, hoping that he can learn more about his Kazakh heritage, and probably hoping he could tap that ass or something. So we dap him up, wish him good luck on his pussy quest, and zipline away to relink with Anna, and we leave this sandy shithole behind. And the Caspian here is another great collection of locations and missions, and the setting of a dried out lake is a great and fresh location for the Metro series. But much like the Volga, the conflicted story here is a bit undercooked, and it feels like a Kazakhstani version of Mad Max, just with less cars. The Munai Bailair are pretty generic raiders who hoard the Caspian Sea's oil and brutally enslave the locals because they simply can, and their boss lives by a basic survival of the fittest mentality. Ends justify the means and all that bull. And hell, we don't even know what his name is. We just know him as the Baron. Before we bust into his house, put our dirty shoes all up on his sofa, steal food out his pantry, throw Scooby-Doo fruit snacks at his son's head, and then get our wife to split his melon open with a sniper rifle before we bail. All of his soldiers are just generic thugs named Thug. And the only guy with an actual name in the Munai Bailair, Saul, is a guy we beat up and jack a car from within the first 10 minutes of arriving here. And I also missed out on the good ending and having Demir stay with us, as I must have accidentally killed a slave at some point, despite making my best efforts to not kill them during the main story sections, when the game tells you in no uncertain terms to avoid killing them. And I'm not really sure why I went wrong here. Demir even complimented me for not killing any slaves at the spring, and I freed them at the prison ship, and more. But alas, I wish the factional conflict had a bit more depth and meat to it. I mean, the Munai Bailair apparently have 700 goons out there that could return and ruin all our work at any time. So let's hope Gil and Demir can fight them off and rescue the slaves from their lives of captivity before they're back. Because the Aurora's blowing this pop stand for good, and we ain't coming back to this dump. But overall, the Caspian is another really solid open area, and its unique and interesting locations to sneak and shoot through keep this place super memorable for me, even if the story is mostly completely forgettable. But with that, we're back on the Aurora, seemingly just getting done with some nasty work with Anna. And if you hang around, you can get some pretty touching dialogue with Anna, who discusses her past, her parents, and her hopes for the future to find someplace safe to live. It's a great way to really reflect how deep Anna and Artyom's relationship is, and what they're truly fighting for. Each other. And after leaving the train car, we can walk in on a wedding between Stepan and Katya, the lady we picked up at the Volga, where the whole crew is there celebrating and having a nice meal. Stepan is playing guitar and everyone else is clapping and dancing. And it's a really nice moment for the game, and these moments of carefree joy are extremely rare in the Metroverse. And seeing everyone party and being so happy for the new couple provides a unique moment of soul and humanity that was always memorable for me.
You guys are just amazing!
That was a great laugh. Thank you, boys.
And the good times keep rolling, as Miller then announces that he and Idiot have found some prime real estate for the crew to potentially settle in. A picturesque river valley with a nearby hydroelectric dam and no nearby populated areas. And it seems as good a place as any. And we're only 2 days away. Yippee! And Miller christens the new couple to complete the ceremony, as they swap rings and everyone cheers, until this damn party pooper Anna starts coughing up blood on the table. Damn, party foul. And Miller and Katya attend to her, as luckily, Katya is a nurse, and Anna reveals that the cannibal doctor from the Ark had told her that her lungs were in complete shambles, and that Anna is gonna die from this condition, which she picked up when she accidentally fell into that bunker in the Volga, and huffed in all that shit air for who knows how long. So we deliberate with Miller and Katya, who are both huffing that copium that Anna's condition is just from the shitty air that changes each time we travel. But if it gets worse, we may be able to find a drug Katya knows about in Novosibirsk to help her. But that's an option of last resort, as Novosibirsk is absolutely foobarred. So for now, we decide to head to the forest, and if Anna's condition gets worse, we will look for medicine in Novosibirsk. So Artyom takes Aloysia and Crest railcar as a forward scouting party, so we can scope out the valley for any hyper-violent bandits, cannibals, cultists, or slavers, starting the third and final open area level. We then cut to Artie and Aloysia driving through the valley on our train car. Everything looking pretty sweet. It's looking pretty around here. And this verdant forest is a pretty fresh change-up from the sands of the Caspian Sea. That is, until we hear a distant roar and a rock slide appears and destroys the train car, plunging Artyom and Aloysia into the river, where he almost drowns, until a mysterious woman in a skull mask appears and pulls us out of the water. And we learn that this is Olga, but she quickly runs off before Artyom passes out and wakes up some unknown time later. So we get up, gearless, but not to worry, as we soon find a new unique weapon, the crossbow, on a nearby statue. And it's a pretty nice high damage stealth weapon that can even pin enemies to walls if you shoot one near one. We can also free a nearby bandit that's tied to this post, which reveals the regional conflict here. We were saved by Olga, a child of the forest and a member of the Pioneers, one of the two factions that arose from the survivors of a group of scout campers that were in this area when the bombs dropped all the way back in 2013. And the children of the forest are the grown-up survivors of the students of the camp, and they all worship their late camp teacher as some sort of god, living their lives by his teachings, and they believe that when they die, they'll be sent to reunite with their teacher and perform their final exam in the sky. And the other forest faction here are the Pirates, a more hostile group that we can meet shortly after the Pioneers, who act like cops and border guards for the children, and kill and capture outsiders at will, whereas the Pioneers are far more peaceful and accepting of outsiders, although they can't fight like the Pirates, and they spend most of their time farming and maintaining their treehouse bases. And these children are currently dealing with these nondescript bandit thugs harassing them, so the tensions are higher than ever. And we first gotta sneak past these pirates and zipline out a tower to proceed. And I again took care to not kill a single soul, as the children's notes that you can pick up actually endeared them to me quite a bit, as although they'll string up strangers and feed them to wild animals, their hearts are still in the right place, and they're just trying to keep their group safe at the end of the day. And their notes reflect their naivety and innocence pretty effectively. And after taking the zipline and almost eating shit, we spot the mutant bear boss from Metro Last Light, and it looks like round 2 with the thing is coming up. So we proceed through some caves and get caught in this classic net trap by the pirates. But the pirates start arguing with some pioneers over who should keep Artyom, because the pirates laid the trap, but the trap was on pioneer turf. And we can see the difference between the two on display. The pirates want to kill us, thinking that we're just another bandit. But the pioneers want to follow the teacher's law and have Artyom go to a forest court of some kind to decide his fate. But then, the massive mutant bear appears and assaults the bickering children, and we use the chaos of this insane scene to cut ourselves free. And we can even get our backpack back from the pirate who strung us up. We then gotta make it past the children's treehouse bases in some close quarters sneaking. And I also take out a camp of bandits to help free these forest freaks for some extra good karma. And we then reach this large crumbling church, and out of the gate bursts the mutant bear, finally ready to fight us in the game's first real boss encounter. And the fight is okay, I suppose. It feels a lot like a rehash from Last Light, as the bear can only really just run at you and swipe with his oversized meat arms for big damage, just like in Last Light. But as long as you stay on the move and run away when the bear gets close, you'll be just fine. Also, for some reason, there's no music playing during this fight, giving this whole fight a bit of a contemplative and awkward feel. And I gave the bear several arrows and bullets to the face to get it to fuck off, and light it on fire for good measure, and then I train it like it's COD Zombies, and soon enough, the bear will say fuck it, and we'll knock down a fence and flee for now. We can then enter the church and find our savior Olga again, who tells us that Aloysia is all good and waiting for us at the dam in the distance. And we even get to see the great teacher's grave, which Olga prays to. And we can get a lot of extra dialogue from her that fully explains the backstory of the children and their teacher, and how the pioneers and pirates came to be. As the pirates were a faction that arose after a group of boys took revenge on a group of bandits, killing them for attacking their camp, and their turn to violence heavily demoralized the teacher, who eventually took his own life after realizing that the pirates were becoming hardened killers, overwhelmed by their brutality and his guilt at their loss of innocence. And once we're done chatting with Olga, we move on and have to sneak through the pirate swamp base, which is the hardest area to sneak through yet. And I recommend sneaking through here at night, and not during the daytime like my impatient ass. The guards here have long angles they can see you from, and having that darkness cover will make things go so much smoother. Just find a camp and take a nap to pass the time. But once past the swamp base, we have to get through this irradiated garage depot and power up the lift inside. All the while, some guy yells bloody murder down on you for killing the shrimp mutants that attack you here. And once you power up and use the lift, we can find the guy who's yelling at us. This wheelchair-bound goofball called the Admiral, who lives up here alone with 2 corpses that he talks for, pretending that they're still alive.
Trying our best, Admiral, sir!
Quit your yapping. Making a worse racket than the damn Aqua's in heat.
And he's real pissed at the pirates for wanting to kill bandits rather than mutants, as the Admiral here used to be the leader of the pirates, and he came to this depot because he wanted to fend off the mutants that were coming from here. But the rest of the pirates decided that they no longer wanted to stay in this shithole depot, and later abandoned the depot on account of the endless mutant attacks and the latent radiation all over the place. But the Admiral, who thought the mutants would be a threat to the entire forest, decided to stay, and he slowly lost his mind from radiation poisoning or something, and now he's just a full-on schizophrenic.
They shouted their throats sore. Yeah, louder than those bandits we shot.
But there's not much we can actually do with this guy, so I leave him here to hang out with his mummified buddies. And then once through this spider-infested irradiated tunnel, we run back into Aloysia, about to stab us OJ style. But luckily, he recognizes us, and he then gives us a rundown about what he knows about the area. And it turns out this place probably won't be a great place to settle after all, as there's a huge crumbling dam that's holding back a huge lake of irradiated shit water and sediment. And if the dam bursts, the whole valley will be washed away and rendered uninhabitable by the glowing green water. But we gotta move, as the Aurora will soon cross the dam, and she ain't taking no pit stops. As we move, Aloysia also tells us about how smoking hot he thinks Olga is, and that she also helped him earlier. And as we proceed through this ruined village, we run back into the mutant bear bastard again, starting round 2 of the boss fight, which is the exact same, except the bear is even faster, making it much easier for him to close the gap and hit you. But not to worry, as it seems that you're actually supposed to lose here, and when you take enough damage, a cutscene will trigger where the bear and Artyom almost fall off a cliff together, but Artyom stabs it in the eye and sends it crashing onto a back-shattering rock in the river. And with the bear dead, Aloysia and Artie mount up, and Olga reappears to say goodbye to her new squeeze Aloysia. And I know Aloysia hears that kitty calling to him, but he realizes that our job with the Aurora isn't finished. So he resists the urge and leaves with me, but he warns Olga that the dam will eventually break and destroy their home, so they better GTF out of there. And we zipline away as the Aurora crosses the dam in a pretty cool looking shot. And we hop on and head out. And the taiga is probably my favorite of the 3 open maps in terms of design and setting. The forest looks beautiful and vibrant, and it's another great fresh location. And the locations like the ruined church, the tree bases, and the dam area and town are all really sweet looking locations. And I like the story here of a faction of child survivors who had grown up and survived in the forest worshiping their teacher and his lessons, developing interesting quirks like apologizing to his spirit after cussing, and going to the, quote, final exam upon death. But unfortunately, this area is also the most undercooked in terms of actual content, being the most linear open map, and feeling more like a traditional linear level that happens to take place outside, rather than being a go-anywhere open world, as you pretty much go in a straight line from the south to the north, with only a few forks in the road here or there for some extra content. And the story here is again interesting on the surface, but it lacks any real depth. And we leave this place right as we get to know these guys, and we don't even get to see the tribal council that they keep mentioning all throughout the area. And the smaller size of this area makes me think that it may have used to been bigger, but the size was cut down for time or deadlines. Because this whole sweet looking ruined village on a cliff here is just an empty backdrop for round 2 with the mutant bear. But the story locations here are still really solid and fun to play through, and the taiga was a fun little excursion overall. But anyway, back to the story. Back on the Aurora, there's nothing good for us here either. Anna's condition has only worsened, so we check up on her, and she is suffering from debilitating coughing fits, and she can barely even speak. So it looks like we'll have no choice but to go to Novosibirsk and look for those miracle drugs that Katya mentioned. But it won't be easy. Novosibirsk is pretty far away, it's frozen over, and it's extremely irradiated, despite how relatively intact it is. So Miller decides that he and Artyom will brave the city to find the medicine, and the rest of the squad will perform other tasks, like checking another lab for the medicine, and getting a snowplow for the train to make it through all the snow. Winter is coming, you see. So we head to Russian Baltimore to save our wife. And we arrive via train into the city. And this place just looks aggressively cold, and the Geiger counter is singing to the high heavens. Sam saying that the radiation here is 8 times higher than Moscow. God damn.
Bridges are undamaged, and the radiation's climbing like crazy. I think there'll be no nutcases this time.
But we eat radiation for breakfast out here in Metroland. So we dap up Miller, and we get to work. We gear up and hop into the Caspian shipbox that I stole a few levels back. And this puppy is taking on the snow incredibly well. I mean, Miller is driving this thing through the ruins and up the stairs with ease. And we eventually disembark, and I take in the amazing frozen hell views, and we get underground. And this level feels extremely familiar from all our Moscow Metro exploits. And after being away from the metros for so long, being back in a flooded, decrepit metro full of corpses actually feels kind of fresh again. And this metro is fucked. It's smaller and not as deep as the Moscow Metro, and there doesn't seem to be a living soul around, just lots and lots of rotted corpses. And it's even got hordes of Nasalis mutants who come out and attack us. Whew, we almost went an entire Metro game without a Nasalis gang squad. I was getting worried. And we also learned the story of what happened here as we explore the aftermath of a conflict here. There were 2 main factions at play, the normal people and survivors, and the military government, also known as Oskam. The shallow metro here exposed the survivors to much more latent radiation than the Moscow ones, and thus, they needed a new radiation medicine to survive, which was commonly called the green stuff. And Oskam controlled the supply of the green stuff, as they were the only ones who could actually go out onto the surface and find more. And as the green stuff supplies dwindled over time, the tensions rose between the people and Oskam, who thought Oskam leadership was hoarding the green stuff and were planning to flee Novosibirsk in secret while leaving the people to die, which eventually led to mass riots and a civil war between Oskam and everyone else that ended up wiping out seemingly all of the Novosibirsk metro population. And we can see the results of this grisly civil war in all the corpse piles we find in the metro, and it's almost oppressively grim down here. And I really like the near hopeless vibe this city has. It really makes the whole experience tense and unnerving. And not only that, it provides a new perspective on what might happen to the Moscow metro if the Invisible Watchers were to be exposed, as it could very easily end up in a catastrophic civil war that ends up killing off the entire metro's population, like it did here in Novosibirsk, as the people and factions of Moscow would revolt if they had learned their lives were merely a game of The Sims for the real people in power. And who knows what the Watchers are capable of? Just some food for thought, I suppose, making you wonder if controlled chaos like that of the Moscow metro is preferable in such dire situations, or if the truth should be known no matter what. No matter the consequences. But we continue on through this cursed-ass metro until we hear something odd, and we find a young boy hiding in a pipe, but he runs off with childlike speed, and we gotta pursue him, eventually finding him hiding in a garbage can, where we can finally grab him. And Miller convinces the kid that we aren't gonna shoot, rob, and kill him, and the kid says that his name is Private Kirill Kolebnikov, and he appears to be the last survivor of the entire Novosibirsk metro. So we have Kirill lead us to his hideout, and the kid comes through for us after we get jumped by Nasal's gang squad, and we reach his surprisingly comfortable looking home. And Kirill says he's been waiting for his dad, Colonel Kolebnikov, to return from grabbing some maps from a nearby SATCOM center, as they were planning to leave after finding a clean place to live. But he's been gone for 3 weeks, so, ouch. But with this info, Miller decides to change our plans. Him and Kirill will go to the SATCOM center to look for a new place to settle, and Artyom will continue along to the Institute to look for medicine for Anna, and Miller trusting us to save his daughter, and Kirill gives us both a shot of green stuff for the road, and we dap up Miller for what may be the final time. And we then have to proceed through some flooded stations and take on some new mutants, like these huge water worms and these wall-hanging spitter worms. And these huge water worms look amazingly gross with their overlogged bodies, and much of the station is covered in this nasty-ass living mutant slime. And once we get another boat and get past this large flooded room, the radiation starts really whooping our ass. The green particles infest the screen, the Geiger counter's going absolutely gorillas, and Artie even starts getting some hallucinations of ghost trains and Anna calling out to him. And ghostly wives always mean big trouble, so we might be cooked. But realizing that he's developing cancer in his nutsack as we speak, we hit our supply of green stuff, and we get back up and press on. And we even get a flashback of a tank firing on civilians as the war broke out, and their sprites are incredibly funny. And even though the green stuff has us on our feet, and we're wearing lead-reinforced hazard suits, the radiation is still brutal, and Artyom has to constantly stop to keel over and catch his breath. And this coupled with the scattered radio calls, and the Geiger counter clicks overwhelming your ears, there's just an oppressive feeling of doom and sickness hanging around Artyom, which just gets more and more tense with each passing minute, and it's pretty damn gripping. Just imagine how shitty his tummy feels right about now. But regardless, we power through and make it to the Institute, and then get attacked by some mutant gorilla Sasquatches. Damn, these must be the cousins of the librarians from 2033. But now, instead of being staring contest addicts, these gorillas are completely blind and can only follow sound, which makes them twice as easy to avoid than their eyeballed cousins. And I simply just walk past them all, and they seemed completely unable to keep up, making this section incredibly easy actually. And while avoiding them, Artyom is having a radiation-induced living nightmare, hallucinating corpses as Anna and hearing ghosts speak to him, making him and us think that Anna is completely doomed. But we soon find the miracle medicine, but we then get attacked by blind Harambe at the worst possible time, and we have to survive a deadly QTE fight on the fire escape, and the gorilla falls and gets his head skewered by an icicle, and Artyom passes out from falling down 3 stories. We then wake up later to realize that we're sitting in a complete radiation bath, but then the angelic light of Saul's van appears, and Miller appears before us to give us another dose of green stuff, and seems to truly call Artyom his son in this moment.
Artyom, stay with me. Hold on. Son.
But Artie is fading in and out of consciousness as we drive, and we're later woken up by Kirill, but Miller seems clocked out. Uh-oh, but there's no time, and we start driving, looking for the Aurora. Our hope is on its very last legs, and the music here is oddly serene, making this whole thing even tenser, as I'd worry we'd all die along the way in some tragic failure. But then the music picks up, we reach a dead end and pass out again. But then we wake up to a bright and sunny scene, and we turn and find Miller, seemingly dead. No! But then we see Kirill out front, who lets us know that the Aurora is here, which pulls up with its huge new snowplow, and most of the Spartan guys jump out and run towards us, freeze-framing the moment. Hallelujah! We're saved! Well, almost, as Artyom is still sick as a dog from the radiation, and he requires an emergency blood transfusion. And luckily, Artyom's type is AB plus universal receiver, so all the guys can chip in and donate their blood to help save them. And this is where the moral point system will come into effect, which despite the larger scope of Exodus, the moral point system is at its most simplistic here. To make Artyom survive, you'll need to have kept 2 of the 3 potential Spartans alive or around, as Duke can die in the Volga level if you get the bad ending there, Tamir will stay with Gil in the Caspian bad ending, and Aloysia will be injured in the Taiga in that bad ending. And if you don't keep enough guys around, Artyom won't have enough blood donors, and he'll die from radiation poisoning. But luckily for me, I saved Duke and Aloysia by stealthing through main encounters in those levels, and being sure to be nice to the locals, and to complete most side tasks or POIs. In the previous games, there were several smaller interactions that you could do to get extra moral points, like playing instruments, listening to conversations, interacting with the environment, donating money bullets to people, and avoiding killing when you can, which are all peppered throughout most of the levels. And ironically, although the levels in Exodus are much larger, there's fewer moral point interactions than ever. Most of them are pretty clear and obvious when you run into one, like freeing a local faction member from Bandit Thug captivity, which helps greatly to make sure that you can get the ending that you want, as the choices are so plainly obvious. But this streamlining of the moral system also pretty much condemns a non-stealth playthrough to get the bad ending, since so many of the game's moral points are tied up in killing or sparing the slaves, cultists, and forest children, which makes it feel like a fair downgrade from the previous game's systems, as you could still mostly kill with impunity and still get the good ending, if you know where to get those extra points, and if you pay close enough attention. But I found the execution of keeping the Spartans around to save you later with their blood was pretty clever, and this was the only Metro game I could get the good ending on my first try, so I'll take it. But as Artyom is being blood cleansed, he's fading in and out, and our friends and crew are telling us to stay strong. And we see a vision of Miller guiding Artyom's child self through a dream metro, and he then takes us to a scenic outcrop on Lake Baikal, where we get our last words with Miller. And Miller admits Artyom was right about everything, and his attachment to his role as the Spartan leader and his blind loyalty held him back from their true destinies, while Anna calls out for Artyom to not cross that rainbow bridge. Miller then charges Artyom with Anna's protection, and Katya even steps into the vision to tell us that Anna was saved by the drugs we found. And Miller also says that he always wanted a son, just like Artyom. And it looks like Artie's got 2 dads now. Move over, Sukhoi. Whatever happened to that guy, though? And Miller then says he'd like to be buried in this exact spot on the banks of Lake Baikal, and he gives Artyom command of the Spartans, and tells us to save everyone we can, and he says his final goodbye.
Goodbye, Commander. Time to wake up. Come on. Rise and shine, son.
And we wake up with a healthy Anna watching over us. And although the story has been solid to pretty mess so far, Miller's final scene and goodbye is some of the best narrative stuff in the entire series. Miller dies a true hero, saving Artyom with his own green stuff injection, and prioritized protecting Kirill as they went to the SATCOM facility, living and dying by his Spartan ideals. And it's a really great moment for Miller to acknowledge Artyom as his son, and for him to take responsibility for all the trouble we went through up until this point, as Miller is the true protagonist of Exodus, not Artyom, as Artyom's just more of the muscle than anything else. As Miller was the one to lead the Aurora crew, he was the one who made all the choices, and he kept everyone together and alive while Artyom was out sneaking around like a ninja and stacking bodies to the ceiling. And his death coming from saving Kirill and Artyom shows that despite all the mistakes, misplaced loyalty, and secrets kept from even his family, Miller was always a true hero, no matter what. And it's a really great end for his character, and he feels genuinely sincere in his love for both Anna and Artyom. And we then cut to the exact spot Miller's ghost wanted to be buried, and the Aurora crew decides to settle here, finally completing our exodus. And we embrace Anna over her father's grave, and the guys officially make Artyom their commander. And with his first order, Commander Artyom says it's time to save all the people. All of them, heavily implying he intends to return to the Moscow Metro to defeat the Invisible Watchers and to reveal the truth of the world to the people of the Metro. But that's a story for another time. In Metro Leviticus, perhaps, as the credits roll. And what an exodus it was, as besides some undercooked story beats, odd character motivations, and some occasional bugs, this game was extremely fun and enjoyable. The guns and shooting felt more impactful and realistic than ever. The graphics and lighting effects are just phenomenal. And the levels themselves have some great variety in the locations to constantly keep you engaged and interested to see what happens next. And the story, although a bit iffy with shallow factions, shallow conflicts, and Miller being a total fanboy bootlicker whenever the government is mentioned, and some goofy dialogue here and there, the story ends incredibly strongly and sends off Miller on a satisfying arc and a pretty touching note. And I felt pretty accomplished for keeping RTO and most of his friends alive, as although the Spartan guys are pretty one-note overall and don't have too much to say, the small moments of them bantering with each other, hanging out and drinking, and scenes like Stepan and Katya's wedding really endeared me to this wacky bushwhack crew of heavily armed men to me. And having them all come together to save Artyom with their blood was properly fitting for the story's theme of hope, loss, and family. And I actually enjoyed the new scrap and crafting systems quite a bit from the previous games, which kept me looting for dirty cans of bleach and yarn, so I could keep on crafting ammo and supplies. And tricking out these amazing looking weapons with some sweet attachments was a great time too. And it never really became an annoyance to have to craft stuff and to find more resources. And I quickly settled into a consistent loop where I never really ran into annoying snags like running out of ammo or resources completely. And when I did, I could usually improvise with a T-car or crossbow, or I'd go quiet and sneak away to conserve my shit. And the new open world levels introduce a brand new sense of freedom and exploration to do side objectives, while still being able to deliver those cramped bunker and sewer dives that we all know and love. And overall, Exodus is just a really solid product, and more than a worthy addition to the series. Another 8 out of 10. But with that, that's it for Metro. It's been a long ride. It's finally over, whenever you're watching this video. And if you're still here, thank you so much for watching. And I care for you, and I love you very deeply. Goodbye.